The Violent Ones by Victor T. Robinson. The second prologue. In 1997, a secret meeting will take place in Hell's Kitchen, New York, inside a restaurant called Milton's Garden between the Archangel Raphael, but known on Earth as Special Agent Raphael Jimmy Jameson, with the FBI aka Mr. Violence, and his brother Same Gal aka Lucifer. Same Gal can only visit Earth every blue moon and must return back to Hell at the end of the cycle. It's like a holiday for him. Same Gal is on vacation alongside his bodyguard/daughter Mazakine, but he had to rescue his brother from the Cenobites in their own wing of Hell to avoid war with the angels. Same Gal sets this meeting up in order to understand his brother. Same Gal has not spoken to his brother since the Battle of Heaven, when he betrayed him by literally stabbing him in the back, which caused his fall to Hell. Same Gal says, "Hello, little brother." Jimmy says, "Hello, Same Gal." Same Gal says, "Call me Sam. I kinda like that better. So it's been a while since you and I have seen each other." Jimmy says, "So what do you want, Sam?" Sam says, "You know, I could have retaliated against you anytime I wanted it. But I knew the only reason you betrayed me was because of fear. Fear from our brothers. Fear from our father. And still I loved you, and then what would happen centuries later? You would bore a daughter, the Joan of Arc, and when you tried to save her from death, it was Michael and Gabriel who would prevent you from doing so. And you betrayed me for nothing. And another thing, father could have saved her any time he wanted, but he chose to let her die burned at the stake and become a martyr." Jimmy says, "I don't need a fucking history lesson. One thing you should know, fear wasn't the reason. I betrayed you because it was the right thing to do." Sam says, "Oh, Raphael, you was on fucking board, and you was my right-hand man. With you by my side we was unstoppable until you literally stabbed me in the fucking back. But that's all water under the bridge. I just couldn't help but to bring it up so we can get over this hump." While Sam and Jimmy have this conversation, Valor walks in the restaurant and sits down and says to Jimmy, "Hello, uncle." Sam says, "Valor told me you and he had met before and tried to kill him." Jimmy says, "I thought I did." Sam says, "Well, let me introduce you to my firstborn son Valor. You might know of his mother, my first wife Lilith." Sam says to Valor, "Did you know before I was cast out of heaven that Lilith was Raphael's wife?" Raphael likes to be called Jimmy now, and Sam laughs. Valor says, "I knew of Raphael way before he was at odds with my protege Dracula. But I was known as Mark Antony, but that was after I stole his skin and ate his soul. I knew of Raphael by reputation during the Roman Empire when he was owner of a tavern and a brothel in Rome. You had the whole city of Rome making you money hand over fist." Jimmy says, "That was a long time ago." Sam says, "The Roman Empire was the greatest fun I ever had in many lifetimes." Jimmy looks at Valor and says, "The only reason for me to kill Valor was that he, Dracula, and the Sultan helped him with killing my wife and son Joshua. Oh yes, I enjoy stabbing the hell out of you and hitting you in face with an axe, and the thought of killing you again would be a fucking rush." Jimmy looks like he is about to jump across the table at Valor. Sam slams his hand on the table and says, "Cut the shit. There will be no fighting between each other. Like it or not, Jimmy, we are family. And never go up against the family. Like it or not, we all you got in this cold dark world, brother. So as I see it, you got 2 strikes against you. 1 for the betrayal, and 2 even if you didn't know that Valor was kin when you tried to kill him. And if you get to 3, then brother, you are going down. It's going to be you and me in the lake of fire. And you know what happens in the lake of fire, don't you, Raphael?" Jimmy says, "Yeah, I know." Valor laughs, and Cleopatra, Valor's wife, walks over to the table, and Sam gets up and kisses her on the cheek and sits back down. Valor introduces Cleopatra to his uncle Raphael aka Jimmy, and Jimmy gets up and shakes her hand, and Jimmy says he is about to leave, and Sam says, "We are about to have dinner, you should stay. I promise no more bad talk. Just good conversation." And Jimmy says and looks in Sam's eyes, "We both know we will never see eye to eye. You are evil and I am against everything you represent, and I will continue to take out your demons, your monsters that you conjure on the world." Sam says, "I don't get a fuck about that. That doesn't mean shit to me. Just don't get in my affairs and don't go up against the family, or you and I will meet in the lake of fire. You got that, brother?" Jimmy says, "I got it." Same Gal, and Jimmy walks out of the restaurant. Opening song, The Bleeding by Five Finger Death Punch, which is the entire theme and mood of the book. Chapter 1, Valor. 2 years later, Valor just got off the phone with Cameron Ford aka Sledgehammer, who just killed his right-hand man Julian Kane, an immortal warlock that has been alive since the death of Jesus Christ, by the way, throwing him into the sun and roasted him like a Thanksgiving turkey. Valor makes a phone call to set up a meeting with the head of vampires, werewolves, witches, warlocks, and ghouls clan, which is called the Faction. Valor also makes contact with his sister Mazakine. The meeting between the factions is taking place in the oldest hotel in New York City, named the Afterlife. The Faction haven't never been in the same room together since the Roaring Twenties. Valor and his wife Cleopatra and Mazakine enter the room while the Faction are fighting and arguing among each other. One of the members, vampire clan named Regine Dandridge, whose brother Jerry was killed by Miss Sledgehammer. Regine would tell the faction to shut up for our prince who has arrived. The faction are shocked to see Valor because they were expecting Julian, who always carried these meetings, but not today. Valor is standing in front of the faction and says, "Well, hello to my faction." The faction bows to him and gets quiet. Valor says, "Julian is dead, killed by some motherfucker calling himself the Sledgehammer. I've been asking around, and this Sledgehammer has been killing off members of this faction since the 80s, and Noon has tried to kill this fuck." Then it turns out that Sledgehammer got a wife who calls herself Ms. Sledgehammer and looks at Regine and walks up to her and says, and this Ms. Sledgehammer had killed poor Regine, little brother Jerry, but also another person was involved, some guy named Charlie Brewster who so called himself the Rockmeister. This Sledgehammer is supposed to be a super being from another universe, kinda like what you find in a comic book, but no matter. We are going to find this Sledgehammer and his friends and his wife, and we are going to end his fucking campaign against us. But also another fucking thing, I found out that this motherfucker has been supplying these hunters and slayers around the US with weapons and money, which means this fucker is the reason for all this heat from the hunters and slayers killing all of our supernatural beings, and no one in this fucking faction did anything against these motherfuckers. Instead of doing that, you are fighting wars against each other and killing a hell of a lot of y'all. The vampires hate the wolves hate the ghouls. The witches hate the warlocks, and the vampires hate them. You guys got your priorities fucked up. No wonder you are being hunted by humans, because you forgot that they are really your only real enemy. One of the members of Ghouls named Harrison Magellan says, "It's been a long time you've been in front of the faction, my prince. Each of our clan have had a few partnerships over the years with some of the humans to have access to blood for the vampires, bodies for us, ghouls, animals for the wolves, and supplies for the witches and warlocks. Julian made all of this possible with his connection. Now you say he is dead, so now is his connection. Valor says everything will run smoothly. I am appointed by each member of their own clan to take care of their own. But you all must come together to deal with these motherfucking hunters. Enough with them thinking that you guys are easy pickings. Enough with them turning you all against each other, and now you all have to be stronger together." The meeting concludes, and Valor seems that he doesn't feel that the faction doesn't feel like they give a damn about what he just preaches. Regine walks up to Valor and says, and looks at Mazikeen and Cleopatra, "We need to talk." 2 hours later, Regine, Valor, Mazikeen and Cleopatra are having dinner at Milton's garden to discuss a game plan to deal with the Sledgehammer problem. Regine starts talking about how she didn't realize that Julian did so much for Valor's father. Valor states, "My father doesn't have a real body to cling to on Earth. Julian had a certain chosen few picks at birth for my father to possess for his short time away from hell, and most of those kids are a part of wealthy families, which provides a lovely lifestyle for him when he arrives. Mostly what sacrifices are for." Valor continues to say, "I want you to take over what Julian left over to be the new leader of the faction," and Regine says she is honored, but what about her vengeance against Ms. Sledgehammer? Valor says, "I will take care of this myself." Mazikeen looks to Julian and says, "Brother, I believe that the King of Purgatory can help with that. Some of the souls in Purgatory states that Wade had a run-in with the Sledgehammer and he knows more about him." Valor says, "Sis, I meet up Wade. I am thinking we will target Sledgehammer's allies, this Rockmeister who I found from our informant Billy Cole that he is in Amsterdam performing at a concert. So Mazikeen, I want you and your men to go after Rockmeister and do what you are known for." Mazikeen says, "It's been a long time since I had some fun." Mazikeen gets up from the table and walks out the door. Regine says, "Billy Cole was a loyal servant of my brother. He should die alongside him." Cleopatra says and looks at Regine. "Maybe he was just biding his time until it was right to strike. And now it's time, baby." Valor is smoking his cigarette watching Cleopatra seducing Regine, and Cleopatra starts touching all over Regine. Song called XXXHIBITIONIST by Death by Romy starts playing loud. Regine's eyes start glowing and Regine kisses Cleopatra so sultry. Valor says, "Check please." Regine and Cleopatra are tearing off their clothes in the elevator of the hotel. Valor smokes a cigarette as they are kissing each other. Finally they make it to the penthouse. Regine is crawling from the elevator completely naked across Valor and Cleopatra's floor, and Cleopatra crawls and is completely naked herself, and she sticks her face inside her ass and she starts licking her ass clean. Regine is moaning loudly and Valor is walking out the elevator and he takes off his clothes slowly as watching Cleopatra eating Regine ass and pussy at the same time, and Valor walks in front of Regine and gets on his knees and kisses Regine passionately. Regine reaches for Valor's large erect cock and she begins sucking him off. Cleopatra slides underneath Regine's naked body and starts licking her all the way until she reaches her nipples and starts sucking her nipples, and Valor grabs her face while she's sucking his cock and says, "Show me your true face, Regine," and she shows her deformed vampire face and Valor shows his true demonic face and his large horns on his head. Regine continues to suck off Valor. Valor tells her to bite me and she bites into his cock and sucks his blood. Cleopatra shows her demonic face as standing in front of Valor and she kisses him. Valor inserts his hard-bleeding hard cock inside of Cleopatra while Regine is riding on her face. Cleopatra is moaning loud and breaking the mirrors in the penthouse. The next afternoon. Valor, dressed in a red Armani suit with a blue tie and wearing sunglasses, arrives in Purgatory, which resembles a 70s version of Las Vegas. Wade Manchester, who is looking like a young Mickey Rourke from the Pope from Greenwich Village. Wade, who has been thriving in Purgatory for centuries and has turned it into his own universe where souls who haven't moved on yet to heaven or hell decide to stay. Somebody told me by the Killers is playing as Valor is walking around Manchester's casino looking for him. Wade is having lunch on his balcony with his girlfriend Jophiel. Chapter 2. Manchester phone rings. Jophiel, wearing a pink hotel robe, goes into the hotel room to answer the phone, and it's Wade's employee Santos telling her the Valor is on his way to the hotel room, and Jophiel tells Wade that Valor is coming, and Jophiel decides to try to leave before Valor shows up, and she opens the door. It's Valor and says, "Well, hello auntie, how you been?" And Jophiel says she was just leaving. Valor says, "I didn't mean to break up your lunch." Jophiel says, "You guys handle your business." As Jophiel walks away, Valor says, "You don't smell so angelic like you once were." Jophiel says, "Fuck off, Valor," and she gets into the elevator. Valor walks into the hotel room and Wade walks in from the outside and says, I believe it's been 175 years since you've been here in Purgatory. Why are you here now?" Valor sits down on a couch and says, "You have turned Purgatory into a wonderful place. This is what I kinda wanted to do to hell after I would have given my father Earth if my plan would have gone like it was planned, but to answer your question why I am here in your beautiful Purgatory. It seems you and I have a common enemy. This so-called Sledgehammer has destroyed my plans and killed my top guy." Wade says, "Yeah, I had a run-in with this Sledgehammer. He had killed one of my Reapers, Mickey McGuire, and he had fucking him up so bad that when I tried to resurrected him, his soul couldn't return back to his body because he has no body anymore." Valor says, "Well, why didn't you kill this fucker yet?" Wade says, "I have sent many after him. I had a bounty on his head and this fucker killed all that came for him. Then I also found out he has friends around him. And they're just like him." Valor gets up and goes to Wade's bar in the hotel room and pulls out a double bullet bourbon and 2 glasses and pour both of them a drink, and Valor says, "That's what I really want to know about his friends." Valor hands Wade the glass of bourbon and sits back down. Wade says he got this black guy named Jonathan Cross working for him as a private detective, and he is connected to an EMT named Lily Knox who always steals shit from rich people. Then it's this other guy, Charlie Brewster, the rock star aka the Rockmeister, who's in Amsterdam right now, and his next stop is Romania. Valor says that's the perfect place to deal with him, and I reach out to an old friend who has moved back to Romania, my old friend Lamora. So continue on. Wade. And other one that I know of is FBI Special Agent Dalton Wilcox, Sledgehammer best guy, a war hero but trained since he was a kid by someone you and I know very well. Valor says, "I think I know exactly who you are talking about." They both say Raphael at the same time. Valor says, "So Sledgehammer and Raphael are allies." Wade says that I know of Sledgehammer has never met Raphael in person. They just know each other through the grapevine. "Have you ever heard of Brandon Madsen?" Valor says, "Yeah, I heard of him, the hunter, right?" Wade says Raphael and Brandon had a run-in with each other in Vietnam. Then met up later where your uncle Raphael had made a book about how to kill each one of members of the faction and other supernatural beings. He copied this book and passed it to all the hunters around the world, including to Brandon, which it's why he was such an effective hunter with his wife Mia at his side." Valor is drinking up the rest of his drink and slams down the glass and says, Mia is such a special woman. She betrayed her family of witches to fall in love with some hunter. Mia had stolen the keys from the gates of hell. Then she involved the Sledgehammer and his wife in this shit and got Julian killed. She also needs to die. I need a few good men." Wade lights a cigarette and says all Sledgehammer's protégés and his wife were all targeted by a mass murderer named Rick Shane, who was doing time in the reopened Alcatraz in San Francisco, doing 6 life sentences. And the only reason they aren't dead is because Sledgehammer gave his blood to them and made them what they are. Valor says, "Fucking mutants. But I think this Rick Shane could be a new recruit to this Sledgehammer situation." Wade says, "You want me to make him a Reaper?" Valor says, "After what went down with Freddy and Jason, there are no more Reapers. That business closed. They might have been good earners in the body count department, but they were uncontrollable, and when they were sent to hell by members of each of their family members, Freddy's daughter and Jason's niece, which is a sure way of sending a Reaper to hell." Wade says, "You and your father did made a lot of money off their movies, which did not have any of the real stories that really happened, like that Freddy was the camp counselor that drowned Jason at the lake because Jason was always needy and cock-blocking him. And the fact that Jason had a sister." Valor laughs and says, "I didn't know that either. I didn't make the fucking movies. But anyway, I take care of Rick Shane and I want you to be ready when I call you because you are also in this, Wade." Wade says, "I don't want to get involved in this. I have my city to take care of." Valor says, "You know you wouldn't have this city if it wasn't for my father. You forget your place, Wade. You are not an angel nor demon. You got lucky and you are pushing your luck. Valor gets up and get into Wade's face. Valor says, don't get me wrong, I love what you have done to the place and all you have accomplished, but now I am gonna need you to earn your keep. You are my enforcer now, and when we get done with this sledgehammer thing you can go back to business as usual, but until then be ready. Valor walks out of Wade's hotel room. Wade is feeling completely upset and sit down on the couch and says, I became a better man after I took control of purgatory. And I know I am a bad man and I deserve to burn in hell, but I believe I have redeemed myself over these last few centuries. And with the creation of my reapers doing God and Samagel's business of thinning the herd. I thought I would at least be absolved of my sins, but I see now no matter what I do, I will always be reminded of all evil I have done. I've been trying to outrun it. But now I have to embrace the evil to help out Valor, or I say no and risk losing my throne and what is left of my soul. Wade walks back into his casino and Santos walks up to Wade and says, boss, what was that all about? Wade tells Santos about what Valor wants. Santos says, purgatory has been home for me for a long time. I didn't have to revisit any old wounds. I could just be here. I have been a long servant of yours, and without you there is no purgatory. So I suggest you do whatever you have to do to persevere this place, boss. Wade says, I didn't ask for your opinion, Santos. Wade walks away from Santos and walks to the food court and he sees Jophiel sitting staring at him. Wade says, I thought you left. Jophiel says, I couldn't leave, but I just had to get away from Valor. I can't stand that fucker. Wade tells Jophiel everything that had transpired between him and Valor. Jophiel says, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. Same gal and my father are benefiting off the work that you've been doing here. Valor needs to understand the way you are running. Purgatory needs to stay the same. Wade says, well, someone needs to tell that motherfucker that. Chapter 3, The Romania Massacre. Charlie and his wife Amy and his new rock band called the Masters, Joey the drummer, Lola the vocalist/guitarist, Jamal the keyboard player and Dave and Owen the roadies/security and also Joe King the manager arrived in Romania for his world tour concert. All the hotel are booked in this town, so Billy Cole, who working as a booker for Charlie and who is secretly working for Valor, called Lamora to take Charlie and company to her Transylvania castle. Dracula's old castle. On February 13, 1999 at 10:15 p.m., Charlie and Amy walk into the castle and are greeted by Lamora's mistress, Lila Lee, and she gives them a tour of Lamora's castle. Nico, Violet and Jamal are carrying their own bags in the castle and are in a deep conversation, this being their last world tour, which has been a wonderful experience. Lamora comes down from her bedroom and greets them and she decides to show them to their rooms. Everyone is in their rooms. Dave and Owen are setting things for the concert for tomorrow at the Transylvania Performance Center alongside Billy Cole. Joe King shows up with his Russian wife Eva and he is upset with Billy with why he changed the venue when they were supposed to perform in Bucharest, Romania. Not fucking Transylvania, says Joe. Joe continues to say, nobody performs in motherfucking Transylvania, not even the fucking Rolling fucking Stones. Billy says, everything will work out, Joe, you worry too much. Billy opens up the safe to show him the money they made and selling the tickets. Billy says, we are sold out, Joe. Joe is happy now and Billy tells Joe that he should take Eva and go check in the castle and that he will finish setting up. Joe and Eva get in Joe's Porsche and they drive away. 4 red motorcycles show up after they left and one person takes off the helmet and it's Mazakine and her 3 hench demons. Mazakine walks up to Billy and says, Billy, it's time. Mazakine looks at Dave and Owen and tells her hench demons Magan and Urin to kill them. Magan takes out an axe and begins to slice up Owen and Urin pounces on Dave and rips open his chest with her claws and begins to eat him alive. The 3rd hench demon is revealed as Zombie, a demon that was responsible of the bubonic plague and creator of the zombie plague that occurs around the world, mostly in the Philippines, standing behind Mazakine and says, do we kill this one? Mazakine says this one will live for as long as he is useful. Billy says Charlie and the rest of them are at the castle. Meanwhile at Lamora's castle. Joe King and Eva shows up at the castle. As Joe gets out his Porsche he hears howling from the woods and Eva says, I think it's best we get the fuck in the castle. Joe starts sniffing his cocaine and shows Eva that he has his modified Colt 45 in his jacket and Joe says, I am the lone fucking wolf, baby, ain't nobody fucking with us, and Joe starts barking towards the woods and then greeted by Lamora as they walk in the door. Jamal is sitting on the stairway while Joe and Eva are walking in the castle and Lamora looks up and sees Jamal and stares into his eyes and Jamal sees his whole life flashes in front of his eyes. Joe shakes Jamal and asks him if he is alright and Jamal says yes, I'm cool, and walks back in the room with Nico and says that bitch of the house is creepier than a motherfucker. 1 hour later. Nico is walking around the castle looking at the art and painting and he is trying light up his joint and Lamora comes out the shadows and lights up Nico's joint and scares the hell out of him and she says that he shouldn't be frightened of her and she says, do you like my paintings, Nico? Nico says they are very exquisite. Lamora says follow her. She has more to show. Charlie is staring out the window and Amy is taking off her clothes trying to seduce him, but Charlie says he is not in the mood and something is not right here, and Amy says you always be in the mood to fuck me. So what gives? Charlie says I feel like my body is telling me that this is not a safe place to be. I hear wolves and something unknown that surrounds this place and I smell dead things. Plus I feel like this place, and I mean I know this place well. Amy starts putting her clothes back on and says I am starting to feel that same way. But I am really fucking horny. Charlie says I think it's best to keep our clothes on and our bags close to us because baby, my spidey senses are tingling. Jamal is sitting in front of a roaring fireplace looking at a picture of him and his wife and kids. Violet is taking a hot bubble bath in a big bathroom with her boombox playing Need to Destroy by THC. Violet is being watched by Lila, who is touching her pussy while watching Violet running a washcloth all over her naked soapy body. Joe and Eva are both naked and making love in bed and making loud noises. Lamora has brought Nico to her bedroom that has a mirror face down on her bed and her walls having paintings of naked women on her wall. Lamora starts taking off her clothes and has exposed freckled naked body to Nico, and Nico takes off his clothes. Lamora walks behind Nico and pushes him on the bed, and she spreads his ass cheeks and she sticks her face in his ass and begins tonguing his asshole, and Nico says goddamn girl. Lila takes off her dress and walks by Violet, who starts to touch herself, and Lila whispers in Violet's ear and says can I taste you? Violet opens her eyes and looks at Lila and says sure, and Lila gets in the tub and starts kissing Violet and licking her neck and sucking on her breasts and starts fingering her pussy. Nico is eating out Lamora and she is moaning loudly and sucking her fingers. Nico inserts his hard cock inside Lamora. The music playing loud. It starts lightning and thundering and starts pouring down raining. Charlie is staring out the window and sees 3 red motorcycles show up and a red compact car, and Billy Cole gets out the car. Charlie turns to Amy and says something is going down tonight. Billy just shows with 3 heavies on motorcycles. Charlie grabs his suitcase and pulls out a shotgun and shotgun shells, 2 combat knives, Hattori Hanzo samurai sword given to him by a Japanese fan he met while he was in Japan for a year, where he learned skills from the fan grandfather, a former ninja named Toshiba Ronin, and also 2 laser-sighted pistols. Charlie hands Amy the shotgun and he grabs the sword and the 2 knives. Charlie lights a cigarette and Amy says aren't you just being paranoid? Charlie says we weren't never supposed to be in Transylvania anyway, and I knew this place reminded of something. This is Dracula's old castle, which they showed on the History Channel years ago. The woman of the house Lamora is one of his so-called wives. So Billy knows I kill vampires and werewolves on occasion, so you bring me a known monster killer to a castle where Dracula's widow resides and you tell me this ain't a fucking trap. Lamora is sucking the cum out of Nico's cock and Lamora says this is my favorite part, and Nico looks up at the mirror and sees no reflection of Lamora, and she takes Nico's whole cock in her mouth and she rips off his cock and balls at the same time, and Lila is sucking on Violet's pussy and Lila tears into her pussy with her teeth and Violet is screaming. The tub is full of Violet's blood. Jamal, Charlie, and Amy come out of their bedroom. Joe puts on his blue robe and grabs his Colt 45 and comes out of the room while Eva is getting dressed. Charlie asked Jamal where Nico and Violet are. Jamal says Violet went to take a shower and Nico is high as a kite, and he guessed that Nico probably was looking to fuck either Lamora or Lila. Charlie says he will go look for Nico and he tells Jamal and Amy to look for Violet, and he goes downstairs and Jamal and Amy go towards the bathroom and they see blood coming from underneath the door. Amy gives Jamal the 2 laser-sighted pistols. Jamal opens the door and sees a bloody bathtub, and Amy walks over the tub and it's revealed Violet's mutilated body. Lila jumps from the ceiling onto Jamal and Amy blows Lila in half with her shotgun. Zombie is floating outside Eva's bedroom window and pulls her through the glass, and Joe runs back in the room and he sees Zombie and he starts blasting his Colt 45 at it. Joe goes to the broken window and sees that Eva's body is getting torn apart by wolves, and Joe starts shooting at the wolves, and Lamora appears behind Joe and pushes him out the window and falls near the wolves, and his bones are broken and he is barely alive, and the wolves start eating him and he is screaming. Then silence. Charlie is following the scent of Nico's awful cologne and is walking into a dungeon in Lamora's bedroom and finds what is left of Nico's body, and the sight of it doesn't faze him. Charlie sees Lamora's diary on her nightstand and puts it in the back of his pants and walks out of the dungeon, and Mazakine calls out Charlie the hunter to come out to play. Charlie walks into the living room and sees Mazakine and Lamora are standing by the front door. Jamal and Amy come out of the bathroom. Mazakine says Charlie Brewster, my name is Mazakine and I am here to execute you. Charlie says what the fuck have I done to you? Lamora says, do you remember Jerry Dandridge? Charlie says yeah. Mazakine says I know you didn't kill him, but you were there and Billy Cole told me everything. Billy walks into the castle and he laughs and says to Charlie, we had a good run Charlie, but you should have killed me when you had a chance. Charlie says you ain't nothing but a snitch bitch and you will get your fucking stitches. Billy says you and Mr. and Miss Sledgehammer will get what is coming to them. But the buck starts with you, Brewster. Mazakine says to Billy, but first Jerry's sister Regine, my protege, doesn't just want Ms. Sledgehammer and Charlie's head. She wants yours too, Billy. Billy says, what the fuck did I do, Mazikeen? Lamora says, it's what you didn't do. Your only mission is to serve your master and you failed your mission. Mazikeen has urine, jumps from the shadows and grabs Billy and tears him apart. Mazikeen walks towards Charlie and she looks upstairs to Jamal and Amy and says, you could die willingly or horribly. If you die willingly, I let your girl and your friend go. Charlie says, I never back down. Mazikeen sends Yorin and Dagon after Charlie. Charlie walks back into the dungeon and pulls out his combat knives. Zombie comes from the outside with Lamora's 12 old murder victims and sends them after Jamal and Amy, and Jamal says, oh shit, and he opens fire on the zombies. Song called Go to Sleep by Eminem and DMX playing while Dagon approaches Charlie with a large battle axe. Amy blasts one of the zombies' heads with her shotgun. Jamal is fighting like hell and shooting a path through the zombies trying to get out the door. Charlie is slicing up Dagon and dodging Dagon's attacks, and Yorin is climbing on the walls and jumps on Charlie's back and grabs him by the neck and tosses him down the wine cellar, and Charlie has lost his knives and he gets up and Dagon and Yorin are on him, and Charlie grabs a bottle of wine and rips his shirt and makes a Molotov cocktail and lights it, throws at them, and he pulls out his samurai sword. Dagon and Yorin jump over the fire, which has become an inferno. Music gets louder. Yorin exposes its claws and goes straight at Charlie and he slices Yorin's arm off. Dagon tries to tackle Charlie and Charlie dodges him and slices off Dagon's head. Yorin in a fury slices up Charlie and Charlie grabs Yorin's arm and breaks it and jams the sword into Yorin's chest and rips it open when he retrieves his sword and slices off Yorin's head and then tosses Dagon and Yorin on the fire. Charlie goes through the fire and makes his way back into the living room. Zombies are all dead and Lamora flies towards Amy and Amy shoots at Lamora with the shotgun and explodes Lamora's head. Song ends. Jamal runs towards the front door, in which Mazikeen appears, and Jamal opens fire on Mazikeen and she dodges the bullets and then slices open Jamal's stomach and his intestines fall to the floor. Mazikeen looks at Amy while she slices Jamal in half. Amy tries to aim the shotgun at Mazikeen and Mazikeen quickly dodges and knocks Amy's shotgun out her hands and now has her sword up against Amy's throat, and Charlie walks into the room and drops his sword and says, I am right here, let her go. Mazikeen backs away from Amy and says, Amy, you should go now. Amy looks at Charlie and Charlie says, just go, baby. Run like hell, and Amy opens the door and looks back at Charlie and says, I love you, and Charlie says, I love you too. Amy starts running in the rain and Mazikeen looks at Zombie and says, run that bitch down. And Zombie runs after her and Charlie grabs his sword and says no and tries to run after Zombie, and Mazikeen spin kicks him towards the kitchen and smoke and fire spreading from dungeon. Mazikeen is standing in front of Charlie and says, come on Charlie, let's play. Charlie grabs his sword and their swords clash. The song For Those Who Wait by Fireflight starts playing. Amy is running through the woods behind the castle as she being chased by Zombie, and Amy sees Joe's body with his Colt .45 in his hand and she grabs it, and Zombie starts slashing up her back with its razor claws and she falls to the ground, and when Zombie turns her over and she shots Zombie in the face. Zombie is screeching and drops to its knees, and Amy quickly gets up and runs towards the front of the house and she sees Joe's Porsche and she jumps inside it, and she realizes no keys, so she tries to hotwire the car, which she learned while living on the streets as a kid, but it has been a long time. The castle is on fire. Mazikeen and Charlie are sword fighting all over the castle. Music gets louder. Mazikeen is dodging every move Charlie throws at her, and Mazikeen is slicing up Charlie and blood is pouring out of him, and Mazikeen is thinking that he should be getting weaker because every hit she did to him was cutting his main veins. Charlie roundhouse kick Mazikeen towards the flames, and Mazikeen gets caught on fire and her demonic face is exposed. Mazikeen comes out the fire with her sword and she clashes with Charlie's sword and both swords break in pieces. Both in shock for a moment. Charlie and Mazikeen find themselves back in the living room surrounded by fire, and Mazikeen says, aren't you just boiling inside of your meat suit? Charlie says, the flames don't bother me, and Charlie takes his hands and lights them on fire with flames and says, I am fireproof. Mazikeen runs at him. Charlie uses his Chinese boxing training, which he learned when he did a China tour in '97. Charlie dodges Mazikeen attacks and Charlie goes for Mazikeen's ribs and burns her with the flames, and Mazikeen judo tossed him to the floor and has his right arm in an armbar, and she attempts to break his arm and she slams her leg on Charlie's face. Amy finally got the car started and she turns the car around, and Zombie jumps on the back of the car and grabs Amy's neck and is slowly tearing into her neck, and Amy drives the car wildly and she slammed on brakes and Zombie flies off the car into a tree, and Amy looks up and Zombie get up and Amy says, time to die, motherfucker. Amy drives the car into Zombie and pins him up to the tree and crushes him to death, and she backs up the car and runs him over. Music stops. Mazikeen breaks Charlie's arm and Mazikeen gets up and pulls out a large knife and puts it to his neck, and Mazikeen says, I had a lot of fun, Charlie, too bad in different circumstances. I would have took pleasure in fucking you, but I got to finish my mission. As she is about to take off Charlie's head, Amy is standing in the doorway with a black motorcycle and is revving it up, and she says to Mazikeen, "Get the fuck off her, man," and she aims the motorcycle at Mazikeen and she lets it go and it shoots at Mazikeen and it pins her against the burning wall, and Amy uses Joe's Colt .45 and shoots the gas tank and it blows up on Mazikeen. Amy picks up Charlie by his good arm and they go outside and the castle is on fire. Charlie snaps his arm back in place. Charlie and Amy gets on a red motorcycle and drive through the woods to their private jet. Charlie and Amy get on the jet. The pilots named Captain Malcolm Danvers and Brett McHale and two of the stewardesses named Joy and Deb are shocked to see Charlie and Amy so soon, and they start to take off. They have known each other for 3 years. Amy couldn't believe that everyone is dead and Charlie is trying to comfort her. Joy is in the restroom crying and suddenly she hears a noise coming from inside the toilet and it's Mazikeen half burned up, and she grabs Joy by the throat and pulls her through the toilet, which is shedding up her body as she pulls her through the toilet. Blood and flesh is all over the restroom. No one hears the screams but Joy, and she goes to open the door and she sees Mazikeen cleaning up her face, and Deb tries to scream out but Mazikeen quickly grabs her and slams face into the sink and crushes her skull in. Mazikeen walks out the restroom and goes into the pilot's cockpit, and all you hear is screams and blood coming out from the door, and Charlie and Amy gets up and goes towards the cockpit and they opens it and the pilots have been ripped in pieces, and Amy runs to the restroom to throw up. Then she sees the stewardesses' bodies and Amy screams out Charlie's name. Charlie turns around and runs towards Amy and Mazikeen appears behind and rips out Amy's heart. Amy dies instantly and Charlie screams out no. Mazikeen tosses Amy's body to the side. Mazikeen says, "There is no one to save you now, Charlie Brewster." The song Close My Eyes Forever by Lita Ford and Ozzy Osbourne is playing. The jet is in free fall. Charlie runs towards Mazikeen with a fury of punches and kicks. Mazikeen dodges his punches and kicks and the jet takes a nosedive, and Charlie sees parachutes on the wall and tries to run towards them, and Mazikeen spears from behind and she picks him up by the back of his throat and throws over a few seats, and she pulls out her knife. Mazikeen says, "Time to die now." Charlie grabs a bottle of champagne and gets up and is facing Mazikeen, and Mazikeen runs at him and Charlie busts the glass of champagne on her face and dropkicks her in the middle of the aisle and falls in the cockpit. Charlie grabs a parachute and jumps out of the jet, and music gets louder and Mazikeen races out of the cockpit and goes for the parachute, but the jet crashes into the mountain. Charlie sees the jet crash into the mountain and sighs relief, and music stops. Charlie daydreams of Amy while flying down and he sees a wooden area underneath him, and he is attacked by Mazikeen, who just free jumps out the jet before it crashes, and she slices up Charlie's back with her knife. Music continues. The parachute is going down faster due to the extra weight. Mazikeen is tearing into his back and Charlie elbows her to the face and quickly grabs her head and starts punching her, and he puts her in front of him and he wraps the parachute's cords around her neck. Music get loud and wooden area is getting closer and closer, and Mazikeen headbutts Charlie over and again and breaks his nose, and Mazikeen cuts herself free and she looks in Charlie's eyes and raises up her knife and says, "Ready to join your bitch wife?" and Charlie says, "Are you?" and Charlie gets hung in the trees and Mazikeen falls through the wooded area, which is full of trees and lost. She falls is impaled on many tree branches in different parts of her body until her head explodes on top of a tree stump. Valor is eating dinner with his wife Cleopatra, and Valor has a feeling he has never felt before. It feels like a heart attack, but Valor has just felt his sister die. Valor starts crying and Cleopatra asks what's wrong. Music ends. Charlie falls out of the tree, breaking every bone in his body until he is impaled on a large tree branch through his heart and he dies. Knocking on Heaven's Door is softly played by Guns N' Roses as Charlie is walking towards his wife Amy, who is surrounded by their friends who died at the castle. Charlie is blocked from her by an invisible wall, and Amy says, "You are not supposed to be here now, baby. But I will be waiting when it's time." Charlie wakes back up and is still impaled on a tree branch, and Charlie attempts to get himself off the tree branch and he slides himself off and notices his legs starting to heal, and Charlie sees a hole where his heart's supposed to be and says, "Goddamn, this hurts." Charlie is laying on the ground while his bones are slowly healing back, with Mazikeen's lifeless body hanging over him and her blood leaking into the ground. Charlie's chest is closing back up and a heart is growing inside of him. Charlie says to himself, "What the fuck, am I invincible or something?" Charlie heard church bells and decides to follow the bells, and he discovers priests and nuns in front of a convent as he walks towards them, and they turn around and Charlie doesn't realize he is totally covered in his own blood and his face is all cut up, and Charlie collapses from exhaustion. Chapter 4. Fury and anger. Valor has just received a vision of his sister's grave injuries and he is highly upset and he is destroying his hotel room. 30 minutes later, Valor is pouring himself a glass of whiskey and is in a room with Regine, Cleopatra, his demon's bodyguards Romulus and Zeus. Valor says Sledgehammer's wife Rachel is taking a girls' trip with Mia, and he tells Regine that she can go get her vengeance, and Cleopatra asks Valor if she can go with her. Valor tells her that "I don't want the risk of losing you," and Cleopatra shows him the Book of the Damned and she says, "This is all I need." Valor kisses Cleopatra and says, "Take Romulus with you," and Cleopatra says, "Okay baby," and Valor tells Romulus No matter what, my wife comes back. Understand? Romulus says yes sir. Valor decides to catch a plane to San Francisco to recruit Rick Shane. Rick has been raped, tortured by the all-white gang called the Pure Race in New Alcatraz after they found out additional with his murder spree at the medical university. Rick as a young teen had also killed a few of fellow classmates which their bodies were found in his own backyard while he was currently in prison and they decided a few months ago to set up a trial for those crimes and he has been sentenced to death by the gas chamber and Valor is dressed as a priest to visit him and also a joke to God. Rick just had his last meal, a large pepperoni and pineapple pizza and a 2-liter Mountain Dew. Valor is now locked in a room with him. Rick says you are not a priest. I have seen your face in my dreams ever since I was a kid. You are the devil. Valor pulls off the priest's white collar and says nope I am not the devil but I am his son but devil doesn't even refer to him it actually refers to a gang of demons that my father has entrusted a task to them to corrupt many humans as possible and also to start a war with priests and nuns to make them question their faith. But let's get back to you, the man of the hour. I am here to offer a chance to get back at the people who have wronged you, abused you, and fuck you in your ass without your permission. Rick says I know I have done some evil shit in my life and I know I have deserved this. Valor cuts him off and says no don't do that. Don't deny your gifts, kid. I am not gonna lie to you. I need you on my team. Because it so happens my enemies happen to be old friends of yours. Do you remember Jonathan Cross aka Weedman that is responsible for your main torment in medical school? Lily Knox, the girl that broke your heart and used and abused you. Dalton Wilcox who is now a big-time FBI agent your old best buddy but was only friends with you for pity and Charlie Brewster the Rockmeister the man you wanted to be liked and secretly wanted to fuck. But now Charlie just destroyed my big sister so he is mine now along with the sledgehammer. Rick says I am sorry for your loss. You are right it's not fair with me being here and they are still alive. I thought I killed them all. Valor says Sledgehammer gave them his blood and they survived and gained superpowers. Rick says well I want to finish what I started but how do I begin? Those people are waiting for your execution so what it's going to be my boy. Do you want vengeance or death? Rick says well I don't feel like dying today so yeah I will join your fight. Valor pulls out a puzzle box which is a modified version of the lament configuration that Valor created specifically for Rick and Valor says this right here will give you more power than you ever imagined but you have to open it yourself to confirm our union and Valor says what's your pleasure. Rick opens the box and it stabs Rick's head and it begins sucking his blood. Rick is transported to Leviathan's chambers and is being modified into the ultimate Cenobite and Valor is walking around and lights his Cuban cigar and looks at Leviathan who is working on Rick's body and Valor says make my boy strong. Make my boy tough. Make my boy big and mean. Minutes later the guards are coming to death row to receive Rick for his execution but when arrives to his room and they confronted by Valor and the new Rick and they become scared shitless and the new Rick slams the guards into each other bashing their brains into each other. Valor is walking with the new Rick towards the execution room where the victims' families and friends are waiting to watch the death of Rick Shane and Valor says these people all came to see you die, my boy now it's time to show them what death is. The new Rick walks into the viewing room and locks the door. 20 people are looking at him and Valor is looking through the glass smoking his cigar and yelling that's my fucking boy. The new Rick tearing through the 20 people's body parts are flying everywhere. Blood is flowing from the bottom of the door. The new Rick drags the warden to the gas chamber and the new Rick says it's a good day for an execution and the warden is gassed to death. Valor walks up to the new Rick and says you are no longer Rick Shane. You are now called Nightmare and he points to Gen Pop and says go finish your vengeance, my son and Nightmare busts through Gen Pop. The song The Man Right Chia by Mystical starts playing as Nightmare goes through the entire prison population killing every prisoner that is in his path. 12 prison guards with riot shields are running down the hallway and Valor puts out his cigar and pulls out his sword with a bloody skull on the handle and says finally some action and Valor lets the guards get close and he begins slicing through them. Valor grabs one guard by the neck and smashes his head into a wall until his brains are bashed and prisoners are running wild and they just break through the front gates trying to get away from Nightmare. Music is getting loud. Nightmare is being confronted by the entire Pure Race gang and its leader Zach Vincent and he says you don't scare me, motherfucker. I am death and Zach pulls out a large knife and he puts the knife to his own face and says to his gang. Tear this fucker apart and they all attack Nightmare at the same time. Nightmare pulls a large sharp barbed wire out of his arm and spins it around fast, chopping up all the Pure Race 30 strong with the wire. Body parts are flying around. Valor is standing in the middle of the hallway smoking his cigar surrounded by bodies. 35 prisoners had just escaped New Alcatraz. Zach is standing face to face with Nightmare. Nightmare says why aren't you afraid of me, Zach? Zach says I am not. Just because you are a monster doesn't make you the only one. Zach takes his knife and licks it and says well Ricky let's fuck like it Tuesday. Zack jumps at Nightmare with the knife and tries to stab Nightmare in the throat, and Nightmare dodges Zack's attack and takes the sharp barbed and wraps it around his head, and Nightmare uses it to saw it deep into Zack's face throughout his skull. Zack is screaming and blood is pouring on the floor, and Zack's skull falls apart and body drops. Nightmare walks out of the cell block and he sees Valor drinking a Mountain Dew out of a bloody skull of one of the guards that he killed, and says to Valor, "What's next?" Valor says, "You go after your old friends. You can turn into your human form to blend in. I got a plane to catch." 2 hours earlier, Cameron Ford aka Sledgehammer and Jonathan Cross returned to the office. They had just closed a big investigation that they were working with San Francisco District Attorney Caleb Howard and with a Detective Harry Bosch of SFPD against the Magellan crime family, which consists Sophie Magellan, a madam of several brothels on the west coasts. Francis Magellan, a medical tycoon who just invested into new pharmaceutical company called Painstar, and they specialize in pain medication, and the leader of the family, the big brother Clive Magellan, who has his hands in real estate, Fortune's 500 companies, owns a local wrestling promotion LAX, a few nightclubs around the city. Clive's wife Morgan happens to be a name partner in a large law firm and also connected to the Marcos cartel. Cameron and Jonathan got involved with this after Lily decided to go after Francis because her best friend Zelda was being abused by Francis and he killed her. Lily wanted revenge but ended up in a tight spot where she made a deal with Clive and Morgan's daughter Ruby to steal for her and her network young clientele. Assassins, mercs, and corrupt cops would come after Cameron, Rachel, Mia, and Jonathan, but Cameron ended up and made a deal with the DA to gather up evidence. Now the Magellan crime family are on trial, but one member of family is not Harrison Magellan, who is the drug kingpin of New York aka nicknamed Titan, who will stop at nothing to help eliminate the trial and the witnesses to free his family. Super FBI agent, Dalton Wilcox, one of Sledgehammer's kids that he saved and a former stepson of Jimmy Raphael aka Mr. Violence, is deep undercover in his organization and silently killing his henchmen along the way. Dalton got his own agenda. Titan killed his former partner and lover Melissa Reyes during a high-stakes drug raid on one of his nightclubs in Chinatown 8 months ago. Titan killed Melissa by beating her to death until her skull was nothing. Titan had evidence destroyed and someone had confessed to killing Melissa, and Titan was free once again and more powerful than ever. But now Cameron walks in on his cellular phone talking to Rachel, who is in the Bahamas with Mia having a girls' trip. Cameron and Jonathan's secretary, Monique Tyson, has just relayed messages to them, and Monique says an urgent message from Captain Danvers' wife Janet, and Cameron gets on the phone with Janet and she says something is really wrong, and the last time she talked to her husband, she had heard screaming. Cameron gets on the phone to contact the jet. Jet has crashed. Cameron looks at the messages and sees a message from Charlie saying that Joe is saying that Billy changed the venue of the concert from Bucharest to Transylvania. Charlie left Lamora's address on the message. Cameron grabs a suit and tells Jonathan that he has to go to Romania to check on Charlie and his band. Charlie goes outside and flies off. Lily is driving her ambulance when she hears about the prison riot and the escapees, and when Lily hears that Rick Shane has escaped from Alcatraz, she flashes back to when Rick had gunned her and her friends down. Jonathan sees the news footage about the prison break and Lily calls the office, and Jonathan picks up the phone and says Jonathan says motherfucker Ricky has escaped, and Lily says we got to kill this fucker, and Jonathan says where the fuck he going to turn up. Cameron arrives in Transylvania at Lamora's castle and he sees it's badly burned and is confronted by and Inspector Valentina Roma, and she happens to be a fan of Sledgehammer and asks him about his presence. Cameron says he is looking for Charlie and his band. Valentina says that they have found bodies all over this castle dating back years. Lamora has been busy. There were rumors about Lamora and her position within the Romania government that has ties to the IRA and the Russian mob and granted them freedom in her town. And one of the rumors is that she has stored guns and explosives around this town. Cameron says this Lamora has been busy. Why hasn't anyone stopped her? Valentina says because she is the only thing keeping the terrorists and hardened criminals at bay. All these missing fucking people around this town, tourists and such, just like your friends. One of the officers walks up to Valentina and says, Valentina, you need to see this. Valentina tells Cameron she will be right back, and Valentina follows her officer and he takes her into the half-destroyed castle deep into it, and Valentina is standing in front of an uncollapsed wall which has an empty coffin with silver covered in dirt on the ground, and Valentina says that son of a bitch is fucking loose back in San Francisco. Jonathan has just gotten back to the office after leaving SFPD to assist in finding Rick Shane and the other prisoners, but Jonathan got overwhelmed after seeing the prison crime scene cam footage which featured many bodies, blood, and carnage. The office is completely dark as Jonathan walks, and Rick Shane showing his nightmare side while holding Monique's lifeless body which is wrapped in barbed wire, and Jonathan quickly starts smoking his joint. Nightmare says the same old weed man. I thought I killed you, and it really pisses me off knowing that you are still alive. You made my life a living hell back then, you bullied me. You made me feel like shit. Jonathan says motherfucker, you can't blame me for that shit. You were a killer way before we ever met. Nightmare says yeah that's true but I buried my demons long ago. I was trying to be good but you reawakened my demons and I did what I did and now I will finish what I started. Nightmare rips Monique's body in half and Nightmare shoots the barbed wire at Jonathan and he dodges and goes for his shotgun which he has taped to his desk. The song called On Na by Nappy Roots feat. Pod starts playing. Jonathan unloads the shotgun on Nightmare and it does no damage and Jonathan says I guess I got to take you apart with my bare fucking hands. Music gets louder. Jonathan rushes Nightmare with a fury of punches and kicks and Nightmare grabs Jonathan by the throat and throws him through a plate glass window in the office. Jonathan quickly gets up and grabs the fax machine and takes it and smashes Nightmare in the face. Lily busts the office entrance and she screams out Rick Shane and Nightmare comes out the room and sees Lily and she takes off her ambulance jacket and rips off her clothes and turns into her most powerful creature she knows into a big grizzly bear and Nightmare and Jonathan are both shocked like what the fuck. Lily Bear pounces Nightmare and she begins shredding up Nightmare and Jonathan is still laying on the floor smoking a joint and says yeah tear that motherfucker up baby. Lily's claws are ripping into Nightmare's skull and Nightmare pulls out his stomach a barbed wire machete and stabs Lily with it and she falls to the floor. Jonathan jumps up and attacks Nightmare from behind and Lily falls to the floor and returns back to her original form, completely naked and heavily bleeding out and putting her clothes back on and goes to her ambulance to patch herself up. Nightmare throws Jonathan through a wood table and a pistol falls out and Jonathan grabs the pistol and shoots Nightmare in the face and a bullet goes through his left eye. Nightmare picks up his barbed wire machete and charges Jonathan, begins slicing him up and Jonathan's high is over and is now no longer invincible. Pieces of Jonathan's flesh are flying all over the office. Lily drives her ambulance into the office and hits Nightmare and she opens the door and tells Jonathan to get in and Jonathan is bleeding badly and he jumps in the ambulance and Nightmare gets back up and ambulance back up and turns around. Lily is driving wildly down the street with Nightmare chasing them down the street. Nightmare stopped miles down the road. Nightmare says I will not stop until you are dead. Back in Romania. Cameron, Valentina, and her officers are at the crash site in the town of Beerton and Cameron sees a parachute and he goes to it and he sees a pool of blood which is the blood of Mazakine and it's soaked into the ground and it's leaking in the town reservoir. Valentina smells the blood and she can tell it's demonic. Cameron says oh shit. The town's water supply has been contaminated and says what down through that town and Valentina says the Abbey of St. Carta. Cameron says that's where Charlie is. Charlie has been healing well inside the Abbey thanks to the nuns and the priests that watch and pray over him. Charlie has been learning a lot about the Abbey and its history by reading old journals. The main priest Father Sasha Manfred who followed the path where Charlie came from and saw a pool of blood that belonged to Mazakine has leaked all in the soil infecting a tomb belonged to a demon known as Valak who has tormented this abbey in the late 50s and caused a mass suicide of nuns. The demon was cast out by a nun in training and a Father Burke. The blood has also infected Father Manfred. Father Manfred has been fighting the demon's blood from within but Father Manfred has many sins and secrets that he has kept hidden for years. Father Manfred confides in Charlie since it seems he had fought with Mazakine and he tells him everything he has learned through Mazakine's blood and about the prison under the abbey and that the townspeople have been infected with this blood. Charlie is sorry about what he has brought to this abbey and Father Manfred says this place has been damned. Father Manfred tells him you can't save the townspeople but you can save the nuns and my brothers. Father Manfred tells him about a crate of weapons he had stored for Lamora inside the church, assault rifles, and explosives and he tells Charlie about a secret passage in the cellar that leads through a tunnel will take you to an old abandoned castle on the outskirts of town. It's 50 miles. Charlie goes into the church and retrieves the weapons and loads up. Father Manfred is being tied down and his priests are trying to exorcise the demon out of him but Father Manfred has told Charlie this will not work. This is a virus, a plague not an entity. Father Manfred transforms into a full demon and kills all his priests. Blood is being splattered all over the room. Father Manfred is floating through the air and blows open the door. Charlie leads the nuns to the secret passage and locks the door behind them and Charlie goes looking for the priests. Cameron and Valentina sees about 30 men surrounding the abbey and Cameron notices the men are infected with Mazakine's blood and he tells Valentina that she needs to go back to the crash site and handle that because this is way above your pay grade and Valentina looks at the men and says what wrong with them and Cameron says they are infected. If you go with me through them, they will infected you too and Valentina says can they be saved and Cameron says they are already dead. Valentina says I go back but what are you going to do? Cameron says kill them all. Cameron puts on his red sledgehammer suit with his logo in the middle of his suit and retracts his sledgehammer and says to himself let's rock. And Sledgehammer runs towards the crowd of men. Song Hail Mary is played by Tupac. Charlie shows up to the bedroom which is full of blood of bones and he tracked down Father Manfred with the dead priests trying to open the gateway to let more demons in the world and Charlie opens fire on the dead priests and they come at him and bullets have no effect and he decides to fight them with his martial arts skills. Break neck and bones with every move. Father Manfred has opened the gateway and has released the demon Valak out of its prison. Sledgehammer is bashing the infected one by one and they are proving more difficult than he thought. Sledgehammer flies through the crowd into the abbey. Charlie has killed all the dead priests and Father Manfred flies towards Charlie and Charlie does a roundhouse kick and knocks Father Manfred into the gateway and Valak escapes into the abbey and Charlie throws a pipe bomb, places the pipe bomb by the gateway and grabs his assault rifle and bag of pipe bombs and runs out the basement and Father Manfred tries to climb out of the gateway but the pipe bomb explodes cave in the basement on top of gateway. Charlie has made it in the main part of the abbey where he sees Sledgehammer barricade the entrance and Charlie walks towards Sledgehammer and says, "Cameron, it's damn good to see you." Cameron says all hell has broken loose. The infected is breaking through the door and Cameron says these motherfuckers are strong as hell. Charlie tosses Cameron an assault rifle. Cameron backed away from the door. Song called Scream by Master P starts playing. The infected breaking down the door and Charlie and Cameron open fire on them. Valak comes out the shadows and grabs Cameron and throws him against a wall and Valak rushes Cameron and Cameron retracts his sledgehammer and starts bashing the hell Valak. Valor has arrived in the woods and he is smelling the air and finds a trail of blood and pieces of flesh belonging to Mazakeen and Valor has anger written on his face and he hears gunshots and Valor goes to the gunshots and he sees Charlie fighting the infected and Valor runs through the infected and spears Charlie through a wall. Valor says, "Are you the Rockmeister?" Charlie says, "Yeah, who the fuck are you?" Valor says, "I am Valor, motherfucker," and Sledgehammer who is fighting Valak sees Valor and Sledgehammer tells Charlie to run. Charlie gets up and says, "I kill your sister and now I will fucking kill you." Song called The Scratch and Claw by Dropout King starts playing. Charlie is in his Chinese boxing stance and Valor says, "You think you are a fighter?" and Valor rushes Charlie and gets a full fury of punches and a roundhouse kick and knocks Valor down. Valor says, "Well, okay then," and jumps up with a fury of kicks and punches and Valor breaks Charlie's ribs with one punch and kicks to his right leg and breaks it. Valak picks up Sledgehammer by the throat and throws him through the front door of the church. Valak says, "Your body would be the perfect vessel for me to wreak havoc on this world." Sledgehammer gets up and retracts his sledgehammer and says, "You ain't getting this body, you ugly son of a bitch." Valak flies towards Sledgehammer and Sledgehammer swings his sledgehammer at it and takes the sledgehammer and jams it down Valak's throat. Charlie with broken ribs and his right leg is still fighting like hell against Valor. Valor's nose is broken and he is bleeding out of his head. Valor says, "I haven't bled in a long time." Charlie goes for another fury of punches and Valor counters every move and grabs Charlie's left arm and slams through a wall and Valor rips off Charlie's face and Charlie is screaming and Valor says, "You fought well but victory is mine," and Charlie raises his right hand and tries to throw a punch and Valor punches his right hand and breaks every bone in his hand and arm. Valor says, "That was for my sister, you fuck." Valor backs up and gets in a martial arts stance and hits a death blow to Charlie's chest and it explodes Charlie's heart and Charlie falls down dead. Valor says, "That was for me." Valor says, "Now where is Sledgehammer?" Sledgehammer comes out of the church carrying Valak's head. Sledgehammer sees the dead body of Charlie and Valor standing over him. Sledgehammer yells out, "Valor, you son of a bitch." Valor turns around with a smile and says, "There you are," and Sledgehammer drops Valak's head and Sledgehammer flies towards Valor and Valor grabs him and tosses him through two walls. Valor rips the sledgehammer suit off and starts bashing up Sledgehammer with it. Valor says, "The big bad Sledgehammer, you thought you were the baddest motherfucker in this world." Sledgehammer dodges Valor and says, "I am the fucking baddest." Sledgehammer starts punching the hell out of him. Charlie's heart is healing back and Charlie wakes up and hears Sledgehammer and Valor fighting throughout the abbey. Valentina and her deputies are showing up at abbey and the remaining of the infected are standing in front of the abbey and they are gunning them down. Valor counters Sledgehammer's attacks and Judo throws him to the ground. Valor says, "It's been a long time since I've been in a good-ass fight. This is better than sex." Laughs. "I wondered how your wife is doing at this moment." Sledgehammer says, "What?" Valor says, "Is she enjoying her girls' trip with Mia?" Sledgehammer says, "How the fuck you know that?" Valor says, "Billy Cole, my little birdie told me everything about you all. Plus a friend of mine is looking to even the score for your precious Rachel killing her brother Jerry, so that should be in motion as we speak." Sledgehammer says, "You motherfucker," and Sledgehammer rushes Valor with a deadly boxing combination and Valor dodges his punches and grabs by his right arm and breaks it and Valor is punching Sledgehammer over and over again, breaking Sledgehammer's nose and cheekbones. Valor picks up Sledgehammer and performs a spinebuster maneuver and breaks Sledgehammer's back. Valor gets up and says, "Look at you now, Sledgehammer, like a little bitch. I can do anything I want to you." Valor grabs Sledgehammer's skull and says, "I am going to skull fuck you to death, then I am going to see if anything left of your Rachel, then me and my wife are going to fuck her 6 ways from Sunday." Sledgehammer says, "Fuck you." Valor says, "You should have never fucked with me in the first place." Valor starts squeezing Sledgehammer's skull and blood is flowing on the ground. Charlie opens fire on Valor and Valor is knocked off Sledgehammer and Valor gets up and is shocked to see Charlie. Valor says, "Didn't I kill you already?" Charlie says, "Well, I am still fucking here, bitch." Valor says, "Well, at first I don't succeed, then try again." Charlie says same thing your sister said. Charlie goes into the church and Valor says I am going to tear you apart limb from limb and turns into his demonic self with horns on his head and Charlie says you got 60 seconds to determine the rest of your life. Valor says it will only take me 30 seconds to rip you in half. Charlie runs at Valor. Valentina and her deputies come into the abbey to find Sledgehammer on the ground unable to move and they pick him up and Valentina hears fighting and Sledgehammer says forget about that. Let's get out of here. We don't have a lot of time. Valentina says okay let's get the hell out of here. Valor throws Charlie through the altar and Charlie has been all sliced up by Valor's claws. Valor walks over to Charlie and says I am going to rip out your heart and eat it raw and Valor opens up Charlie's chest and it's revealed Charlie has wrapped his chest with 5 pipe bombs and ammo. Valor says what the fuck. Charlie says time's up. The entire abbey blows up. Sledgehammer says that's a boy. Charlie and Sledgehammer pass out from the back pain. Valentina puts Sledgehammer in the passenger seat in her car and Valentina tells her deputies to secure the scene. Valentina drives off. Sledgehammer wakes up and asks where they are going. Valentina says I was just going to drive around until you were able to heal. I know going to the hospital would be a waste of time. Sledgehammer says the older I get the harder it takes me to heal. I am now 43 years old, Valentina and Valentina says you would be surprised by my age. Did you know they made a comic book about you? Sledgehammer says no I didn't know that. I am sorry I am not trying to cut you off. But I need to rest my eyes so I can heal faster. So I can check on my wife. Valentina says oh you are married. All the good guys are taken. Do you mind if I play some music? Sledgehammer says that would be nice. Valentina plays a CD and the song playing is Winter by Tori Amos as Valentina is driving Sledgehammer around the forest. Valor rises out of the rubble with his body all covered in sharple from the bomb and the music gets louder and Valor is looking for Charlie through the debris and he finds Charlie's arm and says you better stay dead. Valor walks out the rubble and deputies are aiming their guns at him and Valor brands his claws and he begins slashing through Valentina's deputies. Bullets, blood, flesh are spraying all over the ground. Valor opens up a portal and goes back to his penthouse suite in New York and pulls off his torn clothes and is standing in front of the mirror and he starts to pull the sharple out of his face. An hour later, Sledgehammer shows up in the Bahamas at the same time Rachel and Mia are killing the last of the zombies released by Cleopatra alongside 6 Canadian high school kids who have been fighting like hell all night. Rachel says finally, you showed up and Sledgehammer says I've been busy. 36 hours ago Chapter 5, A Savage Paradise. Mia and Rachel have just arrived in the Bahamas and the weather is sunny and hot good-looking people everywhere. Song playing called Miss Murder by AFI as they are walking through the hotel. Mia realizes the last time she had been to the Bahamas was Brandon back in 1987. Mia has a flashback of Brandon telling her that he loves her and making love on the beach from sunrise to sunset. Mia is clinging to her wedding ring that is around her neck. Mia and Rachel enter their hotel room. Rachel says to Mia, "Thanks so much for dragging me here." Mia says if anyone deserves a vacation around is you. You take care of everyone. Your patience and Cameron. You have to have time for yourself. Rachel says I wish Lily could have made it but she said she couldn't get out of work. Mia says with all that money Jonathan has been making working for I for D. You would think that he would try to convince Lily that she doesn't need to work anymore. Rachel says Lily works because she wants to help people because if she doesn't, she will revert back to being a thief. I believe she has found her purpose. Mia changes into a sexy swimsuit. Rachel says you are going to get all those guys mouth-watering and Mia it's been a while since I had a good fuck or my gorgeous cat ate. It's time for mama to get some hot action. Rachel puts on a sundress. Mia looks at Rachel and says why aren't you all sexy? You look like somebody's grandma and Rachel says my man is at home. Why would I advertise something that is not for sale? Thong Song by Cisco. As they are walking on the beach all the guys are staring at Mia. A group of high school kids from Canada, Malik, Dawson, Betty, Ophelia, Tyson, Zachary, Tony, Alicia, Roy, Cassandra are on a graduation trip alongside few teachers and the principal Dante Ashton Toronto aka D. A.T. nicknamed by the students and Dante is one of guys checking out Mia. Dante leaves his students and walks over to Mia who is splashing in the water. Rachel is sitting on the beach and reading a book called The Lovely Bones and Rachel puts her book down and sees Dante watching Mia and she is reading his thoughts and she was expecting to hear impure thoughts but Dante is surely in love and he believes he has found his soulmate and Rachel says to Dante, "Are you just going stand over there looking like a creep or are you going to ask my friend out?" Mia comes out of the water all soaking wet and walking towards him. Mia says who are you and Dante introduces him to her and tells her about his students who are graduating in a few months and this is a celebration. Dante also says he would love to buy Mia's dinner. Mia is looking in Dante's eyes and says it's been a long time since I've been wine and dine but I can't leave my girl alone. Dante says she can come too. Rachel says no, you guys go enjoy yourself. I'm fine. I got a big book and maybe I will just walk the beach. Mia says, are you really sure, Rach? Rachel says, you know you need to get some action before you lose your mind. Mia says, you are so right. It's only a few things you can do with a showerhead, baby. Mia hugs Rachel. Mia tells Dante that the dinner is on. Malik and Dawson are shirtless and are jogging down the beach. Dawson is conflicted about staying home in Canada with his friends and family. Malik stops from jogging and says to Dawson that he has enrolled into a wrestling school and is wondering if Dawson will come with him. Dawson says, I really want to go, but Betty wants me to follow her to NYC. Malik says, follow her like a little bitch, you mean right. Dawson says, I love her, man. Malik says, man, you got so many options around our hometown. Betty is trying to control you like she has been doing since the 8th grade. She wants you to be the man. She wants you to be. Dawson says, you and I have been friends since kindergarten. Hell, we basically brothers. Malik says, we are brothers. And brother, believe me, the only reason Betty is trying to move you to NYC is because she knows that Cassandra has been in love with since the 3rd grade. Dawson says, Cassandra is in love with me. Malik says, she's been trying to tell you for years, but something always gets in the way. Cassandra wrote a letter of declaration of her love for you, and I am guessing Betty found the letter a couple of weeks ago somehow and Betty confronted her at Tony's birthday party. Dawson says, that's what fucking fight was again. Malik says, Betty has always hated Cassandra. But this changes your thoughts on leaving. Dawson says, I had always loved Cassandra. I never knew she did too. That's how I ended up Betty. Cassandra dressed in a white bikini watching Dawson and Malik having their conversation, and Tony screams out Cassandra's name and Tony walks up to Cassandra and says, you still got that feeling. You know, all this waiting for a good time to tell someone you love them shit is getting old. Cassandra says, I know, I hate this shit too. But every time I find an opening to tell him, something always gets in the way. Tony says, or someone. Betty and Ophelia are drinking heavily at the bar. Song playing on the jukebox is Frozen by Madonna. Betty says, I am tired of this drama caused by Cassandra. Saying she's been in love with my man since they were kids. If that's so fucking true, why the fuck weren't you with him when I approached him at the junior high prom? Ophelia, you don't know how much I love Dawson. I mean, I have dreams about our future and about our future kids. Ophelia says, damn, you love him like that. I thought it's just some high school romance. You were talking about some serious love, but you think taking him from his dreams of being a wrestler and his family to NYC is the right way of doing things. Betty says, I wanted to go to NYU for film school, but I found one close to home and maybe I jumped the gun trying to leave, but I know now I don't want to leave you, my best friend, and I don't want Dawson to hate me for making him leave his home and dreams. Ophelia says, I understand that. Zachary, Roy, Alicia, and Tyson are water skiing around the ocean having fun. Tyson is driving the boat and drinking a beer and flirting with Alicia. Zachary and Roy are trying to see who is the better skier. Tyson is driving in a closed-off part of the island that has been abandoned since 1988. The story is legend. Alicia is staring at the island and she thinks that she sees a person, but they disappear in front of her eyes. Tyson says this part of the island was called Snyder's Paradise. They say in 1977. This land was bought by the Snyder family led by Marilyn Snyder, who was found out to be the oldest daughter of deceased serial killer Michael Snyder, who killed 100 people in over 2 decades. Maryland used the money from the movie deals and books to buy this island to get away from the public eye. Maryland and her 3 brothers and 3 sisters lived alongside their friends on the island. They lived in peace until 1986. A party yacht had crashed due to a typhoon and most of the survivors washed up in Snyder's Paradise. These survivors were ruthless and spoiled, and Snyder's family tried to help them out, but the survivors were so disrespectful. Maryland also couldn't allow anyone from the outside world to know where they are, so Maryland offered them to either stay there with them or die. The survivors were very determined to get home. Maryland and her family decided to kill them all. The survivors fought back, but in the end, the survivors lost. Every time tourists washed up, they would be granted the same choice and met with the same demise. But in 1988 there was a major concert called Rockfest with all the big names of the year. One rock band would take a wrong turn and ended up on Snyder Island, but this time the Snyder family met their match with this rock band, which ended up with the lead singer burning down the Snyder Island single-handedly, killing the entire family herself. The name of the band would remain unknown. Alicia tells Tyson that he is full of shit. Zachary and Roy say they are ready to go back, and Tyson turns the boat around and drives away the island. A person with a long-haired and burned-up face pops out the shadows and says, yes, turn away and leave, or otherwise this island would be your casket. It's nightfall. Mia and Dante are having a romantic dinner at La Caverna, an Italian restaurant. Song called Uninvited by Alanis Morissette is playing in the restaurant as they are enjoying their meal. Dante says that he is really enjoying this date. Mia says I agree, this is a good date too. It's been a while since I've been on a real date. Mia says tell me about yourself. Dante says I have been a principal for 10 years. I am a widower and whatever you want to know I am an open book. Dante says, what about you? Mia says I am in between jobs at the moment. I used to be a bartender. I am a widow. Dante says if you don't mind me asking. How did he die? Mia says I don't mind answering. He was murdered. Dante says I'm so sorry, Mia. Mia says my husband was AP. And he was very good at job, but this particular case went south, but the killer was found and justice was served. Dante is feeling uncomfortable and pours himself a glass of red wine and says I really never knew anyone who got murdered. Mia says, how did your wife die? Dante says it's a long story and Mia says I got a plate of food and a glass of wine, tell me a story. Dante says okay, here goes. The song Special Needs by Placebo is playing as Dante narrates his story. Gina was born with a weak immune system and she developed leukemia at age 8. Her parents would use all different kinds of special experiment drugs and surgery which would be a painful life for her. All the kids would avoid her at all costs. They would be so cruel. My mom and her mom were best friends. I knew Gina all my life but didn't really get to know until the end of my 6th grade cycle when I was going through my own drama when my mom and dad decided to get a divorce. I was sad all the time and closed off. None of my true friends didn't know what to say, but one day this beautiful voice came from behind me to ask me am I okay, and I turned around. It was her. At that moment I no longer saw a weak person. Gina was strong, smart and had no fear. I fell in love with her right there. We became close. I was closer to her than anyone else. At 15, she would get a bone marrow treatment that would do wonders for her. But her parents would still treat her like a child. Gina loved being around me and my family because we treated her like everyone else. Gina and I decided we were leaving town right after graduation and we did exactly that. Driving all over Canada through British Columbia. We lived on the streets. I would work odd jobs and she would play her guitar on the street. Gina had a wonderful voice. Gina and I got married when we were 21 and settled in Calgary. We would both go to the university to earn some degrees. I got a job as a substitute teacher, which later I would have a full-time job, while Gina would get a job as singer at a nightclub called Little Jerry's Parley. Then she would take over the nightclub after Little Jerry died. Everything was going fine until 7 years ago when her leukemia came back. Gina never knew that she would live past 8 years old. She would sell the nightclub without me knowing. Gina didn't want me to spend the remaining days we had to take care of her. She decided to enjoy as much time with me as possible. I didn't know she was sick until I came home one day after school. Gina left me a note on the bedroom saying, "Do not open the door, please baby, call the ambulance and wait outside," and there was a note on the door stating that she loved me with all her heart and soul. Also saying she was sick. She didn't want me to open the door to see her like that. She wanted me to remember her before I left that morning, so I respected her wishes, but I heard her body hanging from the ceiling fan and started crying and screaming. I wanted to knock down that door so badly, but I used every ounce of my being to push myself outside and call the ambulance. It was one of the worst experiences of my life. Mia is wiping her tears. Dante says every night for a while before I would go to bed I would hear the creaking of the ceiling fan and I could swear she was still hanging over our bed. So when I had enough I would take down the ceiling fan and no more creaking. But I wouldn't have gotten through all of this without my students. These particular kids have been my rock. I am very grateful to be their principal. Mia says it's good to have good people around you. Dante says me and Gina always wanted kids and we tried like hell, but it never happened. Mia says she has a son. This is her first time acknowledging her son, but something in her wanted to establish that connection with Dante. Mia says his name is Danny and he is 7 and having seen him since he was born. It was the same day his father was murdered and I wasn't capable of being there for him, so my husband's sister Justine decided to adopt him and he only knew her as his mother. But I have been thinking of him lately, but I wouldn't want to invade his life. Dante says I think that is a noble act, but he is your son and sooner or later he will find out the truth. It's always some way, somehow it comes out. Being a principal and a teacher, I saw a lot of these stories with my students play out. Sometimes it works out and sometimes it doesn't. But the longer you wait the worse it will be. Mia says that's one of my worst fears. Dante says I have really enjoyed this date and I hope this went well for you. Mia smiles and drinks her glass of wine and plays with the rim of the glass with her fingers and says I enjoy the food and good conversation. It seems we have a lot of things in common and that seems great, but I'm sorry to tell you. There is no future for you and I, don't get me wrong. I am going to fuck your brains tonight, but that all. Dante is shocked. Mia continues to say there is no happy ending with me. I have target on my back and there are people looking to hurt the ones I love like they did in the past. Dante, you are sweet, beautiful, and you are quite a gentleman and you deserve nothing but happiness, and with me you won't get that. But for being in the right place at the right time and for being you, you at least get to have a wonderful night of lovemaking. Dante says you are a beautiful woman and I was expecting this, and to be honest, I don't know if I would be able to satisfy you. It's been a while. Mia leans in towards him. Mia says, well Dante, after I am done with you, you are going to be fucking Superman. Meanwhile on the other side of the island 45 minutes earlier, Dante's students are having a bonfire. Loud music and drinking going on. Dawson and Betty are watching the sunset and start walking down the beach. Betty tells Dawson that she is not going to New York and she knows he is having thoughts about their relationship. She is willing to do anything to prove her love. Cassandra is standing in front of the bonfire watching them kissing on the beach. Ophelia walks up to Cassandra and says, you and I need to talk. Ophelia says, I am going to talk and you are going to listen. First of all, I understand that you are deeply in love with Dawson, but so is my bestie, and that is why I am in your face. Dawson is in love with her. So it's best if you leave him alone. Cassandra tries to talk and Ophelia cuts her off and says, I told you. You are going to listen. Cassandra, you are gorgeous, girl. You can get any guy you want that is available. You are a high school senior. You got your whole life ahead of you. I know how it feels to love someone and they don't love you back, but they chose to love someone else instead, and Ophelia grabs Cassandra's face and looks into her eyes. Cassandra says, wait. Are you talking about me? Ophelia says, I know I've been known to fuck every guy on campus, but that was a rumor that Betty started to help hide who I really am, and coming from my family with the kind of parents that would not accept that I am a lesbian. I was accepted by my friends and Roy was a good cover as a boyfriend until he met Zachary and he came out the closet and his family was so welcoming about his sexuality. Cassandra, I watched you ever since junior high follow Dawson around like a lovesick puppy. Ophelia kisses Cassandra and Cassandra leans back and says, I always thought you hated me. I didn't know you wanted me. I have dated guys but they never see me how I wanted to be seen, and Dawson has been my friend all my life until Betty came in the picture. He was the only one to look at me like the way you are looking at me now. I never felt like this before. Song playing How Many Licks by Lil Kim and Cisco starts playing as Cassandra kisses Ophelia and they fall down on the beach and Ophelia falls on top of her. Ophelia says, what do you want to happen? Cassandra say, I am a virgin. I never had sex. I was waiting so long for the right person and I thought it was Dawson, but the way you are making me feel at this moment. I don't want you to stop. Ophelia, let's go back to my room. Ophelia lays Cassandra on her bed and starts pulling off Cassandra's clothes. Ophelia starts sucking Cassandra's toes and licking her thighs and grabbing her breasts while having her whole mouth on Cassandra's pussy, sucking her entire pussy and tonguing her clit. Cassandra is moaning loudly, and in the next room Dawson and Betty are completely naked having sex on the floor. Betty is smiling and moaning. Next room Zachary and Roy are 69 each other in their bed and Tony is half drunk and wants to join them, and she takes off her clothes and slides in the bed with them and Tony starts sucking Roy's cock. Zachary says now it's a party and Tony kisses Zachary. Tony sits Roy's cock while Zachary sits on Roy's face and Roy starts sucking Zachary's balls while Tony sucks Zachary's cock. The next room. Alicia and Tyson are laying in bed fully dressed watching the Wayans brothers on TV and smoking weed. Malik is having sex with two island girls in a steamy hot tub. Dante is laying on his bed and Mia is straddling him. Both are completely naked. Dante is moaning loud. The sweat is pouring off Mia's body onto Dante's body. Mia is kissing all over Dante's chest. Mia starts sucking Dante's cock. Dante's eyes are rolling in his head. Mia sits on Dante's face and Dante begins eating her ass and licking her pussy, and she is sucking his cock at the same time. Music gets loud as Dante comes inside Mia's mouth and Mia comes all over Dante's mouth. Music ends. It's 2:15 a.m. Rachel is sleeping and dreaming of herself fighting Cleopatra and Sledgehammer fighting Valor, and they are all covered in blood. Rachel wounds Cleopatra and Valor knocks the sledgehammer on his back, and Rachel sees that Valor with his sword stabs Sledgehammer in the throat. Rachel tries to go towards him but is blocked by Cleopatra, and Valor jams his sword in Sledgehammer's neck and rips off his head, and Rachel kills Cleopatra and jump down to face Valor, and Mia standing behind her and whispers in her ear says, you got to make a choice to let him die and face Valor yourself or save him. Mia shows Rachel a future without him. A future with him but without her. Rachel wakes up from her sleep and it's now 11:30 a.m. Dream Mia's voice still echoes. You have a choice to make. Mia busts into their room and says, hi girl, are you alright? Rachel says, just a bad dream. How was your date? Mia lays on the bed and says, he is a great guy but not for me. I mean, he's a nice good-looking guy and I know it won't last, especially with the way my life has been lately. The men I end up always end up dead. So I wanted to spare him that, but anyway, I like bad boys. Rachel gets out of bed and she goes to the bathroom and turns on the shower and says, "Did you and Dante have sex?" Mia laughs and says, "Yeah, we did, and I believe I was too much for him. He was so rusty. I had to teach him some things, but once we started to get going. It was good, not amazing or mind-blowing, but it was good." Rachel, "Is that it for you and him?" Mia says, "We got another date tonight, then one last night of good sex, then we will never see each other again." Mia watches Rachel take off her clothes and says, "You know what, Rachel, you got a great body. It's a shame you hide it." Rachel says, "I don't try to hide it," and Rachel walks over to Mia and says, "I know what is on your mind. You have weird sexual fantasies in your head, but I would be inclined for that, but I am committed to the most wonderful man in the world, maybe in another life, but I think of you as my big sister." Mia says, "As do I." Rachel jumps in the shower. Mia goes outside and she sees Dante walking on the beach. It's 7 p.m, Mia is getting dressed for her date with Dante and Mia has pre-sawed Rachel to join them while they are going to a nightclub called Camp Rami. Dante's students are also at the nightclub enjoying their last night of their vacation. Dawson is at the bar by himself until Malik shows up and sits beside him. Song called Fly by Sugar Ray is playing loudly in the club. Dawson says to Malik that he got good news, that Betty decided she wants to stay home and go to the local film school because she doesn't want to ruin our future as WWE future stars. Malik says, "That sounds good to me, man. So this means you and Betty are going forward with your relationship." Dawson says, "Yeah, she showed me another side of her and Cassandra is still my longtime friend, but she gotta understand I can't love her like the way she wants me to." Malik says, "You don't have to worry about that anymore." Dawson says, "Why?" "I saw Ophelia and Cassandra on the beach kissing and I guess they moved to the room." Dawson says, "Damn." Malik says, "That shit was hot as hell." Alicia and Tyson are walking in the club with Tony, Zachary, and Roy and they go straight to the dance floor. The song called I Want It That Way by Backstreet Boys started playing. Ophelia and Cassandra are in the restroom having sex. Mia, Rachel, and Dante are at their table talking about his students. Regine, Cleopatra, and Romulus show up at the nightclub. Cleopatra spots Mia and Rachel from across the room and she points them out to Regine, and Rachel gets up to go to the ladies' room and she bumps into Ophelia and Cassandra, who are laughing and kissing as they leave the restroom. Regine says, "I am going to get that bitch." Cleopatra says, "Be careful, baby," and she kisses Regine. Regine says, "Don't worry," and she walks away. Dante gets up and goes to the bar. Mia is sitting at the table thinking about a potential future with Dante but also thinking about the men she lost. Mia wakes out her daydream and finds Cleopatra in front of her, and Mia has a terrified look on her face as she looks at Cleopatra. Cleopatra says, "So many people have been looking for you, traitor. If it wasn't for me and my wonderful husband, your bloodline would have never been at the head of the table and rich. You and your family were loyal servants of my prince, and just like you and your big sister Jane. You betrayed us. You are a part of the Dark Coven. You made a vow and you and Jane broke it. We will deal with Jane, and your beloved sister Annie's son Matthew will deal with her and her children to honor your family's legacy." Mia says, "You leave my family alone. You fucking bitch." Mia starts crying and slaps Cleopatra, and Cleopatra says, "I will have their souls." Dante is standing by Cleopatra and says, "You are in my seat, ma'am." Mia says, "Dante, you need to get the fuck away from this table." Dante says, "What is going on? Who is this woman?" Cleopatra says, "This man doesn't realize he is in danger, does he?" Romulus comes up behind him and brands his demonic face, and Cleopatra says to Romulus, "Kill this meatbag," and Romulus tears out Dante's heart and Mia screams. Everyone in the nightclub sees it happen. Meanwhile, Regine comes into Lady's room and sees Rachel is staring at the mirror, and Rachel says, "I could read your mind from across the room. You are very loud." Regine says, "You killed my brother." Rachel turns around and looks at Regine and says, "Well, let's get this done." Regine turns into a giant bat and Rachel takes off her heels and Regine brands her claws, and "I am going to devour your flesh and take your head as my prize," and she flies towards Rachel and Rachel grabs her and tosses her through the mirror. Song called Stand Up by Firelight started playing. Partygoers run out the nightclub and Cleopatra jumps over the table and grabs Mia by the neck and tosses her to the floor. Dawson and Malik rush Romulus after they just saw him kill their principal Dante. Dawson performs a fury of punches and kicks on Romulus, and Malik jumps off a table with a spear and knocks Romulus through a giant fish tank in the middle of the nightclub. Betty screams out, "Somebody help us." Regine jumps back up clawing at Rachel, and Rachel dodges her attacks, and Rachel performs a roundhouse kick and knocks her through a bathroom stall, and Regine is getting angry. Regine gets up and Rachel pulls off the bathroom sink, and as Regine comes towards her and starts bashing Regine's skull, and Regine dodges Rachel and deeply slashes Rachel's face. Cleopatra is badly beating up Mia. Mia is crawling and Mia picks her up by her right arm and grabs her hand and breaks it. Mia slaps Cleopatra and Cleopatra breaks Mia's ribs with one punch and Mia falls to the floor. Romulus gets off the floor and grabs Dawson and tears his face off and Dawson is screaming. Malik grabs a table and attempts to smash him with it but Romulus grabs him. Zachary and Roy show up and save Malik and they jump Romulus and start attacking him with various objects. Betty is screaming, grabs Dawson who has no face and attempts to drag him out of the club. The Bahamas police shows up at the club and they see Mia being beaten by Cleopatra and they are pointing guns at Cleopatra and Cleopatra turns around and Mia is coughing up blood and says shoot her. Cleopatra says to the police, "You are definitely in the wrong place at the wrong time," and she bares her demonic face and they open fire on her and she quickly slashing with her claws through the police. Regine and Rachel are still fighting in the restroom. Rachel's face is bleeding all over the room and Regine is slashing at Rachel and Rachel dodges her attacks and gets behind her and grabs Regine's bat wings and Rachel rips them off and Regine starts screaming and quickly turns around. Rachel grabs a large piece of glass from the mirror and jams in Regine's neck and looks into her eyes and says damn you for ruining my vacation and damn you for fucking up my face. Rachel rips off Regine's head. Rachel walks out the restroom carrying Regine's head and Rachel sees some of Dante's kids attacking Romulus. Dead Dante. Betty holding a dying Dawson and Cleopatra standing over Mia. Mia is praying for her son thinking she is going to die. Rachel tosses Regine's head at Cleopatra and Cleopatra sees Regine and oh sweet Regine and she turns looks at Rachel and says well Miss Sledgehammer I guess I got a reason to kill you, now. Romulus just slashed up Zachary and Roy quickly and body parts were everywhere. Malik backed up away from Romulus. Cleopatra pulls out the Book of the Damned. Alicia, Tyson, Ophelia, and Cassandra and other guests are running crazy around the island and some are trying to find boats to leave. Betty is crying holding Dawson but has just died from shock. Malik is staring at Romulus who is now standing beside Cleopatra. Cleopatra says to Rachel while about to read the Book of the Damned. You and your husband has fucked with the wrong people. Sledgehammer and you have brought this on yourselves. Interference on our future by destroying the keys of hell and now killing the best pussy that I have ever tasted for that alone. I damned this entire island. Rachel tries to rush Cleopatra but is attacked by Romulus and Rachel dodges his attacks and she tries to use her telepathic powers to blow up Romulus's head but it has no effect. Cleopatra reads a passage out of the book stating, reading in Egyptian language, I beg for the release of the damned souls on this land to awake to devour and infect the living and release a plague that will cleanse this wretched place and I am the commander, I am the awakened, I am the goddess, I am Cleopatra the author of this book and the queen of the unholy and wife of Antony Satan Valor, son of Lucifer, son of Lilith, I command thee to awake. Resurrection, Zombie, and Kratos. The dead have awakened from Snyder Island and have been summoned to the main island and all the guests in the oceans are being attacked. The dead police, Zachary, and Roy are also awakened. Rachel gets thrown into the glass behind the bar by Romulus and Cleopatra calls Romulus to come back to her side. Cleopatra also reawakens Sissy the harvester of souls to command the zombie. Dawson awakens and starts biting into Betty's arm. Malik grabs Mia and pulls her away from the dead cops. Rachel sees a red shotgun under the bar and she grabs it and jumps up and aims at Cleopatra and Cleopatra says no you might want to save those bullets, Miss Sledgehammer. You got bigger fish to fry. Romulus grabs Betty by throat and uses her as a shield as he stands in front of Cleopatra as she is walking towards the door and Cleopatra says Rachel, hopefully you survive this so someday you and I will settle this like two bitches in the street but if you die, I hope you fucking die screaming, I hope fucking die screaming as my zombie tears you to fucking pieces. Rachel jumps from behind the bar and hits Dawson in the head. Romulus throws Betty towards the dead cops and they rip her apart. Cleopatra and Romulus walk to their helicopter. Rachel shot all the dead cops, Dawson, Zachary, and Roy while runs out the door to chase down Cleopatra and Romulus but she sees the helicopter takes off and the light shines over the ocean and Rachel sees Alicia, Tyson, Ophelia and Cassandra running towards her as an army of zombie are behind them led by Sissy, the harvester of souls, a powerful demon. Rachel goes into the police cruiser and grabs 2 shotguns and pistol ammo and runs into the nightclub and she shouts we got to board up this doors and windows. Rachel hands Malik and Tyson a shotgun. Cassandra cries when she sees Dawson's body. Ophelia and Alicia help Rachel board up the doors and windows. Rachel hands Ophelia and Cassandra a pistol. Rachel goes to Cassandra and says no time for crying and hands her the shotgun and everyone knows your weapons. We got a long night ahead of us. Rachel walks over to Mia and says, how are you feeling gorgeous? Mia says I am all fucked up, now I am trying like hell to heal myself. I can't believe that, bitch unleashes Susie and the zombie. Rachel says if we are going to get through this I am going to need my best girl. Mia says I am going to need at least a couple of hours to heal. Rachel says I hope we have that time. Tony and some of the guests are inside the hotel building. Susie is leading 50 zombies and she sees all the people running into the hotel building which is made out of glass. The zombies have broken through the glass and are eating the hotel staff. The guests are running wild over the hotel. Tony runs through the kitchen through the back door. Screaming and blood being spraying all over the hotel. Most of the guests have locked themselves in their rooms. Susie busts through the security office and kills the 3 guards in the room by sucking their souls out of their mouths, and she calls them cowards. Tony runs towards the nightclub and she beats on the door and Malik lets her in. Tony tells them what she just witnessed in the hotel and she is scared out of her mind. Dante reawakened as a zombie and Rachel bashes Dante's head in with her fist. Rachel and Mia explain the situation. The remaining hotel guests barricaded themselves on the top floor. Susie and her army of the dead are killing their way to the top. One female guest is screaming out the window, "Somebody please help us. They are killing us." Rachel hears it and says we need to help them. Cassandra says how are we supposed to help them? We only have a few weapons. Alicia says those people aren't our responsibility. They need to fight to protect themselves. Tyson says if the dead motherfuckers kill the rest of them then they will be coming for us next. I believe in strength and numbers, we should save them, but like Cass said we don't have enough weapons. Mia limps towards Rachel and says you have a powerful weapon inside you, Rachel, to save these kids. Rachel says oh yes, the blood, but Cameron isn't here to approve of this. Mia says the guns aren't enough. You might be able to survive this, but these kids will not unless you give them the option of your blood. Rachel says how are you healing? Mia says if you worry about me don't be. I got enough energy to fight, so you give me the guns. Give them the blood. I don't need the blood. Rachel says are you sure? Mia says I am powerful enough. Rachel walks over to the kids and says who wants to be superheroes? Song The Beginning of the End by Smashing Pumpkins is being played while in a montage Rachel is performing a blood transfusion with all the kids. They are getting strong. Mia is healing and she grabs the pistols and the shotguns. Music still playing. An hour later the kids are testing out their powers. Tony has the power to freeze objects. Tyson has the power to blow them up with his mind. Alicia has the power to use liquid as a weapon. Ophelia has the ability to fly and can turn her hands into knives. Cassandra has the ability to conduct electricity and use it as a weapon. Malik is ultra superhuman compared to the Hulk. Malik says damn we are savage. Just called us the Savage Six. Rachel says let's go save these people. Rachel, Mia, and the Savage Six are walking out of the nightclub. Susie and the army of the dead are almost to the top floor, but Rachel calls out to Susie and Susie realizes she forgot her main mission and she and her army of dead jumps out of windows 100 strong of dead. Susie sees Rachel and she runs towards her with her army. Song Everybody's Fool by Evanescence is playing loudly. The Savage Six couldn't wait to use their powers on the army of the dead. Mia, armed with the red shotgun, is blowing away the zombies. The remaining hotel guests are watching from the top floor window and some grab knives, frying pans, trays, and start heading out the door and join the fight. Rachel sees Susie through the battlefield and Susie is luring Rachel inside the nightclub. Tony is freezing zombies and Malik is smashing them to pieces. Tyson is blowing up zombies with his mind. Alicia is using the zombies' blood to make them explode. Ophelia flies through the horde with her knives looking like a human garbage disposal. Bodies flying everywhere and Ophelia stops and she is all covered in blood and guts and says goddamn I didn't think that through and throws up. Cassandra electrocutes half of the zombies that are by the water. Susie is standing in the middle of the nightclub and Rachel walks into the nightclub and Susie says I wonder how your soul tastes. Rachel says you will never know. Susie flies towards screeching like a banshee and Rachel knocks Susie back with a fury of kicks to the body and a kick to the head and Susie goes flying through a few tables and Rachel pounces on Susie and picks Susie up and slams her in the bar and Susie puts her claws into Rachel's face, attempts to pull off her face. Rachel breaks Susie's arm and then twists it off of her. Susie is screeching. Rachel grabs bottle of tequila and jams it down her throat and tells her to shut the fuck up and spin kick to her through her throat and breaks the bottle of tequila which cuts her throat clean open. Rachel puts her hands on Susie and lights her on fire and Susie is screeching running all over the nightclub and Rachel goes out the nightclub and helps to clean up the rest of the zombies. The nightclub's roof falls down on a burning Susie. A few minutes later Sledgehammer flies down and Rachel says where the fuck you been? Sledgehammer says I've been busy. Mia and Cassandra are guiding all the survivors on an abandoned yacht. Rachel and Cameron are wondering how to cover up all these bodies on the island and Alicia causes a tsunami to take out to wash away the island and all the dead bodies wash away. Mia uses a magic spell to erase what happened the last 36 hours on the survivors while the Savage Six and Mia and Rachel remember. Rachel says to Cameron what happened to you, baby? Cameron says I will tell you everything. Chapter 6, The Dark Order. Valor is sitting in his red robe with stitches in his face in a massage chair while watching Seinfeld and smoking a cigar and Cleopatra walks in with Romulus behind her. Cleopatra tells Romulus to leave him be. Valor looks at Cleopatra and says it's been a long hard day. First I lost my sister at the hands of a fucking rock star. I nearly killed the fucking Sledgehammer, but the so-called rock star that minutes ago before me and Sledgehammer got hot and heavy. I gave that fucker a death blow which exploded his heart, came back to life and lured me into a church and blew me up with a strap of C4 and dynamite which he had wrapped on his body. Cleopatra says, is he dead now? Valor says the only thing I found was his fucking arm and Sledgehammer is still alive and baby I had that fucker on his fucking back with my claws and his fucking skull, but that fucking Charlie. I really hope he is fucking dead. Valor drinks his glass of wine and Cleopatra grabs the wine bottle and chugs it halfway and Valor says, well I am guessing things didn't go well for you either. Cleopatra says, I finally got to have a conversation with Mia about her betraying the source of her power and I had that bitch bleeding like a stuck pig until Rachel tossed me Regine's head. I was so full of rage so I decided to unleash the zombie and Sissy on the island. I wanted to watch them die but Romulus decided to get me home instead, stating that you made it clear that no matter what I should be taken home. So now I am here not knowing what has happened to those two bitches. Valor says, I am just guessing since I didn't kill Sledgehammer. It's possible that he is over there on that island assisting his wife and Mia. Cleopatra sits down by Valor and says, what are we going to do now? Valor says, I have Nightmare, a new recruit hunting down Sledgehammer's mutants, which is a start. I will have a sit down with the faction and try to gain more allies in this fight, and I have reached out to Harrison Magellan to assist him with his family legal problems. So we are going to Los Angeles to meet Clive to settle up with some scores. Cleopatra says yes, that would be a big help and maybe you should reach out to your mother and the Dark Order. Valor says no fucking way. We don't need to involve them in this bullshit between us and the Sledgehammer. I already fuck up things so badly by going to war with this fucker. Mazakine is dead and my father and mother are definitely going to be furious with me, so I need to finish this myself. I meet up with Clive, then I go to Purgatory to tell Wade it's time he joins the fight. Cleopatra says, I thought the Magellans were in San Francisco? Valor says they was. I told Harrison it's best they hide out in L. Where I got a lot of resources after I donated and raised a lot of fucking money to the city after that volcano erupted 2 years ago. The mayor is in my pocket and this will also give us a chance to meet up with other West Coast faction. Harrison will take care of things here. Valor, Cleopatra, and Romulus get into the limp and head to their private jet. 2 weeks later, back in San Francisco, back at the office. Cameron, Rachel, Jonathan, and Lily are sitting at a table and they just got done sharing what happened to each other over the last 2 weeks. Now Mia walks into the building carrying a stack of books including Dracula's journal and says, I found some more information about Valor and hopefully it's more than I already told you guys about. They all go through the books. 3 hours later and Cameron just read Dracula's journal, which has a chapter that says Valor face off against a man named Raphael aka the King of the Sea during a raid of Bran Castle, taking back the land from him which belonged to Dracula anyway. 10 years ago Raphael had taken the castle from Dracula and Dracula states in the journal that he and his wife Ariel had fled the castle to live to fight another day. Valor and Dracula decided to form an alliance with the Sultan to take the land back from Raphael, but it would take years. The journal had missing pages and no ending. Rachel asks Mia why Cleopatra wanted her dead besides the obvious. Mia says it's a long story and Mia starts narrating Valor, who was known as Mark Antony back then, after he stole Antony's body and identity, then he fell in love with Cleopatra. The first human he had fell in love with and tried to live as a man, and he grew very close to Julius Caesar, who he loved like a father, and Valor would try to avenge him but a lot politics would get in the way. But Antony would fight many battles over 2 decades in the name of Caesar and also killing Bratus and the other senators that was responsible. Most of the things that happen in history did happen, except Antony never committed suicide, instead he faked his death, but Cleopatra did, and Antony brought Cleopatra back to life using his blood to make her into a demon, but he make her into the world's first sorceress and his princess of darkness. Cleopatra would be the first of witches, and over the next few centuries, she would recruited many women and girls and granted them powers. Antony and Cleopatra would roam the world together and separately. Cleopatra is kinda like Queen all witches. But during the Salem witch trials, where my great-great-grand-aunt Justine Montgomery pledged her allegiance to Cleopatra along with her cousin Mary, but when Justine decided to her powers to frame her enemies, the other girls that thought they was too good or treated her like shit, and she decided to brand them as witches and cause the townspeople to pass judgment, and which started the trials. Marian had grown tired of watching innocents to die and had rebelled against Justine and her coven. Marian would confide with her father, who was the mayor of Salem, of Justine's plan, and Justine and her coven was hunted down and burned at the stake. Justine's older sister Sabrina, my great-great-grandmother, was overwhelmed with the death of her baby sister, and Cleopatra visited her and gave her power and asked for Mary and as a sacrifice to Lucifer. Sabrina gathered what was left of her sister's coven and waited for enough time to go by, and then they had a secret gathering to burn Mary and alive deep in the woods. These deaths had caused a rift in the family, and 2 factions formed: light witches for good and dark witches for bad. Through the centuries, generations, and decades they would be a treaty taking place in the 1940s between the factions with the main families signing the Treaty of Peace: Light Witches, the Kings, the Moorheads, the Evans. Dark Witches, the Gallaghers, the Hamiltons, who was descendant of Sarah Fear, who always believed that they was framed. And my family, which had been once called the Wiccan family, was erased a few decades ago due to kind of a Romeo and Juliet situation, which had been split between 3 families by this time because of 3 sisters. One sister named Agnes Wiccan decides to marry a warlock named Maurice Moorhead, a light warlock. Second sister Amanda Wiccan, who married a warlock named Ted Spellman, and third sister my grandmother Allison Wiccan, the youngest of them all, and she had a fell in love with a World War II vet, a hero named Brett Carlson, and they got married right after the treaty was signed. The final family, the Carlson family. Brett would take Allison away from the rich life she was used to, and she liked it, and Brett had bought back his family ranch named Wolf Bane Ranch in Valley Mills, Texas. She wouldn't use any witchcraft for years. They would go on to have 6 girls, and one of those 6 girls became my mother Amy. In 1958, all the older girls have gone on, left the farm, and started their own familles. My mom had gotten pregnant by a man named Martin Campbell, who had gone to join the army to provide for my mom and I, and died in the Korean War 1 month later. My mom's teenage sisters Joan and Lucy, who just started high school, would always babysit me sometimes. My mom and grandfather are the ones that really run the ranch with help of granddaddy's nephews. My grandmother mostly made pies and sell meal plates at the farmer's market. Every day was peaceful in our little paradise. One day Joan got assaulted and raped by the KKK because she was dating a black man, and after they raped her, they hung him and set him on fire. Her parents and sisters knew about the relationship. They were okay with it, and Allison decided to pull out the Book of the Damned and decided to avenge her daughter. Cleopatra would appear to her and ask her for a sacrifice in order to use her magic to achieve her vengeance as punishment for turning her back against the Dark Order. Allison, feuding by rage, agreed to the sacrifice, which would be the soul of her firstborn grandson from either one of her virgin teenage daughters, and her devotion to the Dark Order led by Valor's mother and Cleopatra's mother-in-law, Lilith. Allison would go after the entire KKK organization in Valley Mills and burn it down. Allison was consumed with evil with every life she took, and Joan and Lucy was deeply consumed by their mother, and she would begin teaching them the Book of the Damned. Cleopatra would try to influence my mother to learn as well, but she would ignore Cleopatra and focus on the ranch with my grandfather, who turned a blind eye also, and Cleopatra decided to groom me instead, and after a while I grew to love her like a sister, and she became my mentor over the years. Joan would leave the farm and is the first one to have a family, 2 girls named Heather and Lily and a son named Charlie, whose soul would be promised to Lucifer as tribute, but Joan didn't know of it, but Lucy did because she stayed close to her mother and learned all the secrets. Lucy would later have a son named Matthew, who would become a demonic warlock also groomed by Cleopatra. Later on in 1981 a fight would happen between my grandmother, Lucy, and the Dark Order versus my grandfather, my mom, Aunt Joan and her husband Kyle when they had a family gathering which turned into human sacrifice for Aunt Joan's son. Cleopatra wasn't involved, but she heard that I had joined the fight alongside with my husband Brandon and saved Charlie's soul. Hence Cleopatra's reason to kill me, also unleashing her secrets across the world. But the main reason was betraying her and the Dark Order. Cameron says to Jonathan, I read that Valor was defeated by someone named Raphael, and Mia says we know Raphael, but you know him as Jimmy. Brandon's mentor, you know, the FBI agent. Cameron says this book was made centuries ago. Mia reveals to Cameron and everybody about Raphael, and after the reveal Mia says that Cameron should meet Raphael, who's in New York City at the moment. At the same time Dalton is working undercover. Mia continues to say it's finally time for you guys to meet, and Rachel says I think it best Mia goes with you to help with the transition, and Cameron says I will be fine. Rachel says no, you take Mia with you, so you found Raphael faster and find Dalton to let him know that he is in danger. We are not losing anyone else. Rachel says I am going to stay here with Jonathan and Lily, and we are going to find this fucker, Nightmare, and end him. Cameron walks up to Rachel and says don't go looking for Cleopatra until I come back. Rachel says I am not promising anything. Rachel kisses Cameron and Cameron says please be safe, and Rachel says you too. Cameron and Mia leave the office. Rachel goes into Cameron's office and opens the closet and opens the large locker and pulls out body armor, a 9mm Smith & Wesson, a jackhammer shotgun and a set of knives, and walks out, and Jonathan stands in front of and says, what are you up to, Rachel? Rachel says I've been doing a lot of reading and found out that Magellan family have been working with Valor this whole time, and they aren't fucking human. They are fucking ghouls, meaning they eat human flesh, and if anyone knows where Valor and his fucking bitch wife is, it's them. Jonathan says you heard what, and Rachel cut him off and step aside. Kid, you worry about finding Rick fucking Shane, and Jonathan backs off, and Rachel is about walk out the door, and Lily, do you even know where to start? And Rachel says while walking out the door, from the bottom to the top. Lily says to Jonathan, this is getting out of hand, this is too fucking much. Jonathan says this is where we are at now, baby. Lily says I want my life back and we should run away together and leave this shit behind. Jonathan says how can we just up and leave while Rick is out there killing people? Monique is dead, Charlie is dead, his wife, his band are all dead. Rick has hunted all the survivors. Some are dead, some are in hiding, some are unknown. Rick must die. Valor must die. I ain't running. Lily says I need time to think and she goes outside to payphone. Jonathan sits in his chair and looks at Monique's blood stain on the carpet and pulls out a bottle of whiskey from his desk and pours himself a drink. Lily is on the payphone and says I am tired of this shit and I want out. Tell me what I got to do. 2 hours later, Lily arrives in Los Angeles and then walks in the diner called the Sunset Grill and Lily sits in a booth and it's Ruby, the daughter of Clive and Morgan Magellan, who already sitting down and says, so I guess you reach your boiling point, but you gotta admit that your hands are clean of this anyway. Lily says Rachel is coming after you and your family and she knows what you really are and that you have an alliance with Valor. Ruby says we are not afraid. We are ready and my family has been through wars. You think that Rachel, Cameron and your boyfriend or the thought of prison scares us? Our money built those prisons. Our money built these cities. We own this world. They thought we had us beat, but all that was an illusion to you all as we speak. All those statements and evidence against us are being destroyed. Witness being silenced. Task force being dismantled. That trial was erased and reporters recanted their stories. Lily looks disappointed and says it seems your family beat the system. Ruby gets up from the table and says we are the system. Cleopatra walks over to Ruby and Lily says to Ruby, what the fuck is she doing here, and Ruby says you wanted out. Well, this is how you get it. Ruby walks away and Cleopatra sits facing Lily and Cleopatra says Ruby told me you are very resourceful. Lily seems scared. Cleopatra says I know all about you. I was talking to Nightmare, I meant Rick Shane. It seems that you aren't as innocent as I thought you were. You were responsible for the campus shooting. You planned it with Rick and you two were together and it was two against the world with you guys like Bonnie and Clyde and Mickey and Mallory, but you got involved with Jonathan who made Rick's life a living hell and Rick decided to kill you too. Lily says I didn't love Jonathan back then, I just did that just to get close, but Jonathan was such a sweet talker. Cleopatra says Jonathan is still sweet talking you and Ruby gives Cleopatra a blue velvet folder and sits next to Lily. Lily says what's in the folder? Ruby says Jonathan has not been faithful towards you, beautiful. Cleopatra say Billy Cole was very good at keeping tabs on all of you. Cleopatra opens the folder and it's photos and Cleopatra spreads the photos all over the table and says Johnny has been a very naughty boy. Lily looks at the photos. It's Jonathan naked with other women. Lily picks up another photo, he is having a threesome with women in their 60s. Lily picks up another photo Jonathan has of a woman urinating on him while pleasuring another woman. Lily is disgusted. Ruby says Johnny M has a dark side and is freaky. Cleopatra says that's my kind of man. You see that you gave yourself, your trust, and your devotion to the wrong man. Lily is crying and says I want to make that sick motherfucker pay. Ruby says to Cleopatra, Lily says that Rachel is looking for you. She wants vengeance. Cleopatra says, is that so, well Lily? So we are going to kill two birds with one stone. Back in San Francisco, Rachel has gotten in touch with Detective Bosch who has been put on a 3-week forced vacation. Rachel wanted information to get her closer to the Magellan family and Bosch tells her all the information has been misplaced but really destroyed. Bosch sees Rachel really wants the information so Bosch contacts his wife who is an FBI agent to get some info and Bosch tells Rachel that Morgan Magellan has been having an affair with a dangerous drug dealer Sammy Colton aka Sammy the Butcher who has a huge crew working for him and has ties to a criminal enterprise based in Los Angeles called the Winner's Circle. If anyone knows where the Magellans are hiding is Sammy. Rachel thanks Bosch. Bosch tells her that he owns a nightclub called Colton's Den and says he is a very dangerous person and Rachel looks in Bosch and says this Colton is just my gateway to get my hands on the Magellan family. Bosch says for what and Rachel says this is my problem. You enjoy your vacation with your wife and daughter. Bosch says you and Cameron did a lot for me over the years and I am forever in your debt. Just be alive so I can repay you. Bosch gets into his car and drives off. Rachel walks into Colton's den with a long dark red coat. Sammy Colton is in his office on the phone with Valor who tells him that Sledgehammer's wife Rachel is coming for him to get the location of Morgan and Sammy says he will take care of it. Valor says Cleopatra wants her pretty little head. Rachel shoots her pistol in the air and the partygoers run out and Sammy's 40 henchmen come from all sides and surround her and Sammy comes out his office and starts smoking a Marlboro cigarette and says just literally was talking about you to Valor. Rachel says well I don't need to go after Morgan anymore. I just need you. Sammy tells his men to bring me that bitch's head. Song called Charlotte by Kitty is playing while Rachel opens her dark red jacket and pulls her jackhammer shotgun and opens fire on Sammy's men. Sammy goes into his office and grabs a suit of armor and puts it on and grabs 2 silver hatchets and a silver mask. Sammy's men are getting mowed down and Rachel runs out of bullets and kills all the men with her bare hands. Sammy turns out the lights and music stops. Sammy walks into the room and with his silver mask glowing and Rachel standing in the middle of the room all covered in blood and says you think the darkness will save you. These eyes can see you clearly. Sammy says it doesn't matter. I am still going to take your fucking head. You're going to find out why they call me Sammy the Butcher. Rachel says I don't have time for this bullshit. Sammy runs at Rachel with the hatchets and Rachel pulls out her knives and before Sammy could do anything. Rachel had sliced off Sammy's armor and Sammy attacks Rachel with his left hand and Rachel takes off Sammy's left arm by stabbing him through his elbow and Sammy is screaming and he tries his right arm with the hatchet and Rachel jams the knife in his stomach and Sammy drops to his knees and Rachel asks Sammy where is Valor and his bitch's wife. Sammy says just fucking kill me. Rachel says if you don't tell me what I want to know I will make this last for hours and Rachel turns the knife. Sammy says okay button I tell you. Rachel says spill it. Sammy says after I had killed you I was supposed to meet Valor and Cleopatra at Townie's warehouse. But something you don't know. Your boy Jonathan has been led to the warehouse as we speak. Sammy narrates as Jonathan and Lily is lured to the warehouse by Nightmare who is toying with them for a while by leaving taunts at every crime scene of their fellow survivors. Jonathan thinks he and Lily got Nightmare cornered and Jonathan goes to smoke his joint to get ready for the fight but as soon he takes one fucking puff of the joint, he automatically notices something is wrong and he gets dizzy real quick. Lily tells him all you had to do was to be faithful but you have done this to yourself. Jonathan is looking confused. Nightmare turns into his human self and says to Jonathan, you always thought you were the hero. You never were. You treated me like shit. Even though I had a few kills under my belt as a teen, I was willing to live a normal life. I wanted to make my family proud and become a doctor but you and your entourage made my life a living hell. It was only fitting that I return the favor and Jonathan rushes Rick Shane but is thrown through a glass wall and it appears it's Valor who had thrown him. Jonathan gets up feeling woozy and Jonathan says you're that motherfucker Valor ain't ya? Valor says it seems the drug laced in the joint is taking its time. So let's see what you got. Weedman Cleopatra, Clive and Morgan come out to watch this and Rick Shane is standing behind Lily who is crying. Jonathan is trying his best to fight Valor but even if he was at full strength he still was no match for him but A for effort. Valor is toying with him and slamming him to the floor. Clive's ghouls grab him and Clive says you cost me a lot of heartache you are going to pay. Clive thanks Valor and Valor says I will always take care of my people but really you should thank your little brother Harry he made a lot of connections which made this case dropped against you all. Morgan says we will have a midnight feast of Jonathan will you join us and Cleopatra says maybe next time it's for me and Valor to get back home. I realize I am a New Yorker. Morgan kisses Cleopatra and leaves the warehouse. Sammy laughs and Rachel says time to die. Sammy and what Rachel didn't know is that he had grew his arm back and had regenerate from his wounds and Sammy says ladies first and punches Rachel in the face and slides across the floor and grabs his hatchets off the floor and smiles. Rachel says what type of monster are you? Sammy says I am Abaddon but call me Sammy. More of Sammy's men show up at the nightclub and Rachel realizes this whole thing was a setup. Sammy says you thought this was going to be easy. You were mistaken. Kill this fucking bitch. Song called Army of Me by Bjork starts playing. Rachel pulls out her knives and starts dodging bullets and slicing through Sammy's men. Rachel is slicing off limbs of Sammy's men. Body parts and blood is splattering everywhere. Sammy is watching in disbelief while his men are getting slaughtered and says I should had some of my demons brothers or vampires because this is fucked up. Oh fuck it this shit ain't worth it and Sammy turns around and walks out the back door. Rachel is standing all covered up in blood and she turns around looking for Sammy. Rachel grabs her jackhammer shotgun and reloads it and runs towards the back door and she sees Sammy about to get into his red Porsche and Sammy turns around and sees Rachel and says goddamn, you are one grade A bitch. Sammy jumps into his Porsche and Rachel aims the jackhammer shotgun and opens fire and Sammy and his Porsche gets blown up. Sammy slides out the Porsche on fire and says to Rachel, you fucking cunt and he runs at Rachel and Rachel unloads the jackhammer shotgun on him and Sammy is getting shot to pieces. Rachel aims the shotgun to the head and it blows up. Rachel sees Sammy's hatchets in the fire and she takes it and she gets in her car and arrives at the airport and she leaves her weapons except for Sammy's hatchets in the car and she buys a plane ticket and gets on a plane. She sees the time it's 10:25 p.m. Rachel says to herself I hope I am not too late to save Jonathan. But I am coming. Back at Townie's warehouse, it's 11:50 p.m. Jonathan has been strapped naked to a table. Clive walks into the room with his fellow ghouls behind him and grabs Clive by his head and says you know you brought this on yourself, right? You should have stayed out of my business. In that courthouse I tried to give you a chance to make this go away but what did you say to me? Yeah you said fuck me. Well my black buddy you are one getting fucked tonight. Before Clive sits down at the head of the table and says to Jonathan I know you fucked my daughter Ruby and that's why we are going to eat you alive and he sits down and Morgan sits beside him. Clive and Morgan take off their human faces. More ghouls walk into the room and they sit at the table with their knives and forks. Morgan says no one touches that cock but me. Lily is looking on through a glass door and Rick Shane sneaks up behind her and watches her crying and says, "You still love him, don't you?" Lily says, "I don't love him. He betrayed me first, but I can bear to see him die." Rick Shane says, "Come on, let me take you away from here for the moment." Rick Shane and Lily get on a red motorcycle and drive through downtown L. A while the song "Burn It Down" by Boy Harsher. Clive says, "Let's eat." They all started tearing into Jonathan while he was screaming. Music is playing loud. Lily is holding Rick Shane tight as they drive under the bright lights of the city and they end up at a club called Moody's Pub where a singer named Tori Amos is performing a song called Spark as they walk in and sit at a booth and Rick Shane orders drinks for them. Lily is totally confused and says, "Why did you bring me here?" Rick Shane says, "I know how it feels when you love someone and can't stand to see them suffer." Lily says, "You tried to kill me twice, Rick." Rick Shane says, "You chose that motherfucker over me and you were still with him." Lily says, "First of all, I was just trying to get close enough to get some information from him about a secret party on campus he was having which would have been the perfect venue for the plan we had instead of a campus active killing event which I wanted to change to make less than martyrs but you never gave me a chance to explain. You just shot me. If it wasn't for the sledgehammer saving my life, we wouldn't be having this conversation." Rick Shane drinks his glass of vodka tonic and says, "I was pissed and hurt. It was supposed to be us against the world but forget all about that bullshit. But all that matters now is that you are with me, now right?" Lily says, "I am at a point which I can return from. So I am with you." Rick Shane says, "Sooner or later you will be reminded why you loved me." Lily says, "We should get back." Rick Shane and Lily are driving back to the warehouse to find Clive's guards are dead. Lily walks to the table where Jonathan was and finds Jonathan has disappeared. Rick Shane sees Clive's body which had been cut in half. Lily finds Morgan half dead with a blue arrow sticking in her ribcage. Lily calls out to Rick Shane. Rick Shane comes running. Rick Shane says, "What happened?" Morgan began to narrate as the song called Head Over Heels by Tears for Fears started playing. "We just got into eating our meal as a huge explosion in front of the warehouse and a man dressed in a black outfit with red stripes on it and Japanese symbols on it brand 2 red katana swords begins chopping through Clive's men. A woman with long hair wearing a red mask and a red black outfit with angel wings comes crashing from the room with an automatic crossbow and she opens fire on the guests. Music is blasting. Bodies are dropping everywhere. Clive and I tried to make a run for it. But the man cut my Clive in half with his katana and that bitch shot me. The man whispers in my ear and says, 'Tell Valor the Blood Ronin and No Mercy are coming for him.' Then they left with Jonathan. Rick Shane helps Morgan up and says to Morgan, 'Are you all right?' Morgan says, 'I will be after I get those fuckers and eat their warm flesh,' and Morgan pulls out the arrow with a crazed look on her ghoulish face. At LAX, Rachel has arrived and a limo driver is waiting with her name Dr. Rachel Ford on a board and Rachel approaches the limo driver and Rachel says, 'Who sent you?' The limo driver says he is an ally and he says he is to take her to meet them. Rachel gets into the limo with her hands on her hatchets and 39 minutes later, they reach a mansion with angel wings in front of the gate and the limo driver opens the gate with a code and drives through an entrance and stops. Limo driver gets out and opens the door for Rachel and Rachel gets out and asks for the limo driver's name and he says Caleb and Rachel says, "If anything goes wrong you are the first to die. Understand?" Caleb nods and goes to the door and opens it. The woman with the red mask is standing in front of the fireplace and tells Caleb to leave and Rachel pulls out her hatchets. The woman turns around and says, "How was your flight, Rachel?" Rachel says, "Who are you?" The woman, "That's right, we never met but I did meet your husband in Romania a week ago." The woman pulls off her mask and reveals it's Valentina and she says, "I am Valentina. I have a lot of friends in high places which I use to track you down because I want to help you and Sledgehammer take out Valor." Rachel says, "That's all good but I need to find Jonathan." Valentina says he is at a private facility being taken care of right now. Rachel says, "That's good." Valentina says, "Where's the Sledgehammer?" Rachel says Cameron is going to New York to convince Mr. Violence to help us against Valor and also track down a friend of ours named Dalton, who might be in danger. Valentina says, "Mr. Violence. You meant Raphael, right?" Rachel says, "Yes, why?" Valentina says, "Raphael the Archangel is my father." Rachel says, "So that means you are an angel." Valentina says, "Only half and the other half is an immortal. Another immortal named Connor MacLeod of the clan MacLeod taught the ways of a mortal and how to properly use a sword. He was my greatest mentor. He loved me like a father. Years later, I would fall in love with his cousin Duncan. The first man I ever loved. I had lived a life of chastity and was devoted to God." Rachel says, "You were a nun." Valentina says, "No. I tell you about it some other time." A man dressed in a black outfit with red stripes walks in the room as Rachel and Valentina are talking and the man says, "That's so nice that you are bonding." Rachel jumps away and pulls out her hatchets and says, "Is this a fucking trap?" The man says. Rachel calms down. "We are all friends here." Rachel says, "Take off your fucking mask." The man says, "If I do this you are going to have a promise to keep this a secret." Rachel says, "I ain't promising shit." The man takes off the mask. It's revealed it's Charlie fucking Brewster. Rachel can't believe it. Charlie says, "All will be revealed when we all get together, but as of now Charlie Brewster, the Rockmeister, is dead just like the media said he died in that plane crash along with wife and friends. I am simply known as the Blood Ronin, but you can keep calling me Charlie. I will give you the lowdown on why I got to be a ghost." Rachel says, "I am listening." Chapter 7. Dalton's campaign. Dalton starts narrating. My birth father Tommy Wilcox was a very famous bank robber in Boston. He was a well-known Southie. The best in the business. He came from a big family, 5 brothers and 7 sisters. 3 brothers were cops, 1 became a priest and other a firefighter. The girls either marry a cop or a firefighter. Tommy was the middle child and the black sheep, but he kept his business being a bank robber from my mother, who had just graduated from the police academy. Tommy also had owned 2 nightclubs and was working for Irish mob boss Frank Costello. 3 years later, on my 11th birthday, something went wrong with my father's heist and he was gunned down by the FBI. Rumors happened that he was betrayed by someone on his crew. My mom tried to stay in Boston as a cop but was ridiculed by not knowing that he was a criminal mastermind. So she got a transfer to Houston, Texas, where she gets to be a homicide detective. After a couple of years of being there, I got to meet my idol, Professor Jimmy Raphael, who was the coolest guy I ever met. Jimmy would teach me a lot about life and how to fight and deal with my problem, which I had since I was born, the ability to talk to the dead. My cousin Danny in Maine on my mom's side had this ability as well. Danny and his mom, my Aunt Wendy, were nearly killed last winter by his father Jack, and Danny used his ability to save him and his mom. I really wanted Jimmy to be my stepdad, but he would later on leave for Quantico, be an FBI agent, but he would come back to visit us a few times. He would be the reason I would join the Marines and the FBI later. But my mom's second husband Oscar would be an awesome guy. I was a difficult teenager, but this guy would try no matter what to help me get through any bullshit that I was having. He earned my love and respect as my stepfather. He made me want to be a doctor, but we all know how that turned out. 6 months after the campus shooting in 1994, I joined the Marines and fought in Desert Storm and became a war hero. 2 years later, I joined the Chicago FBI with a recommendation from Raphael, which I could have gotten the job without him. I would be a part of the organization crime unit to help bring down the Costigan family, which was linked to my father's former best friend Kenny Costigan, whose cousin Mickey is the head of the family after his father died from cancer. My boss, Special Agent Malcolm Ross, decided for me to go undercover as myself as my father's son. No one and my father knew what happened to me or my mom after we went to Texas. But in order for me to establish a cover, I had to go back to Boston to reconnect with my father's family. My boss thought it was unnecessary to do this, but I don't believe in doing anything half-assed. Plus my friends / 3 ghosts that been with me since I was a kid, which I called my council. One was a 1960s gangster named Brian Ramsey, who was gunned down like my father, which I connected with him, but he was killed by other gangsters. He had decided to stick around to guide me through life until I am able to solve his case. 2. Lisa Ashton, a supermodel who was famous known in the 1980s until she was killed by a serial killer who has never been found instead of her going to purgatory. She decided to watch over me. 3. Franklin Davis, a black man cook / musician who was a Vietnam vet who became an activist in the 70s in Boston until he was killed by corrupt cops. I made a vow to avenge their deaths, and now I am in a position to do it as an FBI agent. While I was in Boston connecting with my father's brothers and sisters, which I remember meeting them as a kid, I felt nothing but love from them. My uncle Peter, who was a priest and supposed to be my godfather, was so happy that I came back home. My dad's family loved me. My grandmother Roxanne hated my mother. She believed that she ratted out my dad to save her own ass. But she never could prove it. She hated that she took me away from the family. Roxanne's side of the family were all involved in organized crime, and I found out that she knew Frank Costello in high school. I got a job working at a nightclub called Sully's Dive. That used to be my own father back in the day. It doesn't take me long to get part of a crew by the way of just being Tommy Wilcox's kid. We started robbing gang members and stealing cars. I didn't know this crew works for Frank Costello. I am also trying to solve these unsolved murders of my council while I am with this crew. The bad thing about being able to talk to the dead is that if you were around people who are in the business, which people are killed or killed by, will haunt me until I avenge their death or solve their murder, and Costello had a lot of bodies on him. Mostly when I was a kid, Raphael had helped me by get rid of my dead followers by investigating some of their deaths or persuading them to go to purgatory or give them a chance to say goodbye to their loved ones. They called that unfinished business. But as an adult I know how to deal with things and sometimes my dead followers can help me solve my cases. That's where they become useful. My job isn't to bring down Costello. It's to bring down the Costigan, and after working with this crew for months. Kenny came to Boston for Christmas and came to Roxanne, and he was so happy to meet me, and I remember him from going camping and football games with him and my father and the holidays. Kenny has been hearing good things about me and decided to bring me to Chicago to be one of his lieutenants. He had made a promise to my father to take care of his family, but now he can. After 2 weeks of running and gunning with the Costigan family, I racked up a lot of crimes against them with the help of my dead friends. I found out that Kenny raided out my father because he was obsessed with my mom. My father's ghost showed up and explained everything to me, and then I killed Kenny by beating him to death and blaming the death on someone else. I gave all the evidence to my boss, and taking them down made me a name at the agency. I would spend a lot of time working in the undercover unit, but a year later I would see what I am made up of when I get sent to Texas to help out and track down fugitive Seth and Richie Gecko, whose sister was killed by them, and a fellow agent Luke Vogel's sister was killed. So my boss sent me to back him up. I would follow their trail all the way through Mexico. We have no jurisdiction, but I realize we are not agents anymore, and we were a few days behind them. It was nightfall and we ended at a bar called the Twitty Twister. When we went inside, the place was jumping and strippers were everywhere. But when I sat at the bar I realized that these strippers and bar staff were all vampires. A long story short, my partner died and I found myself alone surrounded by dead bikers and truckers. The vampire queen and vampire strippers scratching their heads watching drinking a bottle of tequila at the bar, unscathed by the situation, and they started to creep on me. I would take off my leather jacket which shows my Marines tattoos and my Born to Kill tattoo on my back and have my gun holster, and I say to the vampires, "I see that you barred the doors, but you have no idea who you are locked in with." I cracked my neck, and when the first vampire jumped at me, I exploded its head with one punch, and another one I spin kicked to the stomach, tearing it in half. I slammed 2 vampires together, crushing their bodies. One vampire tried to bite me on the neck and she broke her jaw and I ripped her head off. I spent the whole night smashing and ripping the vampires apart using my hand-to-hand combat skills and ultra strength and invincibility, which is equal to the Hulk if he existed in this universe. I don't need a weapon. I am the weapon. I never found the Gecko brothers, but I know if they came to this place they were dead, and Vampire Queen, whose name is Jezebel Marcos, who I found out later is a distant relative of the Marcos cartel. The trail was cold for Jezebel, so I returned back to the Chicago office. I worked there for a few months, then I was asked if I would head up the organization crime unit in New York, which would be a major promotion. I would make myself take down mob bosses, and in 1998, my girlfriend and fellow agent Melissa Reyes was going after a Chinese sex trafficking ring, but it was connected to a well-rich hedge fund billionaire named Harrison Magellan, aka the Titan, dubbed by the criminal underworld, whose family is involved in everything civil and criminal around the world dating back to World War II. Titan had killed Melissa for destroying his operation, and all the evidence pointed to him. He didn't hide anything. He welcomed the attack on him by the NYPD and the FBI. He laughs was thrown into prison, but he still controls everything, and he uses his 8 months at Rikers wisely. Then, to show you how much power he has, he was released from prison just like that without any explanation. Against my agency wishes, I decided to go undercover personally to get this motherfucker even before Cameron and Jonathan asked me. I've been put on sabbatical by the agency, but to Cameron and Jonathan I said it was a sanction by the FBI. And it's not. I am not going to arrest this man. I am going to kill him. But Melissa tells me to bring him in and don't let her death be an excuse to kill him. So I coordinated a plan with Cameron and Jonathan. They will deal with the Magellan on the West Coast while I work my way up the rankings through Titan's enterprise and destroying his business and relationships inside his organization and uncovering his spies within law enforcement, and now I know he has a special agent in his pocket. So I am who I am. I am Dalton fucking Wilcox. I already die once if going down this path. I ended up dead, so be it. I already know that Titan isn't human and he is surrounded by his dead victims and they want vengeance. Now I am one of Titan's henchmen and I have a girlfriend named Aurora who is a bartender at Titan's nightclub called Bullet's Lodge. I have been killing off members of the competition and been doing it well, and doing all of this. I finally understand who I am and who I truly want to be and who I am loyal to. I am loyal to my family and I am very involved with my father's family now. I love my mother, but she has younger children with my stepfather, but I feel more at home in Boston, which is where I probably end up after all this is said and done. I also have loyalty towards Cameron, Rachel, Lily, Charlie, and Jonathan. 3 months later, one night at the Bullet's Lodge, in walks my old mentor Jimmy, and he would see at the bar flirting with Aurora, and he would sneak up behind and say my name, and he sits by me and says, "It's been a long time, Dalton." I ask him, "Why are you here?" Jimmy says, "Your boss reached out to me about you doing this unsanctioned assignment, and the only reason he hadn't pulled you out himself is because it's too far gone now. You were burned by a fellow agent. You are endangered." I told him, "Well, at last I don't have to hide anymore." Jimmy says I am trying to help you, Dalton. I told him I appreciate everything you have done for me all my life, but like you told me as a kid I got to take care of myself. Jimmy says this Harrison guy isn't what you think he is. I said I know what he is. My counsel has already informed me of what he is. Jimmy says you still talk to them. I said every day. Jimmy tells me that if I needed help with anything to call him and I let him walk away. I was thinking to myself. I never hated him because he decided to leave my mom, but I understand why now. But now I am going to take this evidence to my boss, then I am going to bring down Titan, who is my main focus, but I got to get Aurora to a safe place. I took the evidence to my boss and it turns out that the FBI had turned Titan into a FBI informant and offered him full immunity and had brought down an entire criminal network. I was pissed off with my bosses, but I would have to hold myself back. Titan would walk into the FBI office and all the FBI head honchos would praise him as one of the best informants they ever had because he had information on every street gang, drug kingpin, organization family on the East Coast, and all of them recognized that he is the Titan of New York, and as one of his conditions he wanted to sit down with me alone. So I walked to the interview room alone with my counsel and the victims of people who died at the hands of Titan, which wouldn't fill the room, and they are so afraid of him and they disappear as soon as Titan walked in the interview room, and he sits down, and I know I have to be very careful not to expose my secret abilities or my rage towards Titan because I know the head honchos and my boss are watching me. Titan sits down and says, you and I have never met, but I know of your reputation and you did a lot of good work in Boston and Chicago. Tell me, Agent Wilcox, do they know all the bodies that you dropped in order to get to me, because what happened to your girlfriend? I didn't say a word, just looked at him with rage on my face while I let my mind wander about my future with Aurora to keep myself calm. Titan continues to say, I think you are a very valuable person. I knew you were FBI the whole time. Not because of any moles in the FBI. But I do have a few, but that's not the case. Sledgehammer has started something he couldn't finish. I looked at him surprised and he said, oh yeah, I know what you are. A fucking mutant. You see, your maker is at war with my Prince of Darkness and we are fucking winning. Your friend Charlie, his wife, his band are dead. Soon Jonathan, Mia will be soon. Saving Sledgehammer and Rachel for last. Oh yeah, you see that I didn't mention Lily, well she is with us, now. I was dumbfounded and said, well I guess since you say you and me at war. There is nothing to stop me from fucking killing you. I tossed the table over and he shouts Aurora. I say she is in a safe place and he says it ain't safe. Like I said, I knew who you were this whole time. So I had some of my Prince's followers watching you with every move you make. So as soon as dropped off Aurora in Brooklyn, we picked her up and now she is in a safe place. I asked him what he wanted and he said, well my Prince wants to meet you face to face and then I will have a place for you to retrieve your Aurora. You know, if I wanted to I could really fuck you up with the world by exposing you and all the bad you done and what you are. But if I show them that, then I might as well show my true face, and believe me, once that is exposed there is no turning back. Titan gets up to go to the door and says, go back to your apartment and at 8 p.m. there will be a limo to take you to meet Valor, my Prince. Titan leaves and a few minutes later I walk out the interview room hoping to be confronted by his fellow agents, but no one comes and my boss tells me that Titan wanted me to have the credit for making him my informant. I look at the clock above the snack machine. It says 5:45 p.m. All I can think about is Aurora. 3 hours earlier Cameron and Mia have arrived in New York and are now in a cab going through Brooklyn, and Mia says this should have happened a long time ago. Cameron says why hadn't it? Mia says Brandon thought that it wasn't necessary. They arrived at a brownstone on 563 Jackson Street. Cameron and Mia get out of the cab and go into the brownstone and they pass by a group of sharp-dressed women. Raphael is in his apartment in his bed cuddling with his wife, Joanne, who is a journalist for NBC. Joanne is kissing Raphael and she gets out of bed and it's revealed she is completely naked and she has a tattoo on her ass that says Ms. Violence. She is getting dressed and Raphael jumps out of the bed and grabs Joanne from behind and kisses her. Joanne says I would stay but you know I got to catch my flight, and she kisses him. Raphael throws on his blue velvet robe. Joanne grabs her luggage by the door and Raphael grabs the door and says have a safe trip to Los Angeles, baby. Joanne says I will be thinking of you and our little home. Raphael opens the door and she and he are kissing and groping each other in front of the doorway while Mia and Cameron are arriving at his door to see them doing this. Raphael looks up and sees Mia and Cameron and Joanne tells them that she and he were sorry, and Mia introduces herself and Cameron to Joanne and Raphael says these are my old friends, and Raphael invites them into his apartment. Joanne walks out the brownstone and hails a cab. Raphael walks back into the apartment and says, well Dr. Cameron Ford aka Sledgehammer, we finally meet, and Cameron walks up to Raphael, and you are the famous Mr. Violence aka FBI agent Raphael aka Guardian Angel. Raphael says just called me Jimmy, and Jimmy says I am going to take a shower and get dressed and we will talk. A few minutes later Jimmy comes back in the living room and finds he is alone with Cameron. Cameron says she thought you and I should be alone. Jimmy walks into the kitchen and asks if Cameron did want some coffee, and Cameron gets up and sits at the dining table. Jimmy turns on the coffee pot and sits at the dining table and says, "What's brought you to me after all this time?" Cameron says Jimmy. Cameron would tell Jimmy everything that has happened since Valor pops into his life, and Jimmy tells him about Valor and his family. During this conversation they are all caught up with each other, also talking more about the connection between Brandon and him and how was the one who wrote the book that has information about kill supernatural beings, and also that he was the one been sending him special cases through Brandon the whole time. Cameron talks about Dalton's campaign against Titan. Jimmy says Titan is a very dangerous individual through his connection to an entire criminal network in Valor. But I know Dalton can handle anything. Plus I had also warned him. After knowing all that, Cameron just wants to know how he defeated Valor in the past when he thought he killed him. Jimmy says I can tell you what I did or how I fought him. But what you needed to know is what the circumstances were and what led up to it, because when I tell I was in a full rage when I fought him. Cameron says I am here to listen. Jimmy says it's a long story. Cameron says if it can help me kill your nephew, since you don't want to help me kill him because you don't want to piss off your big brother. Well, I got to know what made you go balls to the wall with him. Jimmy says I didn't know he was family, but if I did I would have did something, but I would have made sure I killed him then. Chapter 8, King of the Sea. Jimmy narrating, it's in the year 1510, 10 years ago I took Bran Castle from Count Dracula after beating him in a fight in which 2 of his wives were killed and he escaped with his wife Ariel. I was hired by Victor, the king of Romania, to get rid of the count who was responsible for killing dozens of townspeople, children, and visitors. But Victor made an offer to give the Sultan 10,000 boys to keep him from taking the throne from him. So I stabbed him to death with my large knife. I became the king of Romania. I was already king of the sea, aka king of the pirates. The Sultan sent a retriever for the boys and I sent him back in pieces with a letter saying to the Sultan to kiss my ass. I met up with all my captains of my pirate ships to place Transylvania as a safe haven for all pirates, and they set up banks to exchange their gold to money exchange. Also set up a fish and shrimp sea captain franchise. More pirates who have praised him from afar would come from around the world. From the Caribbean to Japan would come to pay tribute to the new king of Romania. I had made an enemy with the Sultan. I found out later that Valor had secretly returned to Transylvania to find that it was under control by my pirates' enterprise. He decided to hide from my pirates as a pirate named Valmark, which he would actually enjoy being a pirate, and he would somehow connect with Dracula, who had created a partnership with the Sultan due to his hatred of me. But I wouldn't know of that until after the fact, and a decade later when I finally tracked down the Sultan and tortured and killed him. Anyway, me and my lady friend at the time named Lamora would get married. Dracula had made her life a living hell before I came to Transylvania. He killed her husband Paul because he was obsessed with her, and he thought if he killed her husband it would make her vulnerable for him to take her, but it's made her stronger, and she went to the king to deal with the missing children and the death of her husband, and the result was me. Lamora is now the queen of the pirates and she is pregnant. I was told that angels and demons can't have children, but there is a loophole: the longer a demon or an angel stay on earth the more human you become. So I realized that Joan of Arc was supposed to be my daughter, but I thought her mom cheated on me, but I had always thought she was my kid, but I wasn't sure, but I still love her the same if she was. Now, Romania has become a very profitable country due to my reign as king. Even the townspeople were rich. I have a son now that I named Joshua, who is 10 years old. He has my eyes but hasn't had any angelic qualities. My daughter Joan had been rumored to be in conversations with God/her grandfather, which it's one of the abilities that a half-human/angel can have. I can't say it has been a peaceful run as king, and I have been king 5 times in different lifetimes, and this time has been laid back, but I had to deal with Dracula's vampire assassins, which me and my pirates have taken care of. Going into battles with France and England armies while traveling through their territories to assist other pirates' colonies that we establish around the world. Lamora, me and our son Joshua are the face of Romania. Valmark has been creating quite a reputation as a pirate and now has his own ship which he won in a poker game. He and I had lived in the same country for a decade. For some reason he never confronted me. Valmark had created his journey throughout the Caribbean and through the New World. He had pirates that are very loyal to him, and they would write a book about him called The Legend of Valmark, and later on they would make a movie about it in 1985 starring a young Mickey Rourke. But anyway, things have changed for Valmark once he found out his protege Dracula was working along with the Sultan and King Charles of France to bring me down. And how do I know this? Because I got informants everywhere, and that is how I found out Valmark was Antony Valor. Valor had fallen in love with the life of a pirate. He had forgotten he was a part of royalty, with his father being Lucifer, whose true name is Saint Gel. Dracula wanted his kingdom back, and he made a deal with the Sultan and made him an offer to give him 10,000 boys for his army and slavery, and Dracula agreed. All this is going on while me and Lamora are working on our second child. Joshua is a growing boy enjoying fishing with the other pirates and their children. Transylvania is the home city for mostly pirates. It's a thriving community which is lawless and full of illegal dealings like the deal of stolen goods and prostitution. Queen Lamora has her own business. She has been involved in creating different styles of food and recipes. She never thought that her life would mean anything to anyone, but the entire country bows to her. She feels so blessed and more blessed since she has a son. A son she never thought was possible. The only enemy that I am aware of having at the moment is King Charles of France, who has made it his mission to eradicate the world of my pirates, which I have a big problem with. He has been torturing and executing them and leaving their bodies rotting on bridges. So that was very personal to me. I would leave my family behind to go deal with King Charles's threat, but found out it was a setup by Dracula and the Sultan to lure me away from my home while they planned a surprise attack on Romania, but my queen handled the attack by leading the men to battle and we won. I arrived in France with a handful of my men and we snuck inside his castle late at night and kills his guards, and I personally dragged him in the middle of the town square and I tell him, you want to know why they call me Mr. Violence, and I took my large knife and I put it deep inside his stomach and ripped out his intestines, and when the town folk woke up the next morning they would see King Charles's dead body being feasted on by vultures, and I bet they had a look of horror on their faces. We were on our way back before the sunrise. I returned home to find dead Turks and dead Frenchmen on my land. We had a few dead on our side, but we were victorious. The men praised my queen as a brave goddess, and they would gladly die for her, and they would call her the mother of pirates. A few days would go by and Valor would come riding on a horse branding a white flag and demanding a parley with me. Some of the pirates were betrayed by him and some still loved him, and they would defend his betrayal and guide him towards me as I was sitting on my throne flirting with my queen. My Kingsguard captain Austin MacLeod and Joshua's teacher came to warn me about Valmark aka Valor returning. Valor walks into the room and says I would love to talk to the king alone, and Captain MacLeod wanted to kill him, and I said to everyone to leave the room. They all leave now, it's just me and him. I told him, you go ahead and say your piece, but just got to know. You have lived among us for 10 years. Why now you chose to rise against us? Valor began to say, I never had any ill will towards you. I saw you centuries ago in Jerusalem when me and Julius Caesar visited your famous bordello, and he had taken a liking to that gorgeous redhead with that scar above her eye. I think her name was Eve. With that said, I remember that day. I remember Eve. She was like a protégée of mine. I saved her and family from being killed by Roman soldiers, and that was my first day on Earth. But anyway, I read Dracula's journal. I know you killed the real Mark Antony and you took his body. Valor says Antony was wasting his life, so I thought I needed a body, so I took his and became a better general than him. It's me you read about in the history books, not him. It's a lot of things that I didn't tell Dracula, like actually what I am really or my true name. You see, Raphael. You and I are cut from the same cloth. I thought you were an immortal, but I was wrong. I asked around my fellow devils and they told me you are the archangel, Raphael. The angel of wisdom and one of the best guardians of heaven and first generation of angels. Little brother of Samael aka Lucifer. You have created a lot of history. You've been roaming this world for a long time. I thought you weren't supposed to get involved with these human lives. Isn't that like a rule among your kind? I began to say I got tired of watching people getting slaughtered for nothing. Suffering for nothing. Children being tortured and raped by sick fucks, so I rebelled against the rules of my father and decided to establish punishment and justice. I became Mr. Violence. So you had to consult with your devils, which the term devil in hell refers to a school of power demons, while the real world assumes the devil means Lucifer, but it doesn't, but only a demon would know that, and since you refer to them as your devils, you must be a demon lieutenant. Valor says you are absolutely right, Raphael. But I am actually a general. I have been on this earth longer than you. Maybe not in human form, but I have always been around. I got a little impatient, so I said we established that we both are not human, so what is it you really want? Valor. Valor says I am here to offer you a deal. I have grown very fond of this life and the lives of the people here. Dracula wants his home back. You give his home back to him, then he will sever his ties with the Sultan, then you and him will live together in peace. So I was like, this is the deal, is what he wanted or you? Valor says if you agree to this, I can sell this to him and he will listen to me. I told him it's because you are his maker. You fed him your demonic blood and created the very first vampire who has been killing female virgins and children all through this town. You want me to make a deal to bring this fucker back here to kill more innocents? I'll let me think. Oh fuck no. Valor says I am trying to save your people. You should take this deal. The Sultan wants your head badly, at least with Dracula on your side. You have an edge. I told Valor, why do you care anyway? You are a demon. Dracula is your boy. What's your game? Valor says for 10 years, I live under your rule. You ran this country better than Victor ever did. I was a king before. I watched from the shadows for centuries as a demon and I caused chaos everywhere I went, but I grew tired of it like you did and I rebel against the rules too. I met Dracula as a kid and I watched him grow up from the shadows and almost died during battle, and as he lay dying he told me about his dead wife Elisabetta. I felt sorry, so I gave him my blood and he died and rose later from the dead after they buried him. I fell in love for the first time when I met Cleopatra, which was my real reason to take Mark Antony's body, but Caesar had a thing for her booty, wooed her and won her heart. She made me want to be a better person. But right now we decided to take a break from each other, but we still love each other and distance will do us some good. But I love this way of life, it's free. I am nothing but loyal to the piracy. I wanted to kill you or your family. I would have done it years ago. I could see where Valor was coming from. I can also see he was torn between Dracula and me. So I told him no deal, but you're going to have to choose a side. Either you are one of us or you are with Dracula. If you are not with us, don't ever show your face here again because I will be the one to execute you. Valor says I understand and walks away and gets back on his horse and rides away. Later that night me and Lamora are lying in bed. Lamora says I can't believe that Valor wants us to bring Dracula back to this land that we built and made safe for our people. Our people will fight and die for this land. I told her that I was never going to allow that to happen. Lamora kisses me and we would make love all night. A few miles away, Dracula is staring out at Transylvania while on a large ship, and Ariel is standing dressed in a white dress and trying to seduce Dracula, but his mind is on claiming back his home and obsession with Lamora. Dracula sees Valor coming on the ship and he sends Ariel to bring Valor to his room and ask her to leave them alone. Valor walks into Dracula's room. Ariel looks mad and closes the door. Dracula says to Antony, "Why did you go see Raphael?" Valor says, "We don't need a war. I was trying to make a compromise." Dracula throws a wine glass at the wall and says, "I don't need a compromise. I want my land back. I want Lamora. I want the king of the sea dead. You are becoming more and more of a liability because of your love towards those dirty stinking pirates that I would rather eat rats than feast on them." Dracula gets in Valor's face and says, "You are beginning to smell like them. Maybe you are trying to set me up." Dracula's face turns demonic and he sports his fangs, and Valor smiles and grabs Dracula's throat and slams him against the wall with a surprised look on his face. Valor says, "I think I allowed you to think that you are over me. You think that you are superior to me." Dracula tries to talk and Valor tightening his grip around Dracula's neck while saying, "You are done talking. I am your maker. I am the fucking boss. You want your land back? Well, I won't stand in your way. You do what you need to do to get right. But don't you ever question me again and try to fucking show any aggression towards me, or I will tear your fucking head off and shove it up your fucking ass." And Valor shows his demonic face and Dracula says, "I am sorry, my prince. It won't happen again, I promise." Valor lets go of Dracula's neck and goes to the door and turns around towards Dracula and says, "Yes, you are right, being around humans changed me, but I haven't forgotten what I am," and he leaves. Ariel was in the hallway hearing the whole conversation, and Valor goes into his room and began to take his clothes, and Ariel walks into his room and takes off her clothes and lays on Valor's bed. Valor says, "You shouldn't be here, Ariel." The song The Kiss by Trevor Jones starts playing as Ariel walks up Valor and says, "Vlad doesn't want me anymore. He wants Lamora and I want you, Antony," and she kisses him and they fall on the bed. On the side of this ocean, Raphael and Lamora making love under the moonlight as the song playing loudly throughout the night. In the quiet of our castle, I teach young Joshua the art of fencing, treasuring these moments as the lull before the storm. Simultaneously, I grapple with the knowledge that my archangelic heritage may place my family in greater peril. The song Promontory by Trevor Jones starting playing. The Sultan's army advances upon our lands, accompanied by the treacherous Dracula, and I am left with no choice but to prepare for the inevitable confrontation. As the battle commences, I am filled with a fierce determination to protect my family, even if it means sacrificing my own life. In the midst of the chaos, I am faced with the horrifying reality that Antony Valor has joined forces with Dracula, who has sinister plans for my beloved Lamora. Antony Valor, driven by a misguided sense of loyalty, inadvertently strikes down our innocent son, Joshua, leaving our family devastated and vulnerable. I started just killing anything in my path to make my way through Antony, who knew he fucked up, and he walks into a cavern and I am all covered in blood and follows him. Dracula, seizing the opportunity, infiltrates our castle and confronts Lamora, whose love and loyalty are tested in the face of unspeakable evil, and she battles Dracula, but she meets her demise in the chaos. Dracula transforms her into a vampire, which is something he always wanted. I am standing in the cavern in front of Valor. Valor tells me, "You should have taken the deal and now you have lost everything because you thought you were the baddest motherfucker in the world." I didn't care what he had to say. I was going to kill him no matter what. I started to say, "You killed my boy. I told you if you ever came back here I was going to execute you, motherfucker." Valor says, "I never wanted anything to happen to your family and the men. Plus I have something to tell you. I am your, and before he could say anything I had a sword going across his face and he dodges and he looked like he didn't want to fight but I did. The theme from Black Sails starts playing as Valor and I fighting around the cavern as my pirates are fighting against the Sultan's men. Overwhelmed by rage, I engage in a brutal duel, fueled by the desire to avenge my family. I am drawing blood from Valor from every hit. I don't feel pain anymore, just rage, and I am full of power and anger and it feels so fucking good. I stabbed him in the gut with my sword. I smashed my right hand in his face. I took his sword and jammed it inside in his ribcage. Now he has 2 swords sticking out of him and I grab my axe and Valor says I am Samajel's son. I said to him I don't get a fuck and I wanted to take off his head but the axe just went through his face and then I pick him up and threw him in the well. I grabbed my sword and ran back on the battlefield and I see Dracula standing on the castle with Lamora, who screams out to me, "Leave, husband, you have lost." Dracula was laughing and said, "Lamora is my bride now," and I grasped my sword and I tried to run at the castle but my men stopped me and grabbed me and knocked me out. The song Promontory continues playing as I wake up on the sea with my men and women who have fled from Romania and Captain MacLeod told me we couldn't let you risk your life because we already lost so much. Wherever you go is our kingdom and we need you, our king of the sea. I look at my men and women pirates' faces and I realize I have duties as a king to take care of my people. Captain Morgan had brought my son Joshua's body on board so I could bury him properly. As I looked at the sea, I could not shake that Dracula had beaten me and had taken Lamora, and I will return as soon as I find a new home for pirates, but so many things will happen and I will forget, but I did kill the Sultan, but it's for a different reason. Back in the present time, Cameron is emotional and he is wiping tears from his eyes and looks at Jimmy and says, "You have been through tough times and I can relate to that." Jimmy says, "My entire existence is full of those stories that I lived through. I had suffered so many losses, but you just gotta make sure you don't lose yourself in the process." Mia comes back into the room with some burgers and fries and Jimmy says, "Well, I was thinking I was hungry." Dalton is beating on the door and Jimmy opens the door and Dalton says they got Aurora, and Dalton walks in and is surprised to see Mia and Cameron. Dalton says that Antony Valor wants to meet me at 8 p.m. Jimmy, Mia, Dalton, and Cameron start a plan. Jimmy tells Dalton, Mia, and Cameron to go find Aurora and he will take the meeting with Valor. Chapter 9, Valor and Raphael. Valor's driver is waiting outside Dalton's apartment and Jimmy walks up to the limo and the driver says, "This is Dalton Wilcox," and Jimmy says, "You know who I am?" and the driver says, "Yes I do," and Jimmy says, "Well, he will see me," and Jimmy gets into the limo. Jimmy walks into the Chinese dining restaurant called the Rice Palace and Valor and Cleopatra are enjoying a meal waiting on the arrival of Dalton, but Cleopatra sees Jimmy and says, "Isn't that your uncle?" Valor looks up and says, "Yep, that's Raphael," and Romulus blocks Jimmy and Romulus says to Jimmy, "I wanted to rip off your wings for a long time, Raphael," and Jimmy looks in Romulus's eyes and says, "I am right fucking here." Valor says, "Romulus, cut the shit, this is a family establishment and one of the best Chinese restaurants in the city. I got to say I am very surprised to see you." Jimmy sits down across Valor and Cleopatra. Valor is eating his egg roll while Cleopatra asks Jimmy, "Why are you here, Raphael?" "We were expecting Special Agent Dalton Wilcox." Jimmy says, "I thought it would be better if I showed up instead." "So Val, Mark, what do you want with him?" When Valor hears Jimmy call him by his pirate's name, he asks Cleopatra to let him and Jimmy talk privately, and Cleopatra is shocked because he never asked that of her and she has an angry look on her face, and Valor turns to her and says, "I really need to talk to him alone." Cleopatra pushes away from the table and gets up and she leaves, and he tells Romulus to go with her. Romulus gets in the limo with Cleopatra and drives off. Valor says, "Well, you got all of my attention and my wife is pissed right now, so I deal with that later." Jimmy says, "You leave Dalton alone." Valor says, "I never intended to do anything to Dalton because you are his father figure and mentor. I was going to offer him a way out, but it seems you are doing the same thing when I tried to prevent your family from getting killed." Jimmy says, "Yeah, I had a lot of years to think about that, and recently I had recalled those events with the sledgehammer and I realized, yeah, I could have taken the deal and probably would have saved lives, but I was winning that fight. My men were kicking ass and used the methods that I trained them, and all we needed was you. I did tell you that you had to choose a side, but you chose Dracula and you killed Joshua." Valor says, "I didn't intend to kill your boy. He was family, but he picked a sword and he swung at me. It was a reflex and his body fell off the cliff." Jimmy looks furious, but a calm comes over his face and he says, "We could talk about the past all day and night, but it doesn't matter now. But while we are on the subject, where the fuck is Dracula?" Valor says, "I cut ties with Dracula a long time ago, but I heard that he was hunted down and stopped by a woman who called herself No Mercy, but that is all I have heard about him." Jimmy says, "Well, Valor, I got to ask, how did you get out that fucking well?" Valor pours himself a glass of red wine and says, "Dracula's wife Ariel flew down the well and brought me out, and I fed on her blood, which healed my wounds. Ariel and I had a connection. Dracula had neglected her for a long time, so I gave her what she was longing for, but that's another story for another time." Valor drinks his glass of wine and Jimmy says, "We have lived very interesting lives and these people wouldn't believe how awesome this world once was. Valor says I agree with that. The world meant something back then and the women were also very loving and giving, and Jimmy grabs Cleopatra's wine glass and pours himself some wine and makes a toast with Valor about the women of the past. Jimmy says when you actually think about the lives of everyone you ever met and no one compares to them now. People back then really cared about their values and fortune compared to now. Life of a pirate was the best part of my life, where the jewels flowed like the rivers of the Nile. Valor joins in saying where the women smelled of roses and daisies and kisses were sweet as apple ale. Jimmy says where the open sea meets unlimited adventures and legends were made. Valor and Jimmy grab their wine glasses and stare into their eyes and say together the life of pirates has bonds of brotherhood, bonds of blood. Family of sea, always ready for a fight, always there for a mate, loyalty is earned, as long as sea is wet, the pirate's home is the sea. Jimmy and Valor slam the glasses down on the table and break them. Valor says you see, I was a loyal pirate. Jimmy says I have heard a lot about your adventures among the men, but if you didn't kill my son maybe we could have been allies, but we can never be that even though we are blood. But I have no quarrel with you now, but I am on the side the sledgehammer and I can't allow you to bring hell on earth. Valor laughs and says yeah, I fucked up when I killed your boy and I wish I didn't. But you shouldn't get involved in this because this has nothing to do with you, Raphael. Jimmy says even if the sledgehammer wasn't involved I can't allow you bring hell to earth to cause destruction, not on my fucking watch. Valor stands up and Jimmy stands up and Valor says well uncle, I guess we are at war again, but this time I am the fucking king not you, and this time everything I do is for the greater good of me and my family. Valor puts on his jacket and looks at Jimmy and Jimmy says the fight is between you and the sledgehammer, but don't forget I will be their nephew to see you finally get your ass kicked. Valor laughs and walks away and Jimmy watches Valor walk away and Jimmy sits down and pour himself a glass of wine and says to himself maybe I should have killed that motherfucker and bite the bullet, but let's see what Sledgehammer can do. Chapter 10, Titan's Downfall. Cameron, Mia, and Dalton show up to Titan's nightclub and are guarded by Titan's army of ghouls. Mia and Cameron start taking out the ghouls while Dalton breaks into the nightclub and Aurora has been tied up in the middle of the room. Bodies are dropping all over the nightclub and Mia using her powers ripping the ghouls apart. Cameron smashing the hell out of the rest of them and Titan is alone with Aurora and he pulls out a golden axe and puts it to Aurora's throat and Dalton walks into the room and Titan says I knew that you wouldn't take the fucking deal, oh I put money on it. Dalton says this is between you and me and Titan says there is no you and me. You are not my equal. You are a fucking roach compared to me and Aurora is tasty treat which I will eat like a juicy watermelon after I finish with you. Song is called Hey UH begins playing by Dropkick Kings as Titan takes his golden axe away from Aurora and runs at Dalton with it and Dalton dodging Titan attacks. Titan begins slicing up Dalton and knocks Dalton down. Dalton kicks Titan in the leg and knocks him down and Dalton kips off the floor and performs a powerful combination of strikes on Titan and Titan drops the golden axe and Titan counters and grabs Dalton's arm and slings him down to the floor. Aurora is untying herself. Cameron is outside fighting Titan's henchmen and Moore just pulled up in a black van led by a man in a red skull and black mask named Deathmaker armed with a high-power shotgun with explosive rounds and he sends his men after Cameron. Titan claps his hands and says damn Dalton you are really something special and Aurora picks up the golden axe and is standing behind Titan. Dalton tells her to cut off his fucking head. Aurora hands Titan the axe and she kisses him on the lips and says to Dalton, you thought I needed saving from him but it's I that you should fear. Dalton gets off and laughs, well it seems I got fucked again but baby that sex was very fucking good, but like my Uncle Richie always say never trust a bitch that you never really knew well in the first place. And Mia comes busting in the nightclub with blood all over her and Aurora and Titan are shocked. Cameron just killed all off Dalton's henchmen and now Deathmaker is standing in front Cameron with his high-power shotgun and Deathmaker says special bullets for a special fucker and Cameron says damn deja vu and Johnny unloads the shotguns at Cameron who is trying to dodge the explosions from the bullets. Dalton runs at Titan with another powerful combination and Mia and Aurora are having a fist fight on the dance floor and Mia knocks off Aurora's face off and it's revealed she is a ghoul and Dalton sees Aurora's ghoul face from the other side of the room and he throws up all over Titan in the middle of the fight and Titan says what the fuck. Dude really, and Titan slips on the throw up and the golden axe goes up in the air and Dalton grabs the axe and chops off Titan's head. Dalton cleans his face off and Aurora sees Titan's head rolling on the floor and Mia grabs Aurora by the throat, slams her through the karaoke jukebox and Aurora is electrified and screaming like a banshee. Dalton tells Mia thanks for the help. Cameron flies towards Deathmaker and grabs him and throws him through his van and Deathmaker unconscious and all banged up. Dalton and Mia walk out of the nightclub and Cameron turns around and Dalton tells them they should get back on the jet and go back home and he will deal with fallout. Dalton puts on his FBI badge. Mia and Cameron disappear into the night. The FBI shows up a few moments later, Deputy Director of New York FBI Division, Avery Brooke and FBI agent Kristen Cage are questioning Dalton about the events that transpired between him and Titan. Hours later, back in San Francisco, Rachel had called Cameron on his jet phone as he and Mia had made it back and they met up at a gated mansion named Valiant. Cameron and Mia walk into the mansion. Rachel is standing in front of a roaring fireplace while drinking a glass of red wine with Valentina, and Rachel with fresh scars on her face introduces Valentina to Cameron, and Charlie walks into the room and Cameron is shocked to see him, and Cameron says, "I thought you were dead," and Charlie says, "I get that a lot." Charlie and Cameron walks out to the balcony overlooking a lake, and Cameron says to Charlie, "You are like a completely different person." Charlie says, "I am now on a different level. After I blew myself thinking I was killing Valor, I came out the rubble growing back my limbs, and I locked eyes with an glowing angel that is Valentina. I didn't think I could fall in love again that fast." Charlie and Cameron are drinking a beer as Charlie tells him about his path back to San Francisco. Chapter 11, Consequences and Achievements. Back in New York, Valor and Cleopatra are dining inside of a restaurant inside the famous exclusive hotel called the Continental, which is a safe haven for members of the large crime network in the world, incoming their assassins and henchmen. Valor is one of the founding members of the High Table, which he had created during the Roman Empire. A young man dressed in a red tuxedo with long hair and wearing red sunglasses interrupts Valor and Cleopatra's meal by just sitting down and begins staring at them, and Valor asks the man, "What the fuck do you want?" The man smiles and says, "This must be the lovely Cleopatra that I keep hearing about." Cleopatra asks the man, "Who are you?" Valor says, "This is one of my father's many bastards, son of a nun, Damien Thorne." Damien says, "The famous Cleopatra, the queen of all queens, it's a pleasure to meet you," and then Damien sits down face to face with Valor. Cleopatra is impressed with Damien's presence. Cleopatra says to Damien, "We have met before. I was there when you were born. I knew your mother. I was your protector." Valor says to Cleopatra, "I didn't know this." Cleopatra tells Valor, "This was during one of our many breaks from each other. Your father enlisted me with the task of being his fairy godmother." Damien is stunned by revelation, and Damien looks into Cleopatra and says, "Well, I am forever grateful for your protection." Valor gets impatient and asks Damien, "What the fuck is it that you want, half-breed?" Damien says, "You know you love me, big brother. After all our father's bastards, you love me more." Valor says, "I really cared for your twin sister Carrie. I really want to protect her even though my father's demons wanted her dead. But it wasn't her fault that your mother drove her crazy. She could have been a huge part of the family. I spent years searching for her, and when I finally found her, she had burned down her high school and brought her home on her and her crazy mother. She only dealt with heartache and pain. I could feel all of my siblings' pain and suffering, but hers was the worst. Somehow I still feel Mazakine's pain." Damien says, "Mazakine is the best of us. I didn't know anything about this, Carrie, but anyway, I am here because your mother, Lilith, has reached out to me to tell you that you need to end this feud between you and Sledgehammer is getting out of hand. Half of our allies are dead. Most of the Meridian family are dead. Too many bodies are showing on the news. You need to stop this." Valor says, "I didn't start this fight. Sledgehammer has been killing demons for years and no one has put this fucker in his place. So I am going to show everyone, including the humans, that you don't fuck with the Prince of Darkness. So you relay to my mother that this will end by my sword. It makes no sense to stop this now. All those deaths would be in vain, so I can't stop. I will not fucking stop." Damien says, "I have your back on this, but please brother, ends this soon." Damien kisses Valor and walks away. Valor says to Cleopatra, "I got a lot to ask you about the secrets you keep, but I need to go to Purgatory to see Wade, but when I get back I want to know everything," and Cleopatra says, "You don't need to know. If you do I will tell you," and she drinks her wine and Valor laughs, and Valor gets up and walks away from the table. Damien comes back to table and sits down by Cleopatra and says, "I just got to say I really want to fuck you right now." Cleopatra says, "I feel the same way," and Damien, "I always wanted to." Meanwhile in Purgatory, Wade is running Purgatory with an iron fist with his woman, Jophiel, at his side with her father, God blessing. Also her big brother Samajel has given his blessing as well. Wade has made himself very valuable to God and Samajel. Wade sitting in his office reflecting on his achievements. 3 days ago, Wade and Jophiel are watching the gladiator games type of sports, which is called the re-entry, on the outskirts of the city of Purgatory, where various souls unfinished business, which consist of vampires, werewolves, witches, and humans from different universes, battle for survival, and whoever left standing will be granted back to Earth as way of reincarnation. Whoever loses will die and will restart the process over again, or they can take place in Wade's casino to play various games to either be rewarded to heaven or be sent to hell. But Wade also gives them a third option, to live in Purgatory for eternity, but most of the time people choose re-entry. Wade and Jophiel are very affectionate with each other and has been keeping their relationship a secret. Wade and Jophiel decided to leave the game early. On their way to the casino, Wade and Jophiel makes love inside their armor red limo. An hour later, Wade and Jophiel arrive at the casino. Jophiel kisses Wade and she is summoned to heaven by her father, and Wade walks into the casino and is greeted by all his employees as he walks into his office, and he finds Samajel is sitting in his chair and Mazakine standing behind the door, and she closes it behind Wade. Wade is nervous and Samajel tells Wade to sit. Wade, and don't be nervous. You have created a wonderful empire here in purgatory. Me and my father have never saw eye to eye on anything, but we both see eye to eye on how you made things easy on us. People actually rather try their luck in your casinos than wait in the long lines in front of pearly gates or dealing with their unfinished business or even thinking they have a chance of evading hell, but you made a lot of interesting things happen. Wade starts smiling and begins to say, well, I appreciate that, Samajal, but I wish your son, Valor, would understand that. Samajal says, Valor, let me guess, he wants you to help him kill Sledgehammer, right? Yeah, that's right, says Wade. Samajal says, don't worry about my son, he is a big boy, he should be able to take care of the Sledgehammer without your assistance. Purgatory needs you. This is your city, Wade. You are a made guy. If you need anything, you can talk to Mazakeen. She is your protector. I appreciate what you have done for me and my father. I would love to turn into my beautiful alter ego. And Samajal turns in a woman and says, I could really show you a good time if you want it, Wade. Wade begins to say, I would if I could, but I am very too devoted to your sister Jophiel, and if you didn't know, she is my wife now. Samajal licks her lips and says, well, if you ever change your mind, but do keep up the good work. And Mazakeen is smiling as Samajal walks towards her, and Samajal turns back towards Wade and says, every now and then I like to be a woman and it feels so fucking good. Being a woman is power. Also, Wade, to remember that this is your fucking city. Samajal and Mazakeen leave the door. Wade sits down at his desk and pulls out a bottle of tequila and pours himself a glass and says, yeah, this is my fucking house. Present day. Wade and Santos are walking around the casino floor looking at all the new souls waiting their turn to spin the wheel to either go directly to hell or heaven. Some are very skeptical about playing the game, and Santos has his assistant Lori to persuade the new souls to play the game, and she offers them drinks. Wade congrats Lori on her good work around purgatory, and she has been quite an asset. Wade supposedly be going to meet Jophiel for lunch at the Chowtown restaurant, but goes back to his office for a special gift to give Jophiel when he opens the door, and he finds Valor sitting in his chair. Valor tells him that now he needs his assistance. Wade looks down the hallway thinking he should run away, but Wade shakes off his fear and he walks over to Valor and sits down across from him, and Wade says, I am not assisting you against the Sledgehammer, serving you is not my job, your father has made me a made guy and reassured me that this is my fucking city. You need to get the fuck out of my fucking chair. Valor gets up and kicks the chair back and says, look who gotten their fucking balls back. Valor walks around the desk and Wade sits down at his chair and press a red button from under his desk. Valor shrugged his shoulders and says, I just needed you to give me control of your reapers. I wasn't asking you for the fucking world. Hell, you could have lied to me and I would have been okay with that, but with the way you fucking acting, you actually think that you are in control of this fucking place. The only reason that you are the king of this place is because my father used you against Raphael because of his hatred towards you. You actually rise to the fucking occasion and it's built a wonderful world, but you think you are hot shit. You should have dealt with the Sledgehammer years ago and maybe you wouldn't be in this position that you are in. Wade smiles and says, all this bullshit is really because you are trying so hard to show your father what big boy demon you are. Mazakeen is his favorite even though she isn't his real daughter. Damien has done so much for his father and he is not even a full demon and he has more accomplishments than you are. You are such fucking disappointment to your father. Valor is completely insulted by Wade and Valor breaks the chair and says, you fucking meatbag, I am going to shred you like fucking lettuce. Santos and dozen of Wade's security guards show up behind Valor with angel blades and Valor turns around and sees the angel blades. Valor tells out angel blades, how the fuck did you get angel blades? Valor thinks about it for a minute and says, fucking Jophiel. Wade says to Valor, I am king of fucking purgatory, granted by your grandfather and your father, and Wade pulls out his angel blade sword and says, you have no power here and I don't want to kill you, but I will in self-defense, so why don't you go back to your wife Cleopatra or to second wife Ariel in London? It doesn't matter where you go because you are no longer fucking welcome here in purgatory. Valor looks around the room and says to Wade, well Wade, I always respect you as a soldier, but I also hated the fuck out of you because when I lived on Earth as a role of human being I had lived by a set of rules and I never did the shit that you did. I never killed women or children, but you did. I never raped women, but you did. You tortured women and children in front of an audience. You did more evil things in a lifetime that some demons or vampires would ever do. Which is why my uncle hates you so fucking much, and that's why right fucking now, you are going to fucking die, Wade Manchester. Valor pulls out his red skull head sword and Santos runs up behind Valor and Valor jams his sword into Santos' throat and rips off his head. Song called Pull Up by Dropout King starts playing. Wade's men attack Valor and Valor dodges their attacks. More security guards show up and Lori runs towards Jophiel, who is at Chowtown, and Jophiel says, what's going on? Lori says while shaking, Valor is trying to kill the king. Music is getting louder and Valor is now in the hallway slicing through all the security guards. Wade walks over to Santos' body and Wade looks at his lifeless body and turns his attention towards Valor, who is all covered in the blood of Wade's men. Wade steps into the hallway and brands his angel blade sword. Valor has just killed Wade's last security guard. Purgatory is in chaos and the souls are trying to cheat their way into heaven and Jophiel on her way to save Wade, but she has to stop the souls from cheating and she pulls out her sword and attacks the souls. Valor is standing in front of Wade and says you could have avoided all of this but you had to show your balls off. Now everything you had now will belong to me, now. Wade laughs and says I don't regret what I said to you. If I die, at least I die with a sword in my fucking hand. And Wade charges Valor. Wade knocks Valor and begins slashing up Valor in a rage and Valor is shocked by an amount of force and energy coming from Wade. Valor tries to dodge Wade's attacks but is overwhelmed and Valor is thrown in the middle of the casino. Wade is smiling and charges Valor again. Valor counters Wade and slams Wade through the blackjack table. Wade quickly jumps up and slices Valor across the face and spin kicks him in the head and Valor goes flying towards the spot machine. Wade has blood pouring from his head and he looks at Valor who is running towards him. Valor is attacking Wade with precision and Wade tries to counter Valor's attacks. Wade and Valor clashes their swords and they both look in each eyes and then they quickly discharge and Wade swings his sword at Valor and Valor waits to the last second and Valor knocks Wade's sword out of his hand and Valor's sword cuts the top part of Wade's head. Jophiel sees Wade's half of head falling off and she screams out. Valor grabs Wade's soul and devours it in front of Jophiel who is completely shocked and she screams out what did you do? Valor looks up and sees Jophiel and says he shouldn't insult me and I wouldn't have been obligated to have killed him and taken his son who walks past her and Jophiel walks towards Wade's body and screams out Wade's name. Purgatory is in disarray and almost on fire. Gabriel comes to Purgatory to console his little sister. Gabriel flies her away from Purgatory while the souls are running wild over the place. Chapter 12. The two queens. Valor with his blood all over his suit returns home to Cleopatra who is smoking a cigarette and wearing a black dress with her golden necklace around her neck and she is pissed off and Valor asks what the fuck going on with you? Are you still pissed with me? Cleopatra says your fucking wife is here. Ariel walks out from the balcony wearing a red velvet dress with white hair and looks at Cleopatra with a smile. Cleopatra says you promised me that I would never see this bitch. You promised me, Valor. Valor says I did but she has got to have a good reason to be here. She doesn't like you either. Cleopatra burns Valor in the face with her cigarette and she says she better be fucking gone by the time I get back or I will stake that bitch through her fucking heart. Cleopatra leaves the room. Valor laughs and turns around to Ariel and says hey baby, after all these years. You break the agreement we made together. Why? Ariel says Dracula is back at my place and he is pissed. Valor walks up and kisses Ariel and says if Dracula would have listened to me, he wouldn't have been in that situation to be fucked over by Lamora. I had warned him but he thought he was the big boss man and he was wrong. I knew Lamora's love for Raphael was strong and she lost her son even though he turned her. It didn't change the fact she hated his fucking guts. Then you add the badass Joan of Arc who is now known as Valentina No Mercy, the long-lost daughter of Raphael, would team up just to take him down and kill all his followers and she became the Countess of Transylvania. Ariel smiles and kisses Valor and says I would have done the same thing as well but since I wasn't there he considers me as an ally and he doesn't know that you and me are married plus it helps that we haven't seen each other since the 70s died. Valor smiles and says the 70s was a fucking trip. It was a lot of moving and shaking going on and literally I was known as the man back then going up against legendary guys like Dolomite and John Shaft. The guys was human but man they weren't afraid of shit and they had earned my respect but that's another story for another day. Ariel says Shaft was sure a bad mother and Dolomite was just as bad either and I fucked them both. But like you said we can talk about old times some other time but we got to deal with Vlad. Valor walks over to his bar and pours him and Ariel a glass of wine and Valor says Dracula wants vengeance against those who wronged him so I give you information on Raphael so he can wet his lips with that. Raphael wants him as well and that also will sharpen the focus of Valentina towards him as well and maybe the so-called Blood Ronin as well. So I focus on finishing this rivalry with Sledgehammer because this has been delaying all my plans for the new year. I have to end this. For the sake of my lividhood. Ariel kisses Valor and she whispered in Valor and says I want to fuck you so bad right now, baby. Valor says I want to fuck as well but Cleopatra is coming back and if she finds us fucking she will rip out your fucking heart baby so I take a rain check but you tell Vlad I want to meet with him to discuss the details about Raphael and Valentina. Ariel is disappointed and kisses Valor on the cheek and walks out of the apartment to the elevator and her face shows sadness and then the elevator reaches the lobby and the elevator door opens and Cleopatra is standing there pushing Ariel back in the elevator. Cleopatra lets the elevator door close and stops the elevator and starts talking. Valor has fucked half the world over many centuries and has created a dynasty of bastards and he made many lovers. I was once the true queen until he married you but he did that just to be spiteful and every time I pissed him off he would say your fucking name Ariel how dare he takes another queen. I am supposed to be the only one. I have deluded myself thinking I was but I constantly reminding by others of your many business around the fucking world which our mother-in-law Lilith likes to throw in my fucking face every fucking chance she gets. So after a few decades of this shit I made Valor promised me to keep you and me separate and not to mention you at all and everyone was on fucking board with that and what the fuck did you do after 10 decades since the last fucking time I saw you? You show up on my fucking doorstep. Ariel cuts off Cleopatra and gets in her face and says, first off all it was very important that I see him tonight due to Dracula showing up on my fucking doorstep which you know that if you ask me but you chose to get fucking mad or also that Dracula has bad intentions against our husband for letting him get buried alive in a fucking wall by Lamora and Raphael's daughter. So yeah I show up on your doorstep to warn our husband. Valor is the prince of fucking darkness and yes he asked me many moons ago for me to be his wife and I fucked accept it because I also fucking love him like you do. You have no idea how badly Dracula treated me after Raphael killed my sister's wives. You have no idea the hell I endure and Valor saved me from that and I saved Valor from that well that Raphael threw him down. I fixed him back to good health where otherwise Dracula left him to die. You always had ill will towards me but I never towards you. I wanted you to be my sister. I still want you to be my sister, Cleopatra. Cleopatra smiles and starts rubbing her face and says, it's nice to have this nice chat and I understand why you came all this way from London to warn him but the only real reason that you are leaving this elevator alive is that you didn't fuck our husband in my home because that would have totally disrespectful and I would have definitely fucked you up. I never wanted to share my title as queen never. You are not my fucking sister. My sisters are dead. Been dead for many centuries so you can go fuck yourself with that. Next time fucking call collect bitch. Cleopatra hits the elevator button and the door opens. Ariel walks past Cleopatra and is standing in the hotel lobby and turns around and says if my prince wanted to fuck. Baby we would fucked up your perfect sheets on your bed and you probably would have joined us. Regine told me how freaky you get when she used to bite down on your wet juicy pussy and you used to gush in her mouth. Ariel smiles and sees that Cleopatra is getting hot but Cleopatra says, you see I loved Regine she knew her place but you I fucking loathe. You took the only thing that matters to me. And that being the only fucking princess of darkness to Antony Valor but you ruined that so I will never fucking be okay with that. The elevator door closes. Chapter 13, the meeting 3 days later Friday 8:15 p.m. Dalton and Raphael arrive in San Francisco and they meet Mia Cameron and Rachel at Valiant Mansion. They get all the formality out the way. Charlie and Valentina come in the room holding hands and Valentina sees Raphael for the first time and they automatically connect and she introduces Charlie to Raphael and she tells him he is the new Blood Ronin and Valentina is shocked and Dalton couldn't believe he was alive. They sit down to enjoy a wonderful meal together and conversations but Raphael and Valentina have a father and daughter bonding time. They walked in the Valiant Gardens. Meanwhile, Mia is sitting in front of the fireplace with Rachel while Dalton, Charlie, and Cameron are strategizing on how to take down Valor while on the balcony. Charlie gets called out of the room by Valentina's butler. Asher says phone call, Master Brewster. Charlie grabs the phone it's Jonathan who is hiding in the morgue. Rick Shane, Lily, and a gang of armed worshippers are looking for him. Charlie says he is on the way everything seems to be going well between all of them. Joanne's Raphael's wife is live on TV reporting the eruption of Mount Wilshire which had its first eruption 2 years ago. Raphael and Valentina walk into where the TV is and Raphael points out Valentina that his wife and all of a sudden Joanne's heart is ripped out live on television and it's Dracula calling out Raphael and Valentina for showdown in the middle of the eruption of Los Angeles at the football team Shark Stadium and Dracula's army of vampires are also attacking the residents of Los Angeles during this event. Valor shows himself on camera calling the Sledgehammer and says Sledgehammer come out play. Sledgehammer come out to play. Miming the warriors come out to play chant Cleopatra is smiling in the background. Raphael is full of sadness and turns into anger and smashes the TV and starts crying. Cameron, Dalton, Rachel, Mia, and finally comes into the room and Cameron walks up to Raphael and says Raphael I am sorry for your wife but I believe now it's time for you to finally take that fucker out. Cameron stands up and says it's time to get ready. Charlie comes into the room and says they found Jonathan. Dalton goes into a room and opens up his duffel bag and he pulls out his tactical FBI vest, M4 assault rifle, dual automatic pistol, his army knife and a custom-made Desert Eagle with laser sight and Dalton puts on sunglasses. 2 days earlier Valor and Cleopatra arrive in a black limo in front of the legendary hotel in downtown Los Angeles called Hotel Cortez. Ariel had set up a meeting between Dracula and Valor. Ariel knew Cleopatra would be with him so she has the owner of the Hotel Cortez, Countess Elizabeth Johnson to be the referee between the both of them. The Countess greets Valor and Cleopatra and she says it's been a while since we had last seen each other and Cleopatra suggested they do something later. Countess introduces her new lover Donovan to them and Cleopatra asked what happened to Romana, her former lover and Countess says we grew apart. Donovan is leading Valor to the kitchen where Dracula, who is dressed in a red Armani suit with a cape standing and Valor goes to him and he sits down. Valor says I don't need a referee so Countess I would like to be alone with my protege and Countess, Cleopatra. Donovan goes into the hallway. Dracula sits down and now they sitting facing each other. Okay, Dracula, you've been wanting to talk. Valor says, here you go, express yourself. Dracula begins, Antony, I've thought long and hard about what I was going to say to you. Right now, I couldn't even think of the words that I was going to say. The only thing on my mind is vengeance. Vengeance against the ones who wronged me. Vengeance against the ones who betrayed me. Yes, I know that I betrayed you, left you to die in the bottom of that well. How did you survive that well? How did you survive that attack that Raphael did to you? But I know how. Had to be Ariel. The only one that was there. The only one who could have flew down that well to save you. You might have your followers, too. I bet I had people. People who were devoted to me. My forsaken ones. My creation. They are still around. And they told me about you. And Ariel became husband and wife. Doesn't that make Cleopatra upset? That you took on another queen? That you betrayed her trust? By marrying someone else and making it complicated for her as the queen? Doesn't that make her upset? You see, I've been locked away a long time, but even though I was locked away, I could hear everything in that house, in that castle, with Lamora. I had a little room to breathe, a little room to move around. I heard everything. Lamora would come down there and she could talk to me. She would outside the walls, talk to me through the walls, telling me all her secrets and all her beginnings. To you, you know, giving information to me. Yes, I was a prisoner. But also still very much into me. Very much creation. But over the years, over the centuries, she was turning more and more and more just like I was. She couldn't stop herself. She gave in to the thirst. She became just as I was. But she still hated me. For what happened to her son? What happened to our marriage? What happened to her? She was a beautiful disaster. She was not only the queen of the sea, because the king of the sea was presumed dead. Over the centuries, they forget all about him, the king of the sea, Raphael. Valentina, the daughter of the Sledgehammer, the daughter of Mr. Violence. She was thinking that she was the special one. Joan of Arc tell me things about her hatred towards me, about what I did to her and her long-lost brother that she never met. She met amongst the pirates. She played the long game. You got to expect that she played the long game. She waited. That was credited to my familiar. Let me drink from her. The familiars don't die. She played the game. She played a dangerous game. She played exactly the game that you're supposed to play when you're around royalty. She made herself a good familiar. High amongst the wolves. I thought she was a sheep, she was a wolf. She tasted just like her father. I should have known something. Well, that is old news, and I want Raphael, and I want his daughter too. I want them both to suffer. I want to kill them. That's what I want, Antony, and I know. I know, my Prince of Darkness, I know that I wronged you. I know that I stepped onto your toes, and I know that you're in charge of everything. I know that. So I forgive you. I forgive you for everything you did to me. Valor laughs and says you forgive me. You thinking that I give a fuck about all the old shit? There is so much shit that happened since then. The only thing I was really mad about was leading a life of poverty, because I got to like being on the 7 seas, hanging around fucking every fucking hot piece of pussy that was coming my way. Believe me. That shit was brand fucking new. You know what I mean? Brand spanking new. Traveling the seas, creating dynasties, creating the world, and I was on a ride, brother. I had my own fucking ship. People looked at me, asked me questions. I was humbled. I was a fucking legend. People looked at me as a human. Yes, I am a demon. Demon, yes. I am a demon. I am a creature of evil. But I felt something different. I felt being a little bit of human. Being around people. Learning to love. Learning to understand things. Like I did before, back in the Roman Empire times. I learned a lot of shit. And I enjoyed very minute of it. And demons don't get to enjoy a lot of things without this fucking from me. You took away the freedom. Because I knew every time I think about humanity a little bit more, you would stir me away. Stir me away. One would make me forget that I am a demon. I created your fucking ass. And you thought that you could teach me things that I didn't fucking know? If it wasn't for me, Dracula, you would be in fucking hell right now. Sucking on my father's dick. Right now. I gave you life, I'm like your fucking daddy. I'm your daddy. All the blood I gave you to make you what you are. I am your fucking daddy. And you chose to talk to me that way? And I warned you about Lamora, I warned you that people loved him, they're king of the sea. But that's all old shit. Now I am focused on this new shit where you finally get your revenge against Raphael and Valentina. I got to finally put the fucking sledgehammer in the ground. So Vladimir, do you want your revenge against Raphael and Valentina, or do you want to settle old scores with me? And if you want that, then we can settle up right fucking now, but if you choose that, you fucking die instantly, because there is no fucking way you taking me out of the fucking ball game. If it wasn't for my blood, you would have been fucking dead a long time ago. So Vladimir, what is it going to be? Dracula looks at Valor, who is looking very intense, and he plays out the scenario of fighting Valor, and he visualizes the outcome, and he dies 10 different ways, and Dracula says, I lay my old scores against you down, my prince. What are your plans? Valor smiles and pours himself a glass of wine, and he calls out to the hallway telling everyone to come back in. Cleopatra, Countess, Donovan, and Romulus come back to the cafeteria. Cleopatra sits down by Valor. Ariel walks into the cafeteria wearing a full red leather outfit, wearing sunglasses, and Cleopatra is pissed off. Cleopatra quickly stands up and is facing Ariel, and Valor says to Cleopatra to sit down and says it's all hands on deck. Ariel kisses Countess and stands on the left side of Valor and says Dracula has already established a small town just like what your protege Kurt Barlow did in Jerusalem's lot in the late 70s, and he did well, but we are going to have a fucking purpose. Ariel also says, did you know that Mount Wilshire is brewing again and the tar pits are on fire again? Valor says, well, I know where we are going to have this showdown. Cleopatra says, I can wait to eat Mia's fucking heart. Valor says you should be focused on Rachel. Mia is just a fucking witch. Ariel and Lily can deal with her as Valor continues talking. Rick Shane with Lily's arms around him are riding through downtown Los Angeles, and they stop to look at the smoking tire pits, and they continue to ride to the Hotel Cortez. Rick Shane will take care of Dalton and the Blood Ronin, if not I kill everyone my damn self. Dracula asks what will light this fuse? Raphael's wife Joanne is a reporter for NBC, and she was in Baghdad covering the incident over there. Now she is here in Los Angeles covering Mount Wilshire, so when finally blows will be an opportunity to see what light the fuse by killing her live on television. Rick Shane and Lily walk and say to Valor, sorry we were late, we just found information on the whereabouts of Jonathan. Valor says this rivalry will come to its end. But I have a lot of plans for the future of this gathering in the year 2000. 2000 will be our year to shine, to clean up and re-establish our position in this world, but first we got to take care of these fuckers. The next day, Mount Wilshire erupts. Dracula and Ariel slowly take over the small town of New Haven by turning half of the town into vampires while the other half are fighting back or leaving town. Ariel has enlisted the help of a familiar named Drake Draven, the long-lost older brother of the dead rock star Eric Draven, who she recruited years ago. Drake has a mass following due to him being a famous movie star, and he feeds his vampire masters as fans. Even though Ariel is working with Dracula, she has no loyalty to him at all, only to Valor. Chapter 14, Showdown at Cedar Sinai. Sledgehammer and company are in a helicopter, but Charlie and Valentina get dropped off at Cedar Sinai Hospital to save Jonathan. Charlie tells Sledgehammer, Dalton, and Raphael that he will meet up with them. Charlie puts on his Blood Ronin suit and holds hands with Valentina as they jump out the helicopter on the roof of the hospital, and they run downstairs, and Charlie pulls out his shotgun, and as they run into a hallway they see a few armed worshippers holding the hospital staff hostage to find Jonathan. Worshippers are armed to the teeth, and part of the hospital is being evacuated due to a large wave of lava slowly making its way towards the building. Jonathan is armed with a pistol, but Rick Shane aka Nightmare is stalking him. Blood Ronin attacks the armed worshippers, and he is blasting his shotgun, and body parts are being blown everywhere. Lily sees Valentina with her knife slicing through the worshippers, and Lily spears Valentina away from the remaining worshippers, and Lily tells them to kill the Blood Ronin, and this bitch is hers. Cobra, Rock Mix, starts playing by Megan Thee Stallion and Spirit Box. You think you can beat me, little girl? I have taken a shit that is bigger than you, says Valentina. Lily smiles and she turns into a giant grizzly, and Valentina says what the fuck. Lily swipes her giant paw at Valentina, and Valentina tries to dodge her attacks, and music is getting loud, and Lily knocks Valentina into the elevator, and Lily pounces on Valentina and sticks her claws into her chest, and the elevator is rocking due to the weight. Valentina starts to slice Lily with her knives. Lily is slamming Valentina to the elevator doors. Valentina is bleeding out of her head. The elevator free falls due to the weight of Lily's grisly weight. Valentina is attacking Lily with precision with her knives, and Valentina stabs Lily in her jawline, and knife breaks off, and Lily knocks Valentina right through the doors of the elevator, and Valentina quickly grabs the elevator wires, and Lily, who's still inside the elevator, crashes to the bottom and now is unconscious. Valentina climbs up the elevator wires. Meanwhile, Nightmare has found Jonathan, and Jonathan opens fire on Nightmare, and the bullets are worthless, and Nightmare floats towards Nightmare and quickly tosses him through a glass window in the middle of the hospital, and the camera pans out the window showing a large wave of lava coming towards the hospital. Nightmare pulls out a large amount of barbed wire from his body and says to Jonathan, I am going to skin you alive, weed man, and send your soul to hell where you belong. As Nightmare walks towards him, The Blood Ronin soaked with the blood of the worshippers and branding his twin red katanas appears behind him and says, Rick Shane. I have a score to settle with you, motherfucker. Nightmare turns around and says, I don't know you, Blood Ronin. This is between me and the weed man. I kill him first. Then you can die. Nightmare turns back to Jonathan. The Blood Ronin takes off his mask and says, you killed all my friends and now you are trying to kill the only ones I have left. You pussy-assed motherfucker. Nightmare turns back to the Blood Ronin and says, Charlie, so you are the Blood Ronin. Well, in the first place I never wanted to kill you but you was so persistent to save your fucking friends who treated me like shit like your boy here. Lily and I had it all planned out but we both agreed that you wasn't to be touched because of the niceness you showed us both but after I thought Lily betrayed me I didn't really give a fuck. But I realized now you should have been the first person to die so the sledgehammer wouldn't have had time to save you. Nightmare swipes Jonathan with the barbed wire in the face and Nightmare quickly attacks the Blood Ronin. The Blood Ronin says I've been wanting to kill you for a long fucking time that my dick is hard. Erase My Scars by Evans Blue starts playing loudly. Valentina is coming up the floor and she looks out the window and sees the lava destroying everything in its path and she sees Jonathan grabs him and takes him away from the fighting and puts him in a bus with the rest of the evacuated patients and doctors and they drive away. The lava is about to come through the hospital. Valentina looks at the roof and sees a helicopter and she runs back inside. Nightmare and the Blood Ronin are fighting like hell. The music's getting louder and the building is getting engulfed in flames. Nightmare shoots barbed wire out from his arms towards the Blood Ronin and he uses his katana as a shield and the barbed wire wraps the katana and Nightmare pulls into the katana towards him and the Blood Ronin decided to hold on to the katana wrapped barbed wire and quickly runs at Nightmare and begins to strangle Nightmare with the barbed wire katana. The windows are busting out due to the heat of the lava. Valentina is on the roof and she takes control of the helicopter and she says to herself, come on baby. Nightmare tosses the Blood Ronin to the floor. The Blood Ronin rushes back to Nightmare with a fury of slashes and Nightmare is getting weaker and Nightmare sees the lava approaches and the Blood Ronin sees the lava in his eyes and the Blood Ronin says I sentenced you to hell. Nightmare says you are going with me, Charlie. Nightmare slowly attracted his barbed wire to wrap the Blood Ronin up to toss both of them in the lava but the Blood Ronin uses his katana quickly and cuts off Nightmare's right arms and headbutt him and tosses him in the lava. Nightmare dissolves in the lava and Charlie runs towards the stairway to the roof and he passed a bloody Lily in the hallway and Charlie looks at her but decides to leave her be and goes to the roof and jumps on the helicopter and Valentina says you took your fucking time. Lily is weak but she manages to turn herself into a hawk and flies away from the hospital as it becomes engulfed in flames. Valentina and Charlie fly towards Sharks football stadium. Chapter 15, Extreme Violence. 45 minutes earlier the entire outside of the stadium is surrounded by flowing lava. The city is fighting the volcano together. Now the helicopter shows up at the stadium. Sledgehammer, Ms. Sledgehammer, Mia, Mr. Violence, and Dalton, who was flying the helicopter, jumped out onto the field. Valor is looking on the field from the owner's box. Dracula and his vampires fly down to confront them in the front and Cleopatra shows up behind them with an army of hungry ugly demons with glowing green eyes. Ariel leads a group of witches to the field. Valor says on the loudspeaker. Let the Violence Begin song called Can You See Me in the Dark by Hailstrom and I Prevail starts playing. Cameron looks at Rachel then Mia Dalton and lastly Raphael and Raphael says let's show these motherfuckers who the fuck we really are. Cameron retracted his sledgehammer and says let's get fucking violent. Dracula's vampires start flying at them and Sledgehammer is leading the charge and flies the vampires swinging his sledgehammer bashing the hell out of the vampires in his path. Drake Draven and his army starts to attack Mia, Rachel, and Dalton from behind and Dalton armed with M4 assault rifle and starts to mow down Drake's army. Raphael and Sledgehammer are further down the football field fighting Dracula's vampires together not realizing they are separate from the rest of the group. Mia is using her powers against the witches and Mia proves that she is the powerful of all of them until she is attacked by Cleopatra who strikes her with a powerful blow and Cleopatra grabs Mia by the throat and chokeslams her to the ground and Rachel is surrounded by Drake's remaining men and women and Rachel is fighting them with her hatchet slices them up real good. The injured witches begins to attack Rachel with their magic but Rachel connects with her telepathy and makes the coven of witches explode into a pool of blood on the field. Some of Dracula's vampires are slowly surrounding Dalton while is shooting at Drake's army and Drake sees Dalton gunning down his army and turns his attention towards him and smiles as the vampires close in on Dalton and Dalton drops his M4 assault rifle and pulls out dual pistols that contains explosive rounds and quickly shoots at the vampires and they explodes into pieces. Dalton and Drake see each other. They run at each other. Rachel has just finished killing Drake's army and she sees Cleopatra beating up Mia and Rachel floats towards Cleopatra and knocks Cleopatra away from Mia. Rachel says to Cleopatra pick on someone on your own level bitch. Rachel extends her hand to Mia and says let beat this bitch ass. Ariel flies down out of nowhere, knocking Mia and Rachel down, and Ariel lands next to Cleopatra and says to Cleopatra, "You might not like me, but we are in this together." Cleopatra smiles and blows a kiss at Rachel and says, "Long live the queens." The Sledgehammer sees Dracula waiting at the entrance of the away part of the stadium, and he tells Raphael, "Dracula is waiting on you, go get that motherfucker. I finished up here, then I take care of Valor." Raphael pulls out his sword and he takes off a vampire's head and he walks towards the away field, and he and Dracula are staring at each other. Dalton is faster and stronger than Drake. The fight lasted 30 seconds. Dalton pistol whips Drake to death and turns around and he sees Mia fighting Ariel. Rachel tackles Cleopatra to the ground, Sledgehammer smashing the hell out of the remaining vampires. Dalton sees Valor looking on through the owner box. Dalton decides to go after Valor himself. Dalton disappears inside the stadium and Sledgehammer sees Dalton go into the building. Sledgehammer tries to fly towards the owner box where Valor is looking on, but Sledgehammer is quickly attacked by Romulus, who attacks through the air with a vicious spear and knocks him through a row of stadium seats. Ariel draws her fangs and flies towards Mia, and Mia dodged her attacks and pulls out a hunting knife and attempts to stab Ariel in the chest, and Ariel performs an MMA takedown maneuver on Mia and slams her to the ground. Dracula smiles and says, "I've been dreaming of this moment for centuries. I should have listened to Valor back then. I should have made a truce with you, King of the Sea, but we are exactly where we need to be." Raphael walks closer to Dracula and says, "Killing you will be my greatest achievement." Dracula draws his broadsword and Raphael brands his sword, and they clash and Dracula's eyes glows red and shows his fangs, and Dracula is very powerful in this moment and fighting with a ferocious nature. Cleopatra calls out in an ancient language and unleashes the Deadites, who have possessed the fallen victims who have perished from destruction of the volcano, and they are walking around the lava surrounding the stadium, and Cleopatra commands them to attack Mia and Rachel. Mia gets off the ground and grabs her knife, and Rachel grabs her hatchets and looks at Mia, and they starts to attack the Deadites, and Ariel grabs Mia by the back of her throat, and Ariel says, "I wonder how sweet you taste, you bad little witch," and she tries to bite Mia, but Mia jams the knife into Ariel's mouth, and Rachel tosses one hatchet to Mia, and Mia slices Ariel's head clean off her body and quickly starts fighting with the Deadites. Cleopatra is completely surprised by the death of Ariel, and Rachel sprints towards Cleopatra swinging her hatchet at her, and Cleopatra pulls out a dagger and is trying to fight Rachel. Valor is quickly saddened by the death of Ariel and is now worried about Cleopatra, and he decides to go out to the field to save Cleopatra, but when he turns around, Dalton is standing behind him with his knife out, and he says, "Antony, Valor, it's time for you to face justice." Dalton has all of Valor's former victims warning him on how dangerous he is. Valor smiles and is shocked that Dalton has come to challenge him, and Valor says, "You actually think you got a fucking chance against me? You are a fucking meatbag just like Jonathan or Charlie fucking Brewster, and I beat them all, including your fucking Sledgehammer. So let's see how fucking good you really are." Dalton says, "I am Special Agent Dalton fucking Wilcox. I am taking you out of the fucking ball game." Dalton runs at Valor. Song called "Blow Me Away" by Breaking Benjamin starts playing. Sledgehammer gets up and starts attacking Romulus with his sledgehammer. Romulus rips off the sledgehammer out of his hand and starts beating the sledgehammer with it, and Sledgehammer retracted a piece of a sword in the place of the broken sledgehammer and slices Romulus right across his face. Dracula flies in the air with a sword drawn at Raphael, and Raphael dodges Dracula and performs a spin kick to his body and jams his sword in Dracula's ribs. Dracula knocks Raphael back with the butt of his sword, and Dracula breaks off the handle of sword and tosses to the ground and pulls out the broken blade, and now Dracula holding two blades at Raphael and says, "I have waited so long for this, and for an encore I will find your daughter and I will make her my bride." Dracula is about to slice Raphael in half, and at a quick moment Dracula notices that Raphael is smiling, and Raphael pulls out a large combat knife and jams it right into Dracula's heart, and Dracula drops the blades, and Raphael looks into Dracula's eyes and says, "You know why they called me Mr. Violence? It's because no one has ever exacted a satisfying punishment like I fucking do." Raphael puts up Dracula's sword and jams it into his spine. Raphael puts his hands into Dracula's spine and pulls out Dracula's head through his spine and kicks his head through the goal post. Raphael says, "And that's the fucking ballgame." Cleopatra and Rachel are in one hell of a fight. They are both tired. Cleopatra is trying to run away from Rachel, who is chasing her inside the building. Cleopatra is trying to reach her husband. Valor is performing a boxing combination on Dalton, and Dalton is fueled by rage and is taking all of Valor's attacks, and Dalton is cutting up Valor, making him bleed, and Valor sees his own blood. Valor is completely enraged and goes after Dalton with a fury of offenses. Romulus runs at Sledgehammer with all his might, and Sledgehammer dodges the attack, and Romulus spears himself through the concession stand, and he has injured himself, and Sledgehammer comes up from behind and jams his blade into the back of Romulus. Romulus dies instantly. Sledgehammer is standing tall, and he turns around and he sees Raphael and nods to him. Raphael and Sledgehammer quickly look to Valor, who is fighting Dalton. Raphael quickly runs up to the owner's box. Sledgehammer goes into the building to get to Valor from the other side. Mia grabs an assault rifle and starts running into the building. A helicopter arrived with Damien Thorne dressed in a black and red tactical suit and wearing sunglasses along with an army of ghouls dressed in camouflage gear and armed with military-grade weaponry. Dalton is fighting like hell but Valor is so much more powerful than him. Dalton goes for a fatal blow with his knife towards Valor and Valor blocks it and takes Dalton's knife and jams it into Dalton's stomach and Valor laughs and says Raphael done taught you well but not well enough. Valor sees Raphael runs towards the owner box and Valor quickly throws Dalton through the owner box window towards Raphael and Raphael catches him and they both fall down the stairs. Valor is laughing until he realizes that Sledgehammer is standing behind him and says, "Why does everyone keep sneaking up on me?" Valor turns around and sees Sledgehammer and Sledgehammer looks into Valor's eyes and says it's time to die, Valor, and he pulls out Julian's sword and Valor says I gave Julian that sword when he was just a teenager and Julian was my son and that's the reason that you are going to die here tonight. I understand that you fought to protect your people but I could forget his death for you defeating him battle but the fact you took pleasure and in it and bragged that you roasted him like a Thanksgiving turkey then for that Cameron Ford, I am going to ingest your fucking soul. Valor turns into his demonic self with a sword with a skull on it and Sledgehammer says you are one ugly motherfucker. Cleopatra is hiding in the dark and jumps Rachel. Damien and a few of his men goes into the building and Dalton is unconscious from the blood loss and a group of ghouls opens fire on Raphael and Raphael grabs Dalton's Desert Eagle out of his holster. Mia begins to open fire on the group coming towards her. Cleopatra breaks emergency fire glass and grabs the fire axe and Cleopatra becomes demonic and she is swinging the fire axe at Rachel is blocking the attacks with her hatchet. The song Sober by Tool starting playing. Valor and Sledgehammer are clashing swords in the Shark's locker room and destroying it. Sledgehammer flies at Valor and knocks him into a locker. Raphael is attacking a group of ghouls at close range with Dalton's Desert Eagle while Mia is using her magic to heal Dalton to get him back into the fight. Rachel connects to Cleopatra's head with the hatchet and knocks the fire axe out of her hand with a spin kick and Rachel grabs Cleopatra by the throat and slams her to the floor. Damien and his group of men sees Rachel and opens fire on her and getting Cleopatra to get away from Rachel. Rachel uses her telepathy to kill the ghouls and Damien sees her power and decides to fall back away from her range. Rachel turns her attention back to Cleopatra and chases after her. 30 more ghouls and vampires show up from another helicopter and Dalton wakes up. Raphael tosses his Desert Eagle back to Dalton and Raphael grabs an assault rifle and Mia trying to conserve the little energy she has left to fight off the rest of ghouls and vampires. Valor and Sledgehammer are fighting all over the stadium but now Valor has slices through Sledgehammer's armor at same time Sledgehammer stabs Valor through his ribcage with his sword and Valor quickly breaks the blade off and jams the broken blade into Sledgehammer's thigh and twisted it. Sledgehammer starts to pummel Valor in the face. Valor drops his sword and Valor counters his last punch and tosses him to the floor and pounces on top him and Valor grows claws and rips off Sledgehammer's armor and scratches his chest and Sledgehammer punches Valor and knocks him off top of him. Valor goes for his sword and Sledgehammer gets up and tries to fly towards Valor but he doesn't have the energy so he decided to run at Valor and spears him through a concrete wall. Mia, Raphael, and Dalton are in a massive shootout and they are running out of bullets and are outnumbered. Raphael says to Mia and Dalton you two leave now I will take care of these fuckers. Dalton say I can't let you do that, Jimmy. Raphael with tears in his eyes I had promised your mom that I would never let anything happen to you, kid. That's a promise I intend to keep. Now get the fuck out of here. Mia looks at Raphael and says I guess you aren't immortal anymore and Raphael says I've been here too long but I don't regret it one fucking bit. Dalton hands Raphael his Desert Eagle with a full clip and says thanks Jimmy. Raphael smiles and comes out of the bleachers but before he could start shooting. Another helicopter shows up. Valor rises out of the rubble back to his human form and Valor sees Cleopatra running towards him but Rachel grabs her from behind and Valor starts walking towards Rachel. Sledgehammer jumps out of destroyed concrete and jumps Valor from behind and slams Valor to a wall and Valor quickly turns around grabs Sledgehammer by his right arm and Valor breaks it. Rachel grabs Cleopatra by the throat with her hatchet and is facing towards Valor and Rachel screams out let him go. Valor laughs and says well Rachel it's nice to finally meet you but you are so wrong to think you got me disadvantaged because you have my wife Cleopatra under your blade. If you knew my wife you would know this won't work. Cleopatra says I will always love you my prince and Cleopatra takes her dagger and stabs Rachel in the leg and Rachel screams out and Rachel cuts off Cleopatra's head. Valor has tears in his eyes and starts slamming Sledgehammer's head to the wall. Sledgehammer falls unconscious. Valor runs at Rachel and Rachel throws her hatchet at Valor and he dodges it and Rachel readies herself to take on Valor. Rachel pulls Cleopatra's dagger out her leg as Valor tries to attack her but Rachel stabs Valor in his hand with the dagger and Valor slaps Rachel and Rachel quickly attacks Valor with a fury of kicks. One kick breaks Valor's ribs and the other kick to his leg sweep him to the floor. Mia, Dalton, and Raphael are looking at the arrival of the new helicopter blasting the song You Give Love a Bad Name by John Bon Jovi, and jumps out of the helicopter is Charlie fucking Brewster the Blood Ronin with his mask on with his dual red katanas in his hands, and he falls on top of army of ghouls and vampires slicing through them like a hot knife through butter. Valentina lands the helicopter and, armed with her knives, joins the Blood Ronin in dispatching the ghouls and vampires. Body parts are flying everywhere as Mia, Dalton, and Raphael are looking at the carnage. Charlie and Valentina are dancing to the music as the kill of the remaining threat, and Damien comes out the shadows and he sees his army completely in pieces, and he recognized Valentina and he says to himself, God damn it, not this bitch again. Damien disappears back into the stadium. The music stops and Raphael, Mia, and Dalton walks out of the stands, and Raphael says, well, about time you showed up. Rachel tries to use her telepathy on Valor to kill him like she did the others, and Valor feels her telepathy and says, you think you can kill me with something that we the demons create ourselves? Valor uses her own telepathy against her by making her cut herself with Cleopatra's dagger and now jams the dagger deep in her arm. Sledgehammer wakes up and Valor controls her through telepathy, and before he tells her to split her throat. Sledgehammer calls out Valor and Valor turns around and says, you still with us, Cameron Ford? Sledgehammer spits out blood and says, I am not dead yet, bitch. Rachel drops to her knees as Sledgehammer runs at Valor with a fury of kicks and punches him with his left hand, and Valor targets Sledgehammer broken arm and Sledgehammer falls to his knees and Rachel sees her hatchet and grabs it. Then she runs at Valor and Valor quickly knocks the wind out of her and grabs her by throat, and he also grabs Sledgehammer by the throat, and Valor says to their faces, I have been fighting countless wars for centuries. You are beneath me. I am the Prince of Darkness. You fucked with the wrong fucking dynasty and I am going to smash your fucking brains together and ingest your souls. Valor rises them in the air about to smash their heads together, and Valor interrupted by the Blood Ronin, who is getting a red Gatorade out of the vending machine and starts drinking and making unnecessary noises with Gatorade in his mouth. Valor is looking with a confused look and says to the Blood Ronin, what the fuck? The Blood Ronin says, you got my family in your hands, but you should really let them go. Antony, can I call Antony? Because if you don't let them go, then my girlfriend Valentina over there is going to blow you in half. Valor looks to the left of him and sees Valentina holding a jackhammer shotgun. The Blood Ronin says, so are you going to let them go? Or you're going to be split in half? Valor smiles and says, what is in for me besides not being blown in half? Blood Ronin. The Blood Ronin throws the Gatorade bottle in the trash and says, well, you and me will go toe to toe again to see who is the better killer. Valor drops Sledgehammer and Rachel and turns around facing the Blood Ronin. Valentina grabs Sledgehammer and Rachel and heads out of the area. The Blood Ronin and Valor are staring at each other, and Valor says, I killed many Blood Ronin in the past. They made Blood Ronin especially for killing demons, but I never left one alive, so how could we have fought before? Blood Ronin takes off his mask and Valor is shocked and says, Charlie Brewster, you are the fucking Blood Ronin. The Blood Ronin says, you have caused so many deaths that was completely unnecessary, all because you wanted vengeance for a fucking warlock that Sledgehammer killed. Valor says, that wasn't just a fucking warlock, that warlock was my son, and I will avenge him, my wives and my big sister Mazakine. Oh yes, Charlie. I will avenge all of them. Charlie laughs and says, well, Antony, Valor, look to me to take your vengeance on right here, right fucking now. This war ends now. He pulls out his red katanas and he looks at Valor and says, well, this is not fair, you don't have a sword. You know what, Antony, how about you take both of my katanas? And Charlie tosses both his katanas to Valor, and Valor says, you must really want to die. Or are you just fucking stupid? Charlie puts on his Blood Ronin mask and yells out, one of us will die tonight, Antony, Valor, but it won't fucking be me. A mashup song of Five Finger Death Punch, the Bleeding mashup with Marvin Gaye, Let It Get On, Let Get It On, as the vocal to the instrumental version of The Bleeding starts playing. The Blood Ronin smiles and says, let fucking bleed. Valor is completely suspicious as hell of Blood Ronin as he runs at the Blood Ronin, swings the katanas at him. The Blood Ronin dodges his attacks and counter with a heavy blows to his face and a roundhouse kick to his already damaged ribs. Valor tries to take off Valor's head, but the Blood Ronin is too quick for that. The Blood Ronin is mimicking the fighting stance of the legendary Bruce Lee while dodging Valor's attacks. Valor turns into his demonic form and the Blood Ronin is not phased. Valor charges at the Blood Ronin with the katanas, and the Blood Ronin kicks one of the katanas out of Valor's hands and a roundhouse kick to his head, and Valor goes down and drops the other katana. Valor grows claws and fangs and is even more demonic with anger. The Blood Ronin looks at his red katanas on the floor and looks at Valor and smiles and says, I don't need no weapon to kill you. I am the fucking weapon. Valor and the Blood Ronin runs at each other. The music get louder. The Blood Ronin unleash a variety of martial arts. The Blood Ronin complete a combination of roundhouse kicks on Valor and they send Valor across the room. Valor runs back to the Blood Ronin, scratching him up with his claws. The music louder as the Blood Ronin is bleeding all over the place from Valor's slices. The Blood Ronin performs a combination of Chinese boxing techniques which completely throws Valor off balance and breaks Valor's nose and cuts Valor's right eye. Valor sees Rachel's hatchet and quickly grabs it and begins hitting the Blood Ronin with the back end of it into his face. Valor starts gaining momentum and knocks back the Blood Ronin with the back of hatchet. Valor starts a combination of hits with the back of the hatchet and a deadly spin kick that send the Blood Ronin flying across the room. Then Valor quickly turns the hatchet around and throws it at the Blood Ronin, and the Blood Ronin sees it and performed a roundhouse kick on the hatchet, and it catches Valor in his chest. The Blood Ronin grabs one of the red katanas and quickly spears Valor to the wall with the red katana through his ribcage and through a Sharks football poster of legendary QB Cap Rooney. Valor is bleeding badly and says, "I haven't bled this bad in centuries," and begins to cough up blood. The Blood Ronin sees Cleopatra's dagger and grabs it and walks up to Valor and says, "These are just wounds for a demon like you. You have caused so much death, Valor, and now it's time for you to go back to hell." And the Blood Ronin jams the dagger inside his stomach. Valor says softly to himself, "I've been alive for centuries, Blood Ronin. I have lived. I have love and I fuck a lot of people and I also cause a lot of fucking mayhem and I enjoy every fucking moment. So goddamn go ahead and end my fucking story, Mr. Charlie fucking Brewster. I ain't going to fucking beg. You hear me, you red motherfucker, I ain't fucking begging." The Blood Ronin goes for his other katana, and the Blood Ronin says, "In the words of my grandfather Tom Brewster, the previous owner of the Sunnydale Ranch in Meadowland, Texas, would say to someone like you in a time like this, you might have thought that you had right in the beginning to exact vengeance against my family because of what we did to yours. Every action we took from you, we gave back to you more. And right now you are one that has a gun point in your direction. You have no other moves but to get right with God because you will be seeing him real soon." As the Blood Ronin goes to take Valor's head off, Damien Thorne comes out the shadows unloading automatic weapon on the Blood Ronin, and he is literally gaining big holes inside his body, and the Blood Ronin falls to the floor very bloody, and Damien walks up to him and the Blood Ronin says, "Who the fuck are you?" Damien says, "I am the one with the gun," and pulls out a revolver and says, "I got all the moves and it's time for you to get ready to see God." Damien blows the Blood Ronin's brains out. Damien walks over to Valor and starts pulling out all the weapons out of Valor. Valor says to Damien, "Fuck, now I got to owe you." Damien and Valor escaped to back of stadium into a black limo with the Countess pouring Valor a drink and an injury Lily, and Valor says to Lily, "I guess we both got our ass kicked, kid, but this fight isn't over. I promise you, not by a long shot." Cameron, Rachel, Raphael, Mia, Dalton are waiting on Valentina in the helicopter, who has gone searching for Charlie, and she finds him all shot up with his brains hanging out his head, and all he remembers that he fucking had Valor dead to right then his brains went lights out. Valentina puts Charlie in the helicopter. Cameron asks if Valentina is Valor's dead. Valentina says Valor has escaped. Charlie says to everyone in the helicopter, "I had the motherfucker pissing his pants until someone shot me brains out." Charlie falls unconscious and wakes up against "I had that fucker dead to rights." Then Charlie passed out again. As helicopter flies into sunrise, the volcano activity has died. The city of Los Angeles has been combating this volcano all night. The final chapter, Flesh and Blood. 8 hours later, back at the Valiant Gardens, Jonathan is halfway healed and is walking around the mansion as the camera pan behind him shows Mia trying to patch up Dalton. Sledgehammer and Rachel are completely in pain and slowly healing from their wounds. Raphael is in a room staring into a wall with tears in his eyes. The camera shows Jonathan's face as he says to himself, "Did we win or did we lose?" Charlie and Valentina are in the master bedroom and Valentina is sitting by the side of the bed while Charlie is sleeping, slowly healing from his massive head wound. Valentina begins to say to a sleeping Charlie, "I haven't loved many men or women in my lifetime, but I have loved a few, and Charlie Brewster, you are one of the few that I have loved. I know you will recover from this, and when you do, we will finish that motherfucker for once and for all." Charlie wakes up and kisses Valentina and says, "I know we have only been around each other for a few weeks, but I feel like I have known you for a long time. It also feels too soon to be in love again after losing my Amy, but your love has saved me and I would love to continue getting to know you. Because you are the most beautiful, interesting, badass woman I ever met, and I would love for you to be my wife. You don't have to answer me, now." Valentina kisses Charlie and says, "Life is too short, you got to enjoy it. Because in the way we are living, we don't know if we will live to see tomorrow, but I want to spend every second of every day with you, Charlie. I will be honored to be your wife." Cameron gets up from the couch and he could barely walk, and Raphael walks out the room he was in and says to Cameron, "Where the hell are you going like this, Cameron?" "I am going back home to rest. I feel totally out of place here," says Cameron. Raphael urges Cameron to stay here among friends. Valor is still out there. Cameron gets in Raphael's face. Rachel is trying to get Cameron to calm down. "You and I both know that you could have killed Valor anytime you had wanted, and I saw what you did to Dracula. You fucked him all the way up. You could have done the same thing to Valor, but you are too scared of your brother. I get that fear, Raphael, but it's going to get us all killed." Raphael says, "I know now, Cameron, that why I will end Valor once and for all, no matter the backlash. But right now Valor will be in full vengeance mode after losing both of his wives. So it would be smart to stay here, not to go home where you would be very vulnerable. Cameron looks at Rachel and looks at Raphael. I don't care about dying. I just don't want to lose her, and if I do, Raphael, because you didn't make an effort to kill Valor, I will blame you for this. Raphael says I understand. I have been in your position so many times over my long life. So I get it. Mia breaks up the conversation and says she will accompany them home, and I have enough juice to teleport them home, and I will watch over them until they are fully healed. And Rachel hugs Mia and says to Cameron, Raphael is not responsible for anything but being our friend and ally. Rachel walks up to Raphael and hugs him and whispers a secret in his ear. Raphael's eyes completely changes and he walks away into his room. Rachel, Mia, and Cameron teleport to San Francisco. Dalton and Jonathan are sitting in front of a roaring drinking beer, sharing a conversation about Lily and their battle scars. Valentina is staring out at the full moon as Charlie is sleeping, healing his brain, which is almost fully healed. Mia, Cameron, and Rachel walks inside the house, and as Mia closes the door, she attacked by Lily and she knocks Mia out. Lily goes to kill Mia and Damien says don't kill her. Dad got plans for her. Valor is sitting in front of the roaring fireplace and Damien pushes Cameron down on the couch and Lily grabs Rachel and Rachel says, all we have done for you, Lily, and this how you repay us. Cameron begs Valor to leave Rachel alone and to kill him instead. Valor is smiling and starts saying, it's not fair that both my wives are dead and you still have Rachel. That just won't do. But I did think about taking her as my new wife, but that's something that Dracula would do, but I ain't that fucking stupid to do that. Valor begins to touch Rachel's face and Cameron tries to jump off the couch and Lily knocks him back with a shift kick to the face, and she turns her arm into a large snake and wraps it around Cameron's neck. Cameron looks into Lily's eyes, which have become snake eyes, and Lily says to Cameron, I smell your fear, Cameron. Valor looks around the room and kisses Rachel on the lips and says, in another life you would have been my queen, so I am going to get you a chance, gorgeous. Valor pulls out the lament configuration out of his pocket and puts it in front of her on the coffee table and says, you could solve this puzzle box by turns it into a dagger and stab your husband in the heart, where the Cenobites will take him to hell and have their way with him, or you can simply just let them take you to hell instead. So Rachel, what's your pleasure? Cameron screams out at Rachel. Baby, look at me. You solved that fucking thing and you stabbed me in fucking heart with it, baby. I am the fucking sledgehammer, I can take it. I can take everything. Come on baby, stab the fuck out of me. Rachel will, tears in her eyes, staring at Cameron, and solve the puzzle and turns into a dagger and she stabs herself and the room light up and Cenobites appears and Cameron screams out, no baby, Rachel, Rachel. The high priest looks at Valor and Valor looks at Rachel and says, you are one stupid fucking bitch. Valor tells the high priest, hook the bitch, and hook chains shoot out to Rachel and strings her up, and Rachel is screaming and Lily is frightening by Cenobites and her arm comes from around Cameron's neck and he falls to the floor. Cameron is pleading to Valor to take him instead and leave Rachel alone. Rachel is in pain and says to Cameron, you were the best thing in the world to me. This has to happen for the future, baby, and Rachel looks into Valor's eyes with a face of hatred and says, I will be waiting for you in hell, Valor. Valor is looking into Rachel's eyes and he sees a future confrontation with Rachel in the future, and Valor tells the high priest to take her flesh but not her soul. Valor turns around to see Cameron's face as the high priest's hook chains rips apart Rachel's body into pieces and her piece of her flesh is everywhere, and Cameron screams out, Rachel, all the glass breaks into the house. Valor tells Damien and Lily to leave him and Cameron alone, and Damien tells Valor, you should kill him now. Valor says he will die when I am done letting him suffer. Damien says, you are so cold, brother. Damien and Lily walk out of the front door. Mia is waking up all covered in Rachel's blood and flesh. Valor is standing over Cameron, who is holding half of Rachel's head in his arm crying, and Valor smiles and says, it could be so easy to be you in pieces, Cameron. Can I call you Cameron? I feel like we've gotten real close lately, and Valor bends down to Cameron and says, I could have taken your Rachel's soul as well, but I kinda like Rachel. She didn't deserve to die like that. But to make a fucking statement to you and your band of fucking so-called comic book characters that we the Dark Order are not to be fucked with. Cameron looks into Valor's eyes with fury in his eyes and says, look into my fucking eyes, I am going to fucking kill you, so you better fucking kill me right now. Right fucking now, kill me, you hear me, you undead motherfucker. Kill me. Valor gets up and says, killing you right now would be mercy. And you will never get any fucking mercy from me, Sledgehammer. Valor starts walking towards the front door and he sees Mia looking at him and says, my father got plans for you. I don't know what for. But if he didn't, you be fucking dead what you did to my Ariel. So I would try not piss me off again, Mia, because I really don't fuck about fucking up my dad's plans. Mia turns to look at Cameron and Valor gets into the limo with Damien and Lily. Song the Crying Room slowly plays by the Yagas as Cameron is crying in front of the fireplace with Rachel's skull in his arm, and Mia starts crying herself. The camera follows the limo driving in the heavy rain as thunderstorms clashing. Mia comforts Cameron, who crying uncontrollably. Valor gets dropped off at the runway and gets on his private jet to New York, and Valor sits on the jet and is greeted by his stewardess, and the jet is in the air. Valor pours himself a drink and sits back in his chair, and he realizes that he has no Cleopatra or no Ariel as he stares out the window of the drink, and he starts crying, tears of blood running down his face. The music is getting loud. Valentina is sitting in a chair in her garden watching the full moon, and her butler bring her the phone, and it's Mia tell her that Rachel has been killed by Valor. Valentina starts crying and she walks into the house. Dalton and Jonathan sees Valentina walking into the living room. Valentina tells them what Mia told her. Dalton falls to the floor and Jonathan is shocked. Raphael comes out of the bedroom and he already knew. Charlie wakes up minutes later and hears an argument between Dalton and Raphael. Jonathan is trying to calm them down and Valentina is pacing back and forth in front of the fireplace. Dalton says to Raphael with tears in his eyes, "You should have killed Valor when you had the chance. And you could have done it, but you wouldn't because you were so scared of your brother." Charlie busts into the room and tells Dalton to shut the fuck up. Raphael is a guardian angel. It wasn't his job to kill Valor. This was ours, me and Sledgehammer, but I take the full responsibility for this. So if you want to fight someone over this, then fight me, Dalton, because I will fight you all goddamn day. See, Raphael can't go up against his family. You just got to understand that. Like I said, Rachel's death is on me. You got that? If it wasn't for our mystery guest, then that motherfucker would have been dead. But shit happens. Tonight we all need to rest. We all got beat to shit. No one won or lost because the war ain't over. I will take care of Antony fucking Valor myself. Charlie walks up to Raphael and put his hands on his shoulders and say, "I don't know you personally, but I know of your history, Mr. Violence. I learned about you in school and I love your history and know what you have done and been through, so I truly thank you for your service. Once it was your war, then this was Sledgehammer's war. Now it's mine." Valentina walks over to Charlie and Raphael. Charlie looks at Valentina and says, "I am going back to sleep because tomorrow we fight, we end Valor once and for all." Charlie kisses Valentina and goes into the bedroom. Dalton and Jonathan sit back down in front of the roaring fireplace. Valentina tells Raphael to follow her into her study. Valentina sits down at her desk and Raphael sits down facing her, and Raphael looks above Valentina and there is a painting of her as Joan of Arc. Valentina and Raphael are sitting in the dark. Valentina begins to tell Raphael about her journey from her execution until now. Meanwhile, Jonathan tells Dalton that he is going back to his childhood hometown in Montgomery, Alabama, due to the fact that he is afraid of Lily coming back after him. He knows if he stays in Los Angeles or San Francisco that he will run into her again. Even though she betrayed him and tried to kill him. He believes everything is his fault, that he doesn't want to kill her. Dalton starts drinking out of a wine bottle and says, "You and her were together for a long time, but as it was revealed, Jonathan, she was always a killer. It's just she fell in love with you and Rick just got jealous and decided to take her out, but what made her go back to dark side was when you decided to be very unfaithful towards her, and Johnny, that is something you don't do to a woman, especially a shapeshifter like Lily. That just wasn't the smart move on your part." Laughs, "If you had played your cards right, you could have her shapeshift to any woman you wanted without having to cheat on her. I am just saying." Jonathan with a dumb look on his face and says, "I didn't even fucking thought of that. Damn, I could have her shapeshift into Halle Berry or even Tyra Banks. Damn, I fuck up, bro." Dalton tosses Jonathan the wine bottle. Jonathan says to Dalton, "What are you going now, Mr. FBI agent?" Dalton looks at the fireplace and says, "I gotta go to Chicago to meet up with my boss. But if Charlie needs me, I will be there." It looks like he wants Valor for himself, and I say Charlie can have that fight. I don't need to prove shit. I tried to fight that fucker and I did fight him to the best of my ability, and that wasn't enough. Jonathan tosses the wine bottle back to Dalton and says, "That motherfucker is a true demon. I couldn't get any shots in. I ain't sparring with that motherfucker either." Moments later, Valentina gets back into bed with Charlie, who laying in bed looking at the full moon, and Valentina asks, "Is he alright?" and Charlie says, "I am tired of losing people, Valentina, and that why I got to be the one to end this war, and me alone." Valentina kisses Charlie and says, "We will end this together." 3 days later, Valor has been staying at the Continental for 3 days so he can be fully healed. He is standing in front of a mirror putting on a brand new blue velvet suit and puts on his sunglasses. Valor gets off the elevator to the lobby and is greeted by Winston, the owner of the Continental, and he asks Valor did he enjoy his stay, and Valor shakes Winston's hand and says, "I really appreciate what you have done to this establishment, and soon you will have more customers in future. I got some big plans for the future, Winston." Winston says, "I look forward to it, my prince." Valor walks out and gets into a limo, and he sees on TV news footages about the volcano in Los Angeles, and Valor turns off the TV and pours himself a drink and says to the limo driver, "I got big plans for the year 2000 and I am going to make this world be in awe of me and my father." Valor arrives at his hotel and Valor arrives at his penthouse and he is greeted by his doorman who is very scared and Valor says, "Why are you scared, Alfred? It's just me." And Alfred says, "Your mother is inside waiting on you, my prince." Valor smiles and adjusts Alfred's uniform and says everything is going to be alright. You know what? You can take a day off to be with your family. Alfred thanks Valor and walks out of the door. Valor gets in the elevator and starts staring at the elevator numbers going up as he anticipates the meeting with his mother. Valor gets out of the elevator. Lilith is standing in Valor's living room wearing a dark black dress with fiery long red hair and smoking a cigarette and with her glowing red eyes looking very angry with two demon bodyguards hanging by the windows. Valor looks at the bodyguards as he walks towards his mother and says, "Hello mother, I haven't seen you in 2 decades. How have you been, Valor? You have really fucked things up," says Lilith. Valor smiles and tries to hug Lilith and she pushes him away and Valor takes off his sunglasses and says, "Everything will be alright, Ma. I am going to take care of everything that I fuck up. I already got things in motion." Lilith floats towards Valor and yells out, "You started a war with this so-called Sledgehammer and his people. Many members of the faction have been murdered. Your sister Mazikeen shouldn't have been involved in this fight in the first place and the only reason she did what you ordered her to do was because she was trying to show how loyalty and love she has for you." Valor says, "Yes, I know mother, her death is on my hands." "I understand, no. Your sister isn't dead," says Lilith. Mazikeen walks into the room in a red dress. Valor is completely shocked. Mazikeen smiles at Valor. Valor looking at Mazikeen, "I felt you die, Mazikeen. I tried to avenge as well." Mazikeen says to Valor while standing in front of him, "I wasn't dead, I was dying on that blessed ground in the woods impaled on a tree branch and you didn't even come looking for me but Damien found me and healed me with incantations from the Book of the Damned. Which you could have done with ease but you were so guided by your vengeance for what Sledgehammer did to your son, Julian, that you left me bleeding in the fucking forest." Valor says, "So Damien knew you were alive and he kept that from me. Why would he keep that from me?" Mazikeen walks away from Valor to her mother's side. Lilith tells Valor, "Because I told him to keep it from you. Mazikeen is not your personal assassin. She is your father's bodyguard." Valor says, "Let's be real mom, I know dad isn't her real father." Mazikeen says to Valor, "What the fuck are you talking about, Antony?" Valor says, "When I started to read about the history of Raphael, I found that mommy used to be married to Raphael before she was married to dear old dad and she was pregnant during the Battle of Heaven before she was casted out along with dad. So that means big sis, you're not the daughter of Lucifer. You are daughter of the Archangel Raphael, also known as Jimmy." Lilith is extremely pissed off and yells out, "What the fuck does that got to with anything? It doesn't matter if he is not her biological father." Mazikeen is looking sad and confused and says to her mother, "Raphael is my real father." Lilith says, "Yes, he is your real father. But Lucifer raised you as his own. And no matter what, Valor, she is still your sister. This is not time and the fucking place for this fucking drama, Valor. This is about you killing Wade fucking Manchester and completely destroying the future of purgatory with it." Valor begins laughing and says, "This is what you came here to lecture me about, that fucking meatbag." Jophiel appears in the room and attacks Valor from behind and slams him against the wall while Lilith and Mazikeen look on. Valor looks at Lilith and says to her, "What the fuck mom, you going watch this bitch attack me like this?" Lilith looks at Jophiel and says, "Go ahead Jophiel, kick his ass and just don't kill him." Valor looks at Lilith and says, "What?" Lilith says, "You kill her husband, she deserves a little vengeance." Jophiel with a maniacal look on her face starts a combination of punches and kicks on Valor and Valor tries to fight back but Lilith tells him to take his punishment like a good little demon. Jophiel chokeslams Valor to the floor and knocks the wind out of him and says, "You killed the love of my life." Jophiel grabs Valor's face and get face to face and says, "I know now why Raphael wanted to kill you so bad, but I made a deal with your mother to inflict as much damage on you as possible without killing you." Lilith says, "That is enough Jophiel." Jophiel says, "I was just getting started, Lilith." Lilith says, "Don't forget our deal." Valor says, "What fucking deal did you two make that involved me getting my ass kicked?" Jophiel sits down in a chair and lights a cigarette. Lilith says, "Things are going to be changing around here. Jophiel gets to continue to run purgatory as she sees fit. Her brother Gabriel will help her get things back to normal since you killing Wade Manchester and his employees kinda scared the wayward souls away. Gabriel is going things back on track. Because purgatory was very profitable for Lucifer and God. They both benefit from that and now they are both pissed at you, my son. Mazikeen is taking over your job here on Earth. She will also repair the faction. Clean up your fucking mess. We didn't care about your feud with the Sledgehammer or his people. But you did lose valuable contacts, the Meridian family, which was an excellent renewal stream for us for decades, and now they are all dead except for Rose, their youngest daughter. They made us rich on Earth. You royally fucked us. You also divide witches' families against each other. Half of them are dead, including some prestige vampires dynasty who have died in your war. Mazikeen with Damien's help will try to gain their trust again, so we won't have war against them because they seen us as weak. The Lycanthropy clan didn't even join your fight, which now has ignited some of the vampires to blame them for losing their kin because they didn't the fight. But vampires always look for a reason to fight the Lycanthropy clan, but you are to blame for this new rivalry between them. Valor lights a cigar and wipes the blood from his face and walks up to Lilith and Mazikeen and says if she has my job on this earth. What is my role, now mother? Lilith says my son, you haven't figured it out yet. The deal I made with Jophiel so she wouldn't kill you, but she was able to get her pound of flesh. By the order of your Lucifer and your grandfather god and your grandmother goddess and your own lovely mother and the queen of hell Antony Valor, you are hereby banished from earth to hell for all eternity. Jophiel claps her hands and says, ooh, that felt so fucking good, almost better than the ass kicking I gave you. Valor says to Lilith, no fucking way. You can't fucking do this to me. I got fucking planned for the new year, for new decade. The year 2000 was going to be my fucking year. Who the fuck are you to banish me? You got no real fucking power over me. Mazikeen says watch your fucking tone, brother. She is our fucking mother. Lilith says it's okay baby girl, let your brother get his anger out. He is just like his father. I am nothing like my father, says Valor. I am better than he ever was. I made this world for what is. I put in work with these fuckers for centuries. Inspire most of the best of them and the worst of them. We are a part of this world history because of me. The only thing is he and you and grandpa and grandma and everybody else is in the fucking Bible. I mainstream everything else. I had our stories told on the big screen. We have a fucking following because of me. And now you want fucking banish me. I am best for this world. Mazikeen is just a fucking warrior, I am a fucking titan. I am everything. I am not to be banished to hell. I will not go, and I would tell that to his fucking face. Lilith laughs and says, are you done now? Well, let's say this, I let you talk that big boy shit because I understand that you're upset, so I let you rant. Lilith's face turns demonic and she grows claws and grabs his face. Jophiel says to herself, yeah, she is fucking pissed. Mazikeen is scared for him with her expression. Valor realized he fucked up. Lilith growling and says, you have forgotten your place, boy. Valor gulps. Lilith continues to growl and says, you have spent too much time away from me and your father. We do thank you for all you have done, but it's not you. It's for your family. You've forgotten that I made you, boy. You are the general of demons because I beg your father to give you a position to give your life meaning. We allowed you to live on earth. We allowed you to marry Cleopatra. We allowed you to live as a human. Everything you have done on earth is because we allowed you to. Lilith sticks her claws in his face and Valor starts groaning. If you weren't my son, you would have been dead moments ago. You don't insult me. You don't say I don't have power over you. I am the mother of demons. Lilith laughs. If you don't want to hell, you don't have to, but if you don't go then I got another punishment for you. Do you what worst thing you can do to a demon? Valor looks scared and says what? Lilith says my baby boy, if demon what you did pissing off your father and grandfather, then the worst thing to a demon if he turned in a human to live his remaining days on earth and then he dies. He will go to hell automatically, but this time he won't be welcome with open arms to his brothers and sisters. Instead he will torture as a human soul should be for all eternity. That doesn't count for the hell you will go through as human being on earth, and the only one that has power to turn you into human being is God, so what is your pleasure? My baby boy. Valor says with a wince and sighs, I will go home, back to hell. Lilith turns back to human form and says that is a wise decision, Valor. Jophiel says justice is served. Jophiel disappears. The elevator dings and opens, the devil's accountant appears, smiles in the elevator, and Valor says to Lilith, why is he here? Lilith says just in case you try to change your mind. He is here to make sure you get there, and also your father's waiting. Valor is walking towards to the elevator to hell and he sees through the window that the Blood Ronin and Valentina are outside the building armed to the teeth. Valor smiles and says to him, that's Charlie fucking Brewster, and laughs, and he turns around walking backwards towards the elevator to hell, and Valor says to Mazikeen and Lilith, yeah, I am going to hell, but you going to be needing me in the future. You have no fucking idea what coming. Don't get mad, Mom. I am going home to face Daddy. You don't have to worry about me. I am least of your worries. You got to worry about the big bad blood fucking Ronin and girlfriend, no mercy, that who you got to worry to about Mommy. Valor puts on his sunglasses and lights his cigar. Get in the elevator, and the song called Cold by Evans Blue starts playing as the elevator closes, and Valor says they have no fucking idea what I fucking started. Elevator closes and the music plays loudly. The end. Now you can read Sledgehammer Goes to Hell and the Blood Ronin trilogy. Music that inspired the book Bad Omens, Evans Blue, Breaking Benjamin, Tool, 2Pac, Lil' Kim, Placebo, Dropout Kings, Tori Amos, Lita Ford, Ozzy Osbourne, The Black Eyed Peas, Tears for Fears, Limp Bizkit, Cisco, and many more. #The Violent Ones soundtrack available on Spotify.